Hello everybody, this is Purge, bringing you guys a new patch video. Yes, it finally came out. I was busy last night, just got back from the airport. I was just at Starletter, which was at DreamHack Bucharest. I had a really great time over there, but I finally got home and I was busy last night, so I didn't even realize the patch came out. And now I'm going to make a patch video, so here we are on a patch video. I hope you guys are excited for this. I'm really excited. Now, fair warning, I have not read any of these patch notes yet, so I'm going to understand things incorrectly and tell you the wrong thing sometimes. So be prepared that everything I say, especially for like some of the complicated things, might not be right. And the reason I do this is because it's more fun if I do a first impressions. And I think that's more exciting because then I'm more genuinely excited, all that stuff. So just be careful and be aware of that I might get some stuff wrong. So IceFrog said that 6.84 was coming immediately after Starladder, and Starladder ended Sunday night, which was now 2 days ago. I think today's Tuesday. Yeah, today's Tuesday. So it ended 2 days ago, which means the patch is here. People have said it's long. I haven't read that many comments, but I'm mostly not spoiled. I read the first couple things, that's about it. So here we go, 6.84. Gameplay updates. I'm just going to read these along with you guys if you can't read them. I think we're big enough. I also reduced the frames on this video so that it processes a lot faster, because then there's half as much data, to my knowledge, that has processed. So the frames will be a bit lower, but it doesn't matter because it's not gameplay. All right, first of all, Aoe bonus gold component based on team net worth difference reduced by 25%. Aoe bonus XP component based on team XP difference reduced by 40%. Melee lane creep bounty, well, this is okay. I'm gonna read through all this and then I'm gonna talk about the implications. Melee lane creep bounty reduced from 43 to 40, which is 7% reduction. Ranged lane creep bounty reduced from 48 to 45. So very small reductions in gold on creeps, and they're also, I assume these numbers still vary a little bit. They do vary, am I crazy? Hero kills, the non-net worth portions are worth 10% more. Okay, so what this basically, I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this. First of all, the way that you gain gold, I'll go over to my spreadsheet stuff. This is the spreadsheet that I made when I wrote the score article a couple weeks ago. So I'm just going to pull this up to show you guys approximately how the value is made before. This might be a little too mathy, but I think a lot of you guys will learn from this. So here's a game with a difference in 25%. I'm going to turn off my camera for this. Let me turn off my webcam at least so you can see a little bit more. And you'll just have one big ass logo on there. Okay, so this is how you calculate the advantage that you get from a kill, basically. Net worth difference is the enemy team's net worth divided by the allied team's net worth minus 1. So your net worths are and the net worth difference is this equation right? This equation might be wrong. Okay, let me explain it without looking at the numbers. If depending on what level you are, that is how much gold you give away when you die, is basically how it works for both teams. For the winning team, there's an added gold bonus if your team that calculates the difference in team net worth between the winning team and the losing team multiplied by your net worth on your team. So if you have a low net worth and you're on the winning team, even though your winning team has a lot of net worth, it doesn't increase the amount of gold that you give by that much. So if you look like over here, for example, this disruptor is the least farmed person on the winning team. He only has 4,400 net worth, and his team's net worth is actually 40,000. So he has like 10% of his team's net worth. It's very low in comparison. What the amount of gold he gives is, depending on the amount of heroes, is this number, this number, this number, this number. For the enemy team, if we compare it to a Rubik, he's level 11, Disruptor's level 11. They're the same level, but they're giving different values. Disruptor gets 174, Rubik gives 117, and all the way down to 54. So it's a moderate increase, and you can look at the percentage difference between the old style. So when you have a 25% advantage, it does actually impact your numbers by a pretty big amount, as you can see between these numbers here and the old way that they used to calculate. For single kills, it's actually less, but in AoE bounties, it's more. And for the Disruptor, or the Rubik, sorry, if he's losing, he actually does give less gold than he did in the previous patch. That's basically how it works. So that should be a basic understanding of how the gold bounty worked before. Remember, it has to do with two things. First of all, what level your hero is, and also what your team's net worth is. So if we use that knowledge, and we go back to this page, and we apply it while turning my beautiful face back on, let's look at what this changes again. The AoE bonus gold component based on team net worth difference is reduced by 25%. The AoE bonus gold component is, I guess, the whole component they don't. The one thing I hate about this update like this is they don't give us the math if we want it. It just says one of the few things I dislike about patch updates. It's not extremely specific, so you kind of have to like eventually do the math in game, which is doable. But the bonus gold component based on team net worth difference is reduced by 25%. What I assume this means is that that level component that exists right now. Remember, there's a level component, there's an AoE component. The level component is exactly the same, but now that if you're in the lead component, it's reduced by 25%, which means that the winning team gives less gold than they did in the previous patch. But that means that the losing team still gives as much experience level. So technically, this means that you're getting less gold. There's a possibility that you're giving much less gold now. Maybe not much less, but less gold than the previous patch, like 6.82 or whatever, or 6.81, before the comeback mechanics came. So it's basically been nerfed. It's a little bit worse. The AoE one is severely nerfed 40%. The AoE one was very untouched, even in all of the reigns of complaints. So we'll see less leveling and a lot less levels coming. This could severely impact the game. It's something that's going to have to be looked at very closely, and who knows, might even have people complaining about it. So that's what that means. I hope you guys understand that now. Again, the lane creeps give less gold, and hero kills the non-net worth portions over 20%. Okay, so that impacts it. So the amount that you get just by being a leveled hero has increased slightly by 10%. I'll pull up the graph again just so you guys understand. Let me turn my webcam off again because it kind of makes things confusing. This level, we'll use this one as an example. So for the dying team, the gold is only calculated based on what level you are. So that means that these values are increased by 10%. This level is increased by 10%. This value is increased by 10%. For the winning team, the base level, that is also increased by 10%, but the advantage you get for dying is reduced by 25%. So basically, what this does with the math is you're increasing all of the values by 10% base, but for the winning team, this big boost that they get is reduced by 25%. So it's basically pulling the average in closer to where it used to be in the past, hypothetically. So in the past, kills were only based on what level you were. So if a team was super high leveled and your team was super high leveled, both teams are giving just as much gold for kills. And it's now based slightly on net worth, moderately on net worth. But it still doesn't necessarily impact the game in a huge way. So that's how all that works. I think it's really important we spend a lot of time on that because it's important that people understand how these numbers work. I'm definitely going to write an article that really looks into this in the next week for the score, almost guaranteed. I'll modify all my spreadsheets, and I'll probably bring up some more graphs to look at the differences in gold distribution compared to the 6.83 and 6.81, and then what it is now. And we'll take a look at that, so keep an eye out for that on the score app. All right, reduce the direct hero last hit bounty by 100, and redistributed that gold into AoE gold in the ratio of 100, 75, 40, 25, 20, for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heroes. So when you get the last hit on a hero, you get a little bit more gold, basically. Well, you get a certain amount of gold, right? Let's say you get a first blood, or let's say you get a kill, it's like 250 gold or something like that. If what this basically does is the hero that gets the kill doesn't necessarily get all of the gold. So this is essentially further pushing you into the just kill the guy, don't let your carry kill it. If you solo kill, you get exactly as much gold as you did before. Interesting how this works. So solo kill, you get just as much. Redistributed that gold into AoE gold in the ratio of 75. Does that mean... Oh, good, there's a question mark. Okay, that's not what I want to know. That was obvious. The second part is a little confusing here. If you have two heroes, do they both get 75 gold? If there's two heroes, does the person that get the kill get 75 and the other person gets 25? I assume that's what that means. If there's three heroes, does that mean that the hero that gets the kill gets 40 gold and the other two heroes get 30 gold? I'm not exactly sure how this works, but essentially I'm assuming what this does is that it will distribute gold to your allies more evenly. So whoever gets the kill, don't worry about it. Don't worry about kill stealing as much as you did before. And even before it wasn't that bad, but now it's more severe. So, but it's only for 100 gold. So it's basically saying it's okay to kill steal in most cases. There's still situations where it's not good to kill steal, like if Axe is going to use his ultimate or something like that, but whatever. All right, AoE bonus gold is now distributed based on the relative net worth amongst the heroes involved in killing the hero by plus or minus 25%. if 3 heroes kill an enemy hero and the extra AoE bounty would normally be 200 gold for each player, it is instead 200 plus 25% for the poorest hero, 200 for the middle, and 200 to 20 minus 25% for the richest. Interesting. This is going to change Dota in a huge fucking way. I think that's an appropriate way to say this. What this means is that supports are going to be power leveled with gold basically because of kills. And this is interesting. The hero that is most farmed and participates in the kill gets less gold than the poorest ones. So it's kind of like channeling money into supports in a lot of ways. If 3 heroes kill an enemy hero and the extra AoE bounty would normally be 200 gold for each player, it is instead, it's modified by percentage basically. So remember, the extra AoE bounty is just that extra on the top. It's the extra based on your net worth. That means that this only applies to the losing team. And again, I didn't look at the percentage differences. You know, let's do that really quick. In case you guys didn't read the article, I want to make sure that you can kind of understand how important this is. This game I showed you here was a 25% difference, and oops, not this one. This game was a 25% difference in net worth. That's really big. That's a huge. At that levels, the numbers are actually pretty significant. As you can see from here, their percentage increases basically from the previous patch. If you look at this game, this is a super small net difference, a 3.5% net difference. And look at the gold they're giving. By each level, it's actually less percentage based, except for the 3 mark. That one is pretty much usually more gold. It was actually less gold when you only have a 3.5% difference. It's not very much. If we look at a more close example, what is this one? Net worth of, this one's 25% difference. We already looked at that. This is the small difference. And this one is like a moderate difference. This is a 12.6% percentage in net difference. And for these numbers, we have some moderate increases in the late game, especially. This is kind of an extreme example because it was an anti-mage and he had a huge percentage of his team's net worth, but he gave a lot if he died, whereas the supports still gave about as much gold as they used to, a little bit more in some cases, but about the same. And for the losing team, they gave way less gold than they used to. That's the biggest difference. It wasn't necessarily about the winning team, the amount of gold they gave. It was really about the losing team. How much money did the losing team give? And then when you were ahead, you gave much less gold on the losing team. So, and this is another one. This is a 3% difference in the late game, and all the numbers are quite a bit lower than what they were in the previous patch. As you can see, just look at the percentage. Basically, this is it's much lower than it was in the last patch. Basically, okay. So just that should give you guys a good overview in case you didn't read the score article. So when we talk about the Aoe bonus gold is distributed based on the relative net worth amongst the heroes involved in killing. That means only for the losing team, the supports will now get slightly more gold than they did before, and the carries will get slightly less gold than they did before. This means it's very important as a support to stay alive, which is already kind of a principle, but it's going to be even more important now. Keep the supports alive, they'll get slightly more gold. And it's not that much more, honestly. It's plus 25%. So if we're getting 200 gold and we're getting plus 25% of that, 10% is what? 20 gold. Multiply that by 2 is 40 gold. And then another 5% is like what? It's like 50 more gold, basically. You get, I think that's right. I'm not going to do the math. I might be wrong, but it's like 50 more gold. It's not massive, right? It's not huge. It's just something more. I was overstating when I dropped the F-bomb. 25% is kind of, it's very helpful, but it's not like ridiculous. It's not game breaking. For the richest team, they get 50 less gold, so they only make 150. Supports will make what? 250% or 250%, and the carries will make 150, which is a pretty big difference, but since carries are getting all the last hits anyways, that's fine. So this could really supercharge supports in a lot of ways in the late game. That'll be interesting to see how that works out. The amount of AoE bonus gold given is now decreased by up to 20% based on the dying hero's relative rank and net worth amongst all the enemies on the team. The amount of AoE bonus gold given is now increased or decreased by up to 20% based on the dying hero's relative rank and net worth. Okay. I'm not sure. This is one thing I'm not sure if I like yet. If the total AoE gold normally would have been 600, if the hero dying is the lowest net worth, the bounty is reduced by 20%, giving only if the hero is the highest and increased by 20%. See, this one I don't like. I don't think this is necessary at all. At least for the losing hero. I don't think it's worth it. Again, I'm just going to come back to the numbers multiple times because I think we might as well look at this now. It said that the heroes that have high net worth is super buffed, and the heroes that have low net worth are further reduced. But if we look at, let's look at the 25% game. This is the least farmed hero on the winning team, winning by a 25% difference, which is massive. And this is how much gold they give. They already give moderately more gold than they used to, but because he has the lowest net worth, this is going to be further reduced by 25% or 20%, which I don't really think is needed. It's not that much of a difference. We'll see how it ties in with all the rest of the patch changes because there will be updated numbers, but if you compare his gold gain to like this poor guy's gold gain, it's more, but it's not ridiculous. I I don't know. I'll have to run the numbers and see what they really look like, but I'm not on first glance, I don't really like that one too much. Especially because it'll turn the game into more of like a that guy's really farmed. He has the highest net worth on his team. He has the highest level. He's going to give us a stupid amount of gold. Gank the anti-mage, which kind of should be happening anyways in any Dota game, but that one, I don't know if it was needed, but what it's basically doing is normalizing the game kind of back to where it was in a different way, which may or may not work. That's why this is kind of weird. It's like they're altering all these little things and they're changing how it works, and it might not still be good. Who knows? I mean, not that there was anything wrong with the last patch. I think the last patch was honestly fine. If we watch the games that happened at Starlighter, it was like the meta changed. It went from like all super greedy stuff right at the beginning, and then by the end of the tournament, it was like a lot of like early game team fight lineups that got advantage and won the game. Like there was not comeback was very very small in the Starlighter tournament. And if that's the top level, then I mean it matters more in pubs because pubs are a lot more throwy. But okay. So we read this one. Instead of buyback temporarily preventing unreliable gold, it now reduces all gold gained, including hero and AoE gold, by 60%. Means that if you buy back when the enemy's pushing and you get a few kills, the amount of gold you get for that, including the net worth difference bonus, is reduced by 60%. Hell yes! I read an article that made this point that said this should be what happens, because the issue is that because the losing team got so much more gold than the winning team for their deaths, it means that if they died with a unfavorable trade, that it was still worth it for them, because they would die, they'd spend buyback, that would cost them like 2,000 gold, they'd come back, they get 3 kills, and all of a sudden they'd get like 2,500 gold from it, so they'd still end up net positive. So it was almost impossible for the pushing team to be able to go high ground. So what this does now is, you can buy back and farm, but you only get 40% now. This is changed from before. Before, when you bought back, you could last at creeps, you get experience but no gold. Now you get 40% gold, so we'll see people buying back more often for casual purposes, but they probably shouldn't do that in most cases, because then you don't have the buyback afterwards. So we won't see buying back won't be increased, but the important part is that if you buy back and you win the fight and you get a bunch of kills and you clean things up, you might, if you have a really good team fight, hopefully make back all of your buyback money. But the important thing about buying back is you just spent a lot of gold on being alive, and you should get punished for it, and it should make sure that you are set back in most cases. So if you buy back and you don't get like 3 kills, or you're not part of 3 kills, your buyback is going to hurt your income, which is what needed to happen before, and it didn't really impact things. So that was I think that was the main reason that the last patch was kind of obnoxious to watch sometimes. But now it reduces all gold you gain by 60%. It means you're only earning 40% of gold you get for last hits and creep defenses and hero kills and all that stuff. So I think that's really good. I think that's a nice change. I think the not being able to last hit creeps thing was a little weird anyway. So I like this change. It's cool. All right. Melee Barracks team bounty increased from 175 to 275. The range barracks is increased from 100 to 225. Tier 2 and Tier 3 towers armor reduced from 25 to 22. So they made pushing better. And if you get a rack set, you get a lot more gold. This was buffed recently because it used to be the person that got the last hit got a lot of gold. Everybody else got nothing, I think, is how it worked. But it was very rare that you'd get the last hit because everybody's like, just kill it as fast as possible. Like, we can't last hit this, So nobody would ever get the gold, or it'd be rare that they did. But now that it's the team bounty thing, this means that a team that takes a Rax has a further advantage. That's like tower gold. That's more than tower gold. And it's 2 buildings, guys. So it's like super tower gold. I think tower gold was giving like 150 gold, 200 gold, something like that in the last patch. So now it's like getting a Rax is pretty significant gold advantage. Okay, and as well, Tier 2 and Tier 3 armors are reduced. Tower armor is reduced. Extra melee creeps addition spawn time change from 1730 blah 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 to 15 this. So that means that at the 15 mark you get an extra melee creep. At the 30 mark you get a second extra melee creep. In the 45-minute mark you get an extra melee creep, which is going to happen every 15 minutes. This means this is probably why the gold bounty was decreased by the creeps by a very slight amount. It means that in the early game you're getting slightly less gold than you were before, but as the game goes on, creeps will be spawning at higher and higher rates, which means more and more gold gain. So in the short term, you're getting less gold than you were previously in Dota 2, at least from creeps, but the creeps will spawn more often. Extra range siege creep addition spawn time. Okay. Okay, but the ranged one is barely affected. Barely affected at all. Creeps now meet slightly closer to the dire safe lane. Interesting. Only the dire safe lane. Apparently that one was... Oh, that's probably to offset the fact that Radiant offlane is better, I think. I believe so. Alright, so that's pretty much all the power swing stuff. I'll hop in and I'll look at the numbers more specifically, and I'll write a Score Esports article about that soon. If you guys want to get a hold of the app ahead of time, just click down below. You can download the app. Alright, Ancient Black Dragon bounty reduced from 199 to 170. Ancient Black Drake bounty reduced from 50 to 40. The Rumblehide bounty is reduced. The Satyr Tormentor gold is reduced. These are all ancients, by the way, so those are reduced. The Satyr Tormentor is the large Satyr camp, I believe. Reduced to 84. That one was usually pretty valuable to kill, not so much anymore. The Hellbear health reduced by quite a bit. And the bounty was reduced by a lot. So it's easier to kill, but it gives less gold. And the Ogre Frostmage bounty reduced from 54 to 20. So they basically nerfed jungling. So I think this... We'll see if they ended up nerfing Mask of Madness or anything like that, but this is one way to nerf Mask of Madness. One way that Mask and other lifesteal items were abusable is that carries would just go into the jungle and they'd get ridiculous gold gains, and they'd level really, really fast. So this is going to impact a lot of pretty much any other jungling hero, even Enigma, stuff like that, is going to be affected, but it's mostly a negative to jungling heroes, which is the way that a lot of carries get huge advantage lately, is by stacking and all that stuff. So slight nerf to stacking. Except for maybe against Hellbears. Hellbears are easier to kill now. It's a slight nerf to Chen as well, but Hellbears are not that crucial of a part of the Chen army, so we'll see how that works out. Reworked Mud Golems. No longer have spell immunity. They have 50% magic resistance. Their armor is reduced to 0. And when they die, they split into 2 smaller Mud Golems called Shard Golems. When they die, they have a 30% of the original unit's health and damage, only live for 60 seconds. So that's kind of cool. So they resist half of the magic damage they take. So it's still pretty inefficient for magic heroes to kill them, but it's possible. Their armor is less, so physical carries will kill them easier, and the small ones will split off. Do those give bounty is the question. Let's see. The movement speed is increased from 270 to 310, so it sounds like they're actually useful to maybe spawn. Mud Golems and also Shard Golems have a new active ability, Hurl Boulder. Oh, interesting. 0.6 seconds stun, 125 damage, 30 cooldown, 800 range. 800 range is huge. The cooldown is pretty long, and it's a pretty good nuke. 125 damage for a creep nuke is really big, actually. I could see Doombringers picking this up, definitely. I could definitely see Doombringers picking this up. It's a weak stun, but it's a ranged nuke. Well, Dooms aren't going to want to pick it up, probably, but it's something you can pick up. It's an okay Chen creep as well, is the important part. It's not a long duration stun, but if it was, it would be the best creep in the jungle. So that's pretty cool. We could definitely see people picking up. Alright, and the gold XP bounties are rescaled, so the total value of the camp remains the same. So now Mud Golems themselves do less gold than experience, and the Shard Golems give a portion of that. So it doesn't give more experience in gold than it did before. It gives the same. So I think it's quite a bit harder. 30% of the original unit's health. So for a physical damage hero, the Mud Golems used to have, let's say, 100% of their previous with 2 armor, and now they have basically 160% of their previous HP, because the Shard have 30% each, and the armor is reduced by 2, which is only like a 12% reduction in HP. So they're actually much harder to kill for physical heroes, and giving less gold. So Mud Golems are worse to jungle than they were before. And for magic heroes, I guess it's easier to kill them because they take magic damage now, but they still do tank a lot. So Mud Golems all around. Mud Golems buffed. Big time Mud Golem buff. That's for sure. And they're definitely fun to gank with, I'm sure. I don't know how much mana Mud Golems are going to have, but maybe they don't need mana. But if they can move into a lane and throw a couple Hurl Boulders to be aggressive, it's really good. This is a big buff to Enchantress, I think, mainly. Hero kills achieved by units under your control now provide XP credit for the hero. Spirit Bearer, Golems, Familiars, etc. So this is good for Chen, good for Visage. This is good. Buff to... Yeah, that's pretty cool. Melee attacks no miss if the target's further than 350 range more. Okay, so this is one way to fix the bug with... it's like a slow bug with Ursa and Phantom Assassin. It's basically anytime there's a slow on a person, if you start your animation, for some reason it'll like potentially... You can basically do like a super bugged ranged attack, which shouldn't happen. It's a bug. This is also a buff kind of to attack speed reducing heroes in a lot of ways. Sometimes those heroes will be able to finish their attack animation even if the person got kind of far away. But 350 is pretty far. This is basically the way that they fixed the bug, I guess. But it's basically a bug fix. Although, does this break ability draft? This might break ability draft, because there are some melee heroes that can increase their attack range massively. Like, I guess it probably doesn't work for Dragon Knight, because then they would absolutely break Dragon Knight. But this might mess up ability draft. Reduced all pick drafting time from 40 to 35 seconds. I think that's fine. Following abilities no longer ignores units classified as ancients. Okay. Neutral ancients, Warlock's Golem, and etc. Okay. So you can now use Ice Vortex. Mana Void them. You can Berserker's Call them. Blood Rate, Blade Fury, Omni Slash. Okay, this is a kind of a big buff to Chen versus Jug, because now you can Omni Slash those, which lets them tank the ability. Torrent, Ghost Ship, all hits them. Smokescreen, Static Remnant, Primal Roar, Earth Spike, Heartstopper, Aura. Okay, you can jungle, you can do Ancients with Necrolite now, that's pretty big. Shrapnel, Golem's Immolation, Sticky Napalm. This is a... Okay, this is probably why they nerfed Ancients, because of all of these changes. Sunstrike, Ice Wall. It's basically a lot of magic spells now work on Ancients. Ooh, Shadow Poison works on Ancients. That's really big for SD. SD can definitely Ancient now. Dispersion, the Swarm, Kinetic Field, Static Storm, Echo Stomp, Overwhelming Odds. It means Legion Commander can do Ancients a little bit better. Stone Gaze, Earthbind, Poof. Poof is really big. We'll see Meepo doing Ancients. Riptide, Nyx's Impale, Fire Spirit, Supernova, Mystic Flare, Dark Pact, Suicide Squad, Ravage, Demonic Purge, and Fortune's End. Doesn't mean that they all fully affect neutral ancients. It still depends on the units with ancient tag being spell immune or not. Alright, maybe everything I just said was wrong. Because some of those ancients, for example, like the small black dragons, they don't have magic, or they're not magic immune, so you can still hit them with spells. So I'm guessing there was some inconsistency with these spells being able to affect the small black dragons, for example. I think that's what that means. I might be wrong, but you can't ancient. Everything I said about being able to ancient with all these spells is, I don't think, applicable. Damage block no longer affects physical spells. Oh, Merlin, you just made a video about that. Counter Helix, Eye of the Storm, Anchor Smash, Southern Crush, Unstable Concoction, Shadow Wave, Spirit Bearing Tangle. It's a pretty big buff to Dazzle. Spirit Bearing Tangle, DPS, Return, Echo Stomp, Landmine, and Suicide. That was actually a cool interaction. Return being blocked by Stout. That would have been a big advantage versus Centaur in a 1v1 to buy a Stout Shield, even on a range tier, I think. So you could have blocked a lot of damage over time. Okay, so nerf to Stout Shield against some abilities, which is kind of good, because there was other times too where you could block like poison damage from Dazzle with a Stout Shield. That shit was OP. Following their abilities are previously getting reduced twice as part of attack instead of just once. Shadow Walk, Vendetta, and Meld. Interesting. Interesting. I always felt the Vendetta didn't do that much damage. So this is basically a bug find. Oh, okay. Oh, never mind. This is all about Stout Shield. Like, your Stout Shield would block Shadow Walk damage once, and then it would also, when your attack went through, be reduced again. Same with Vendetta and Meld. So that means Stout Shields were good against these abilities. So it's not a huge buff by any means. It's just a slight buff that for people that had damage block. Here's some of the abilities that were already ignored by block before. Wild Axes, Exorcism, Acid Spray, Poison Touch, Diabolic. Yeah, these are all abilities that used to be blocked by Stout. Exorcism was a good example. All those ghosts did like 45. Man, I keep almost burping. They do damage to... They do physical damage, and they used to be blocked by Stout Shield. Like I said, Poison Touch used to be blocked, and it was like the biggest counter ever, because that did like 30 damage a second. So if you got like a Vanguard, it would just do no damage to somebody. Alright, interesting. God, this is probably such a huge patch. Cast behavior when turning to cast has also been adjusted. Previously, if you cast a spell when you're already in range, but not facing the target, outside of the small cast angle, your hero would start turning, but not consider that turns anything beyond normal movement. From an order priority perspective, it meant that issuing any order while turning during that very short threshold window would not be in the order queue in the same way as once your casting time started. It now treats your order as the same once you're in cast range. If The difference that this has is that you can queue your actions in the same way after you click one ability without depending on the angle of cast being 16 degrees or 20 degrees. Previously, if you issued the order at the wrong degree, it would completely interrupt the ability rather than queuing it to do it after the... Interesting. Most commonly with blink daggers, you could easily accidentally cancel your blink order if you click the other ability before you reach the critical angle, so, since otherwise blink has 0 cast time. Apparently you could cancel blink dagger. There must have been some like weird interaction. Rework the item silencing and passive disabling behaviors. Item silencing is called mute. Passive disabling is called break. Mute disables the ability to cast items like Doom, Scepter, Static Storm, and Hex. Break disables the bonuses of passive abilities only, which is basically like Scepter, Doom, and Hex. That's good that they're giving it a name. Previously, a small portion of passive abilities were disabled by Doom and some of those by Hex. The break mechanic is now responsible for this behavior, and the previous passive abilities that Hex Doom blocked, not items and abilities, are included in the list of break disables. So these are now added to the passive list of disables with break, and break is Scepter, Doom, and Hex. Okay? So it's mostly passives, right? Curse of Avernus, Natural Order. There's a lot of stuff in here. I'm actually not going to read through all this. I'll probably look through it later just to know. But additional note, evasion, damage block, and critical strike no longer have special classifications on how they interact with the above. They only disabled if they match general rules of above. For example, Butterfly's evasion is not disabled when you're doomed or hexed, since break does not affect items, which is no different than plate mail not being disabled. Okay, so basically, things like Hex will kill your passives, but not your items. Which is a buff to Butterfly, I believe, right? I actually don't know if that worked, because Hex obviously countered... People always talked about Hex countering PA, but did... They talked about countering PA, but did Hex counter a Butterfly? I actually don't know if it did. They might have changed it there. Hex no longer applies the break mechanic. So the break mechanic was the one that is passives. So Hex no longer does passives? Breaks passives now? Interesting. So all these skills are not reduced by break anymore. Or Hex does not apply break. Interesting. Does anything... So the only thing that applies break now is Scepter Doom? Is that what just happened? I think that's what just happened. The only thing that disables passives now is Doom. Hex doesn't do it anymore. So that's a nerf to Lion and Shadow Shaman and anybody that gets a Scythe of Ice. Huh. I wonder why they did that. Other than the nerf Lion. Lion's strong right now. Silence no longer disables invisibility. Okay. I think that's fair. Moved Ring of Health, Void Stone, and Orb of Venom from Secret Shop to base. Interesting. Moved Plate Mail, Talisman of Evasion, Ultimate Orb from base to Secret Shop. Huh. Interesting. Added Void Stone and Mantle of Intelligence to Side Shop. So there will still be a Ring of Health and a Void Stone from the Side Shop, but it's no longer at the Secret Shop. And Mantle of Intelligence is at the Side Shop as well. Not that very many people build that, but now you can, I guess. So if you want to make plate mail, a Talisman of Evasion, or an Ultimate Orb, it has to be Secret Shop, which is kind of interesting. Ultimate Orb that means you can build a full Scythe of Ice at the Secret Shop now. That's the cool part. Full Ultimate Orb, full Sheep Stick at the Secret Shop. One of the few items you can build there. That's cool. Plate mail, you can't make an AC. I mean, AC is already a pain in the ass to build because you have to get the Hyperstone, but bind a plate mail is a little bit harder now. But that's not that crucial. Runes now have a higher hitbox priority over units. I assume that means you can't just like stand on top of them and block them now. I'm not sure though. Armor now shows decimal places in the hover tooltip. Fixed buyback respawn timer penalty being reset if you die holding Aegis. Falling heroes are no longer restricted from buying Basher or Abyssal, but they are still restricted from activating Bash. Spirit Breaker faces Void Slider on Troll. What does this mean? Does that mean they can get... I think this means they can buy Abyssal Blade and use it, but they can't bash with it? Is that what that means? Or does that mean that they can buy Bashers and not use the Abyssal Blade? I think it makes more sense to say you can buy Abyssal Blade to use the active stun if you want to, because you're spending too much money on an item that doesn't bash anymore. You're basically wasting like 1 to 2,000 gold if you think about the Basher, because the Basher is basically wasted, right? The Basher is essentially wasted. At least the bash component of it, you get damage and strength from it. I feel like those heroes should be allowed to buy Abyssal Blade and not bash from it. I'm like absolutely sure that this means that you can't buy a basher on troll and like super bash somebody, because that's how they changed it a long time ago. But I assume this means you can actually buy the item on the hero now if you want the 2-second stun on a stunned hero, which is good. It gives them more item options that are situational. Maybe not good for the hero, but does give you 100 damage in the bash opportunity. Alright, so that's all of our major game changes. Now we can talk about heroes. These are also major. Abaddon, borrowed time can now be cast while disabled. Okay, that's cool. So if you get stunned, you can just turn it on. That's really cool. I like that a lot. But does that mean if you're silenced, you can cast it? I mean, it goes off automatically when you're silenced, but now you can use borrowed time. Okay, this makes Abaddon really cool. It allows you to basically have a BKB, basically. It's pretty much a BKB. You can say like, oh, I'm stunned right now, I'm going to BKB. And you pop BKB. You can still be stunned afterwards, but if it's only like one major disable or an orchid or something like that, you can activate it. You can activate it when you want to, so that you can cast spells. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty fucking cool. I like this a lot. Especially from a support perspective, if the Storm Ball's in and he Orchids the Abaddon, now you can activate your ultimate and then protect your allies. Although it has the huge disadvantage of if you use it early, then you're not going to have it later. So that's something to play around. But I think that's good. It's a cool way to make Abaddon more playable, and it also penalizes you for using it that way. But in most cases on the support, they don't want to focus you anyway. So I think this is cool. This will give a big depth peak to Abaddon. Or Abaddon, and you can play them in interesting ways. Alchemist, unstable concoction countdown can now be seen by enemies. Okay, and now has an area targeting cursor. Okay, Grievel's Greed now grants 4 times gold bounty for moons. That's really cool. And he can now cast Aghanim Scepter to directly grant any allied hero all Aghanim Scepter bonuses as a buff. The hero upgrade and the stat upgrade. The scepter is consumed in the process? What? You can cast it to grant an allied hero all Aghanim Scepter bonuses as a buff. The hero upgrade and the stat upgrade. So what this means is if you farm an Aghanim Scepter, you can give your Ags that you just farmed to your ally. The scepter is consumed in the process. Multiple instances of this buff do not stack. Is that honestly what it means? The scepter is consumed. That means you can farm items for your fucking teammates. That is insane. That has some real abuse potential. So basically, Alchemist is turned into less of a I'm doing things for myself, but more I'm farming for my team. I think this has some really cool implications for buffing your supports. Some really cool implications. Because, like, especially late game, like, Alchemist honestly gets 6 slotted at the 45-minute mark. But now what you can do is you can, like, just farm Aghanim Scepters. Give everybody on your team an Aghanim Scepter. And it's still worth giving them to people that don't have an Ags upgrade, because it's still 400 HP and 10 of all stats. Like, that is so crazy. That's really interesting. We're going to see so much Ags played right now. And this basically gives you a lot of incentive to pick supports more often that have Ags upgrades. A really good example of this is like Ancient Apparition. You don't have to farm your own Ags anymore. You can be like, get an Alchemist on your team and be like, but in the same vein, it does limit your carry potential. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of games where you just get an AFK jungle Alchemist and he just jungles all the time and he gives people Aghanim Scepters every like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something. But it is going to significantly hurt his impact on the game. So it's not necessarily an OP thing. It's OP after the 50-minute mark, I think, where Alchemist will have unlimited money if he's farming correctly. But I don't believe we can also see it like Alchemist support, but I don't think that'll work well. It has to be like a core Alchemist that's almost 6-slotted. I think that's the only way we'll see this, but it has a lot of abuse possibilities. It's pretty cool. Ancient Apparition, Chilling Touch buff can now be removed by clicking on the buff icon above the health bar. Cool. Okay. Because sometimes AAs cast the buff and you won the team fight and it's over, but you're trying to kill a tower and it's reducing your attack speed and it's bad. So I like that you can remove it. That's good. Berserker's Call, cast point from 0.3 to 0.4, so it takes longer to cast. Counter Helix now triggers when attacks land rather than when they start. Okay, that affects Centaur Warrunner's return and Timbersaw's reactive armor. So that's good. Yeah, that's a good thing. It'll make more sense about when the spin hits, and the spins are going to be slightly delayed. That's the important part. On ranged heroes, the counter helix will come later. Because if you shoot a slow projectile, as soon as the arrow launches, X spins and hits you. But now it'll be as the arrow lands. That means when your X call ends, even if the arrow is mid-air, you can run away and possibly get out of range in time. So this is a slight nerf to X. Culling Blade movement and attack speed bonuses reduced from 40% to 30%. I think that was really needed. Culling Blade was way too good when it landed. I mean, it like kills your opponent and it makes you super fast. All right, Brain Sap mana buff to Bane. I'm going to play Bane all the time now. So Brain Sap mana cost goes down by a huge amount, pretty much. Units affected by Nightmare no longer provide vision. Nightmare End can now be used by Bane to end all other existing nightmares. That's cool. That's good, because before if you cast a Nightmare on an ally to protect him, you'd have to like cast Nightmare to protect him, and then it would give it to you. Or sorry, cast Nightmare to protect him. As soon as the Nightmare started after the invulnerability stage, you have to attack him to get it back and then cancel it. So now you can just cast it and then break it later when needed, which is a big buff because his attack range is low. So that's a buff to Bane. Batrider Flame Break damage changed from an instant damage to 50 per second for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. That's a nerf to Batrider. Less burst damage, still stuns, still does the same damage, but you can buff it now with Sticky Napalm. So it interacts with Sticky Napalm better. Is it the same damage? No, it's actually way less. Excuse me, way less damage, but it's buffed by Napalm. So let's do some math quick. So before, let's say Flame Break did 300 damage with one hit at level 4. If you had one Sticky Napalm stack, it would do 325. Very, very marginal increase. But now, if you have one stack of Napalm and you do 4 damages of 25, that's 75, 75, 75, 75. So it takes one level of Sticky Napalm at level 4 for your Flame Break to do as much damage as it did in the previous patch. It's still put over 4 seconds, but it does as much. But the difference is, if you put a 3 stack of Napalm on somebody and it's level 4, let's say it's level 2 because that's where most Batriders leave it for the early game, that's 15 per level. Let's say you've got 3 stacks of Napalm, that's 15, 30, 45. If you're adding that to 4 levels of Flame Break, that's like, it's a pretty big damage increase. It's not huge, but it's an increase. So basically it's a buff to Napalm basically, and arguably it's a nerf to Flame Break, but in some situations could really be a big nuke. That's kind of cool. It's not a huge nerf, but it's kind of a nerf. Firefly damage is reduced slightly at all levels, so a slight nerf to Batrider. Not huge, but probably definitely needed. Batrider is still very good. Beastmaster base damage increased by 4, Wild Axe's cast point is faster, and Call the Wild Boar attack point is faster. So buffs to Beastmaster all around. He was plated at Starlighter a little bit, but not that much. I think this might push Beastmaster into OP territory. We might see him be picked all the time in the pro scene. Base damage increased by 4 is the most significant of all these buffs. He already hits really hard at level 1, so he'll be even better at last hitting at level 1. I think Beastmaster is a good hero personally. He's just not picked by all teams. Bloodseeker Thirst bonuses scale from 100 to 25% HP instead of 100 to 0. Alright, so that means that if an enemy hero is at 25% HP, that means that if a hero is at 25% HP or lower, they give the full bonus to Bloodseeker instead of giving the full bonus at 0. So this means Bloodseeker is going to get even more bonus damage from Thirst. The vision threshold from 30% health to 25% health. So he can see people, but the downside to that is that you can only see them if they're below 25 instead of 30. So once they get below 25, you've got max damage. So this means Thirst is going to get more damage as a whole, because it gives slightly higher percentage because it scales between these two numbers instead of these two numbers. So for every percentage of HP your opponent's missing, he gets slightly more damage. So you'll see this is a pretty big buff to Bloodseeker. I think this is okay. This is easily a good trade-off for this, because this is a nerf, this is a buff. All right, Bounty Hunter. Bounty Hunter intelligence growth increased from 1.4 to 2. Okay, that's pretty significant. The strike and toss damage increased pretty massively, and it scales better now. It used to scale terribly. The scaling was wrong here. It was like plus 100, plus 50, plus 75. Like, it didn't make sense. Now it's plus 75, plus 75, plus 75. 375 as a level 4 nuke is really high. The strike and toss cast range is severely reduced from 650 to 400. The mana cost scales worse for him, but it's less at the overall level, and the track toss bounce range from... Okay, so basically they gave him more int gain, pretty significant. It's like an extra 10 int. 0.6 int is like 7 mana or something. He gets an extra 7 mana every time he levels up than before. His Shuriken does more damage. It costs more mana at low levels, but by level 3 and level 4, it's pretty much the same and ends up being less overall. The cast range is much lower at 400, but the bounce between the initial target and the other tracked heroes is much higher. So that means you have a better chance. As long as you get the first Shuriken off, it's going to bounce really well. And it does more damage by 50 at level 4. So I think this is a buff to Bounty Hunter. There are some times where you won't be able to get a Shuriken kill now. But as a whole, I think this is good. And the track also shows how much gold the enemy is carrying in the debuff tooltip. Interesting. So you can track a carry to be like, how much gold does he have? Does he have buyback? So you can figure out if your opponents have buyback or if they're saving to buy an item now. Or if you're like, how much is the Spectre close to Radiance? You can go after him and track him, and before you kill him, check. So that's kind of cool. Brewmaster, Primal Split, units no longer provide a bounty when killed, was 11 to 35. And whatever, it doesn't matter. It was very, very small, but it was a little inconsistent. Bristleback, movement speed reduced from 295 to 290. The Nasal Goo armor reduction rescaled from 1122 per stack to 1.4, 1.8, 2.2. Okay, so you don't have to level to max out Viscous Nasal Goo. It's a slight nerf to the hero at the 3rd level of the goo, but it basically encourages you to get 4 levels. Before, it was a little weird to continuously level up because the stacking wasn't amazing, but it's more consistently per level, more consistent per level. Incapacitating Bite is no longer a unique attack modifier. Okay, that's Broodmother's third skill. It means you can buy Lifesteal, Desolator, stuff like that. Insatiable Hunger attack damage from 60, 80, 100 to 60, 90, 120. That's a moderate buff to Broodmother. Same before level 6-ish, level 11, but at his max level he does a bit more. It basically makes him a better carry in the late game slightly. Actually, yeah, both of these do that. So basically Broodmother is a better carry now. You can even get a Orb of Venom now on this hero, I believe, right? Yeah, because before Incapacitating Bite, it was a unique attack modifier. You can get Orb of Venom on this hero. You can get a Maelstrom if you really want to get one. You can get a Desolator. You can get Lifesteal. You can get a Mask of Madness. You can get a Scotty. Scotty with this hero will be dirty as hell because it already slows you by like 40% with 60 miss or something like that. I might be wrong on the numbers. I think it goes 10, 20, 30, 40 for movement speed. But the slow on his hero is going to be ridiculous now because you can stack it with Orb of Venom. I would say that Broods in the early game should get an Orb of Venom now because you don't really want to get Incapacitating Bite right away, but you could get like an Orb of Venom and Incapacitating Bite, and with those together you're getting like 24% slow or 22% slow, which is not bad. You could really chase people down a lot better this way now. So Brood is a little bit better, which is scary because he was already pretty good and situationally good. Return now triggers when attacks land rather when they start, which is fine. Added Aghanim Scepter to Centaur. Stampede reduces all incoming damage by 70% and allows to run through obstructions like trees, cliffs, etc. Destroys trees. So I think this is a pretty good buff to Cent. Somebody tweeted me about it and they said Cent OP now. I think it's a pretty big buff to him because Centaur Warrunner was still picked sometimes, but maybe not all the time. But the cool part is that he doesn't really have that many items that are core on him. It's like Blink Dagger is core, obviously, and BKB is oftentimes needed, and a Force is oftentimes needed, and a Shiva's is great, or a Heart is great, or an AC is great, but you don't have to buy those items. With Aghanim Scepter, this could severely change how the hero is used. You can maybe even play him in more of a supportish role. Probably you don't want to do that because it's still important to get the Blink, but when you buy the Ags, you can keep your teammates really tanky, and it's a cool buff. 70% damage reduction is massive, and it lasts for like 3, 4, 5 seconds, so it's situational, but if you time it right, it could be really good. So it's cool. It's not overpowered. It also allows your allies to run through trees, but again, the Cliffs one is really good. The Trees one is pretty good. It's like Batrider, Firefly. You can still chase after them, but obviously they're faster than you, so it has some cool uses. I could see this being a good hero to use the Alchemist Ags thing on. I think that'd be possible. Chaos Knight, Chaos Bolt minimum damage from 150 to 75 to 150. So a buff to Chaos Knight with his nuke. Clink Skeleton Walk cooldown from 20 to 17, so a buff in Skeleton Walk. And Death Pact cooldown is buffed massively in terms of cooldown. This means you might even be able to double cast it. It's going to be close. I don't know what the duration of Death Pact is. It's going to be... God, that's really fast. So you can use Death Pact more often. There's less downtime where you have no HP on Clinks. Clockwork Rocket Flare speed is increased. Slight buff to the hero, I guess. Crystal Maiden movement and attack slow. Or Crystal Nova movement and attack slow from minus 30. So basically, Crystal Nova slows a lot more at level 4 than it used to. The skill was worth maxing out in almost all cases before, but now it's even more worth maxing out. This is a movement and attack slow. The duration scales naturally. So, but now the movement. So it's kind of bad. It's basically a nerf at level 1 Nova. It's actually a nerf at level 1 Nova, but a buff to late game Nova. And the slow's so big that that's kind of worth it, I think. But we'll see. The slow duration... Oh, I'm sorry. This changes. So it's a slight... Maybe it's about the same at level 1 because the duration is much higher, but the slow is worse. Basically, I'd say get to level... You don't have to get to level 2 Nova as fast as you can, but it might help. Frostbite cooldown reduced again. Oh my god. So the uptime is now 50%. The Frostbite lasts for 3 seconds. Their cooldown is 6. So if somebody doesn't have a BKB, you like need it against CM. And Freezing Field cooldown massively decreased. Okay, she still has mana problems. Her movement speed is still bad, but Nova is a better teamfight ability in the late game. Frostbite is further lesser off cooldown, and the Freezing Field cooldown goes down. This is a hero that I could really see it comboed with Alchemist, like Alchemist mid or something. Play Alchemist mid, get a lot of farm, grab your AC, and then later build, maybe later build Agnum Scepters. I think CM is a really good candidate for getting an Ags from an ally. I think that's one hero that I think would be really useful on because she has mana problems. So if she spends her whole game warding, it could be like, thanks for supporting me all game. Bam, you throw an Ags on her, it solves her mana problems. Her Freezing Field is suddenly really good, and you can buy a BKB on her instead of having to buy Ags and BKB. So I feel like we'll see some strats with CM and Alchemist because she's one support that has a really strong ultimate if you're magic immune. And I think we could honestly see that. I think it's very possible. Dark Seer, Iron Shell duration increased from 20 to 25, while replica damage dealt by illusions is reduced at level 1 and ultimately the same, so it's a nerf to wall replica. Oh, JK, the duration goes up from 15 to 45. This is a really important change because before, the wall replica illusions were kind of shit because they would just die right away. But now they do less damage, the duration increases. I think this is a good buff, and the mana cost is, wow, really reduced actually at level 1. Pretty significant reduction right here, 125. So big Dark Seer buffs. We could see Dark Seer again, the illusions again. Don't do as much as they did before, but they last 3 times as long. So this is the important buff here. It makes Wall of Replica a lot better early. So we could see more Wall of Replica picks. And most importantly, I think it's very likely that we just won't see Wall of Replica ever leveled up. There's like no reason to now, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not worth it. We'll see Wall of Replica stay at level 1. You're losing 60% versus, 80% damage. But that's so minor in the early game. Illusions don't do that much based on stats. In the late game, it matters. You should level it up. But we'll see Dark Seers go 4-4-1 now. Almost guaranteed. I cannot imagine any pro player would get 2 levels of Wall of Replica. The main reason you leveled it up, in my opinion, was to double the illusion duration. Because before, the illusion duration was worthless at 15. But you can get away with it at 1. And the mana cost doubles. Like, why would you level this point up anymore? Anybody that levels Wall of Replica past level 1 is crazy, in my opinion. The scaling is just not there. So absolutely worth it. 1 level Wall of Replica. I would maybe get it at 6 every game now because it does do like 125 magic damage or something, and the illusions last for a long time. So I could see this as genuinely being very useful. Makes me kind of want to play Dark Seer, which is probably something I haven't said in like 4 years. Dazzle, Poison Touch level 4 damage from 32 to 36. So further incentivizing Dazzles to max Poison Touch. Death Prophet, Exorcism, Spirit Count from 4-12-21 to 6-13-21. I like this buff. It's good for ability draft as well. Because if you get Exorcism and you don't get Witchcraft, it sucks. So it makes Death Prophet a little bit stronger early on at level 6 and beyond. Especially at 6 for Death Prophet because you usually have like 2 levels in your passive, so your Spirit Count was shit. And the hero's not played anymore, so it's fine to buffer. Scepter Kinetic Field duration is buffed. This hero actually saw quite a few picks at Star Ladder, but I think this is fine. Very moderate, very slight increase in viability in the hero. Dragonite Breathe Fire also now reduces base damage by 20, 25, 30, 35% for 8 seconds. That's pretty good. Damage reduction, basically. Oh, the wording is a bit weird, though, because it says base damage. Base damage is a different stat than your... What it should have said was it reduces... I guess if you say it reduces damage by so-and-so, but it's a percentage, and usually that's based on your base stat, your like base damage number without the plus thing. This is like one of the gripes I said about before about the patch notes not being perfectly descriptive, and it's understandable. I'd probably have trouble if I was reading it too. But basically it's your first number. This is a pretty big buff to Dragonite for the laning stage, because it's okay in the late game as well, because if you landed on a lot of heroes, that's less damage over the course of the team fight. It's a big percentage. But in the laning stage, if you get a CS and you harass your opponent, that means it's harder for them to last hit for 8 seconds. So Dragonite's going to have a big advantage. Maybe not a big advantage, but he's going to be better at solo mid now, which is cool. Because the hero was essentially unplayed the last year and a half. He was played a couple times, but not much. Corrosive Breath damage is now lethal. That means if somebody, your Corrosive Breath at 6 and on does damage over time, it can now kill people. It used to not be able to kill heroes, only towers. And I don't even know if it killed towers. Elder Dragon form splash attack damage percentage radius has been increased. The AoE is basically a lot bigger. A lot bigger. This is especially, I guess it's not a lot bigger. It's like moderately bigger. It's pretty big though, because this is a radius. That means that it's a lot. As your radius increases, your area of effect gets massive. It's kind of like how AM's ulti hits everybody in a team fight now, and it didn't always do that. Oh, Earth Spirit, get screwed, I hope. Boulder Smash damage from 125 to scaling, so it's better at level 4. I'm pretty okay with this, because that means that Earth Spirit is less OP in the very early game, but in late game it does a bit more damage. I think this is okay. Geomagnetic Grip cost is increased, and the damage is worse at level 4 than it used to be. Magnetize can now be dispelled, which means diffusal blades, stuff like that. That's a cool buff. Obviously, if Earth Spirit's still there, well, if they dispel it on you, then it's gone, right? You can only get it again by running next to somebody else that also has it. So if you're a solo target, if you're like a solo carry and you have a diffusal blade, you can just, and he magnetizes you, you just diffusal blade yourself and it's over. As long as it's not on other creeps. If you're by yourself, it doesn't do anything, but if you're solo, you can dispel it. So diffusal blade is now a counter to magnetize. Especially if you're an agility carry who naturally builds it, you can be like, oh, I'm by myself. He magnetized me. I don't want to let him cast this 5 more times and me, bam, remove it. It's over. That's cool. It's a way to counter Earth Spirit. It still doesn't hard counter him. He can still play around if there's a lot of heroes. It doesn't matter. They can't dispel it. Fixed Hex not interrupting Rolling Boulder if cast during the initial 0.6 seconds. So basically, Earth Spirit now has much less damage at level 3. At level 3, he now has 50. I think the rolling one is like maybe 75, 125. I don't know what it is. But he has a lot less damage at level 3. Boulder Smash does less. And at level 4, he does the same damage because the Geomagnetic Grip, which is now a silence, was reduced by 75 in the late game. But in the late game, his Boulder Smash is increased by 75. But most of the time, people will max out Geomagnetic Grip. But essentially, like, the points are missing pretty much, right? I guess Boulder Smash is better at level 3. And definitely better at level 4 now. But it basically means that he gets less damage out of his few skill points. He's still going to be as good late game, basically, but he's worse early game, which is usually the area where Earth Spirit's really obnoxious, because he can roam around and do a lot of damage. Hopefully this balances the hero a bit better. Elder Titan Echo Stomp channel time is reduced, and the cooldown is also reduced a little bit scaling, based on the level. It's an okay buff to Elder Titan. I think he's okay right now. There's maybe better heroes, but Intentional Attack Speed Slow is buffed again. Enchant can now be cast on controlled units to refresh the enchantation. Really cool. I like this a lot. This means that you could essentially, if you max out enchant, you could essentially keep a bigger army. I don't know how many it'll be. I'm sure we'll see a YouTube video. If it's not already out, we'll see one soon to show just how many enchant durations you can get. But maybe I'll have to do that. If nobody has done it yet, I'll do it. Impetus now pierces spell immunity. That's a pretty big buff to Enchantress, helps her skill better, and she'll see more play as a result. With these two abilities, she can play more like a Chen, and have more creeps up in the late game, and Impetus Piercing spell immunity means she scales better. Enigma Midnight Pulse cast point has improved, so it casts faster. Black Hole Node does a constant damage per second regardless of the proximity to center. That's a lot of damage, 165 for 4 seconds. That's a huge nuke. That's like 800, that's a little bit less than 800 damage. That's amazing. 35 times 4 is what it is, so it's 140. So it's 800 minus 140, that's 660 damage at level 16. That's big AoE. And the mana cost has slightly been buffed at level 11 and level 16. Gyrocopter Rocket Barrage no longer has a cast point. Okay. Rocket Barrage was the one that shoots out rockets close to heroes by you, so when you're chasing somebody, it's really important that you have to cast it. This could be a huge buff to the hero. When you remove a cast point on a spell, it changes the hero drastically. And the hero that this was recently changed on, something like this, was Leshrac, actually. He could just instantly cast it. So when you have an ability that's good for chasing people, and it doesn't have a cast point, then you just run people down, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So this might make Gyrocopter OP, honestly. And we're almost guaranteed to see Gyrocopter build phase boots every single game now. And max out Rocket Barrage. I feel like this, like if you play him in the mid and somebody doesn't have a blink, you can easily contest runes, because if somebody gets too close to you, you turn Rocket Barrage on and you trade evenly. Like, I think this might make Gyro a viable mid here. I'm not even kidding. Because your rune control is so big and your kill potential is so much bigger. And that's when we saw Leshrac get played a lot more. Cooldown missile too slow, duration is increased slightly. Very minor. But this one's really big. I think this is really impactful. We should see more Gyrocopter now. Huskar, near vitality, cast range increased from 550 to 800. Pretty irrelevant. And the cooldown is scaling better. This is big. At level 4, the cooldown is very... At before, the duration was 16, I think, and the cooldown is 16. Now you can cast on up to 2 people now, which means we won't see Huskar as a support, but it can be used more to support your allies. More importantly, heal your other core heroes. So that's pretty cool. It'll help excuse me. If Huskar is like shut down, for example, and he's having a real shit game, he can better boost his cores. So I feel like the problem with Huskar is you either like stomp the shit out of the game, or you stomp and then eventually die, and then you just kind of are mediocre. But this will help him scale better into the late game by buffing his allies, who are ideally not as hard countered from the amount of physical or pure, etc. So, yeah. Invoker int gain is increased by 0.7 per level. So that means he gets an extra 0.7 per level, and he gets an extra like 8 mana per level. Invoke no longer triggers cooldown if it only swaps ability slots. That is really cool. I like that a lot. Because before it'd be like, oh, I EMP Tornado, and then I cold snapped. But if you want to cast EMP Tornado again, you have to first queue up EMP, and then you have to again queue up Tornado. So now what you can do is EMP, Tornado, cold snap, do Tornado, and then EMP. And then immediately after the Tornado, you EMP. So you're basically only using Invoke once to like swap back into the Tornado EMP. So this is a buff to a lot of builds where you only play around like 3 spells. It's like Sunstrike, Cold Snap, Forge Spirits. And oh bam, you casted 1 spell. Well, I can get the other one back. And you can keep on your 2 spells that you want up at all times, like EMP Tornado or Forge Spirit, Cold Snap, for example. So that's cool. Max level Deafening Blessed at all max levels, now a non-targetable circular wave. Released in every direction around. Oh, that's fucking cool. Released in every direction. That is so cool. That is so cool. It's like, it actually makes one of his abilities an ultimate. That's actually what that is. That's actually what that means, guys. Deafening Blast was like a pretty good skill. Like, all of Invoker's abilities are not ultimates. They're kind of like, a lot of them are like, they're like almost an ultimate. It's like 75% between a regular skill and an ultimate for some of them, but none of them are ever like, wow, that one spell is an ultimate I'd want on any other hero. But this is an ultimate you'd want on every other hero. Think about what it does. The range that it goes out is essentially going to go all directions. It's going to be like a Shiva's Guard, I assume. But you have to be level 25. It's the only way it works. But we'll probably see more Midas on Invoker as a result. It was already a somewhat popular item, but now it's definitely going to be popular. Because hitting level 25 is going to be something you want to do. But what it does, I think, 100... It does like 300 magic damage, something like that. 280, I think. It stuns for like 1 second, 1.2 seconds, 1.4 seconds. It has like a knockback, which is basically a stun. And then it also has a 4-second disarm. So imagine jumping into a team fight. You cast an ultimate Deafening Blast. It disarm for everybody for 4 seconds. They can't attack. You stun them all for 1 second. And you do 280 damage. Does that sound like any spells? That sounds like fucking Ravage is what that sounds like. And that sounds cool. You can't miss it. It's an AoE. If they have BKBs, it's not going to hit them. I like this change. Really, really cool change. It's very small, but it makes the hero feel cool. And that's what every Dota player needs. Alright, Io, relocate, double click, now teleport to fountain. Something that should have happened a long time ago. But before, when you wanted to relocate to fountain, you had to press R and then left click on the fountain on the map. It was stupid. Now you can just double click it, and you can go back to home. Back to base. Jakiro, base strength increased from 24 to 25. Macro power duration increased by 3 seconds. Pretty big. You can kill stacks a little bit easier with this hero now. Very likely that we'll maybe see Jakiro supports do this for themselves, kill the stacks later. I've done it before as offlane Jakiro, you can kill stacks really easy. Actually, this is going to kind of turn Jakiro into like a stack stealing hero. We saw a lot of stack stealing at Starladder, and you can very easily do it with level 1, because the macro power does 100 damage. It does 100 damage per second at level 1, basically at level 6 when you're level 6. And now it does up to 10 seconds of that, which means 1,000 magic damage. So you can very, very easily kill stacks with 1 macro power and 1 dual breath. Easily. That's a dead stack, or a liquid fire and a macro pyre. And the area of effect is increased slightly as well, so it's a little bit wider. So definitely could see some Jakiro being drafted to steal stacks in the mid to late game, or the mid game. Only in regular camps. And usually the timing window for that is somewhere between 4 minutes and 7 minutes. So Juggernaut Blade Fury cooldown from 30, 25, 28, 20, 18 to worse at level 1 basically. So it's a big nerf to the hero if you only want 1 level of Blade Fury, which is, I think, a really fair buff. Force them to put skill points in it. And now it's the same spell meter on cast dispel behavior as other spell meters. Previously, it also removed your positive buffs. Okay. So that means it doesn't remove empower and stuff like that. Okay. Healing Ward movement speed is reduced. Omni Slash no longer mini stuns on cast, so you can't cancel TPs with it anymore, which I think is a good way to nerf the hero. Using items and abilities in Omni Slash no longer requires facing direction. I assume this means that if you want to use like a Blink Dagger while you're Omni Slashing and your hero was facing the wrong way, it wouldn't work. So it wasn't timed perfectly. Just a slight addition or change to the hero. That's the only thing and Dagon as well. If you're like Dagoning or let's say you have a Hex and you're Omni Slashing, but your hero's not facing the right hero, he wouldn't be able to use the ability instantly until he happened to hop to the right side, for example. Keeper of the Light, Mana Leak cooldown from 16 to 16, 14, 12, 10. That's a pretty big buff. Mana Leak's a good spell right now, I think. Chakra Magic now adds a buff that reduces the cooldown of the next spell its target cast by 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Ooh! That is a buff. What a cool buff. Okay. First of all, when you're casting Chakra Magic on yourself, one cool thing that does is you're usually cast it multiple times on yourself, right? Or even if you're not, you could reduce the cast of your Illuminate, reduces your Illuminate cooldown, reduces your Chakra Magic cooldown, you can reduce your fucking Mana Leak cooldown. Like, you could cast Mana Leak on a guy, or you could cast Chakra Magic on your guy. I'm sorry, Chakra Magic first, cast Mana Leak on that guy. Oh, my Chakra Magic is now on a 6-second cooldown. A 6-second cooldown. That's so cool. And think about casting on your allies. What's a hero that has an abusive, fast to cast spell, for example? Like, you don't want to cast it when somebody's casting Black Hole, obviously. You want to cast it on things that are very low cooldown. What if you cast it on, like, Crystal Maiden, who can Frostbite every 6 seconds? Frostbite, 2 seconds later, Frostbite. Like, that is so cool. There's a lot of, like, it, like, makes the hero potentially abusive in the highest level. And I think Keeper of the Light is now becoming a hero that isn't just fucking boring. Because when Keeper of the Light was played, it was like, congratulations, you have 4 levels in Illuminate and 4 levels in Chakra Magic. You just did 500 magic damage to our pushing wave. And that's all you can do. It's like, oh yeah, you have Blinding Light and stuff, but this makes the hero so cool now. I'm going to play Keeper of the Light more, guaranteed. That's really cool, interesting change. What's another hero that's abusive? Any stunning hero. You can have like Vengeful Spirit, 10-second stun. Stun in 10 seconds, 6 seconds later you got another stun. What's a low cooldown stun? How about Slardar? Cast Chakra Magic on him. Bam, Slithering Crush, 8-second cooldown, 4 seconds later it's back up again. He stuns for 2.5 seconds, and then 1.5 seconds later he stuns again for 2.5 seconds. That shit is cool as hell. Like, there is so many good ways. That's the Slardar example is a really good one. It's probably the lowest cooldown AoE stun I can think of. 8 seconds cooldown for 2.5 second AoE stun. That is so fucking abusive. You can easily abuse that combo. Keeper of the Light Slardar. Do it in your pubs, damn it. What a buff. And Chakra Magic is usually leveled out pretty fast, so I think that's a really good reason as well to finish it out. But you'd probably have to tell your allies, don't fucking use Sprint. Use Sprint, I'm going to cast Chakra Magic on you, and then you Blink Stun. That is so cool. Scepter Illuminate, heal percentages increase. This is a big buff to Coddle. I think we'll see Coddle now. I swear to God. We're very close to seeing Coddle being abusive. This might be the patch. I'm going to play him, though. I'll try him on pubs. I'll make a video of it. It'll be fun. Alright, Kunkka no longer turns to cast Torrent. Okay, that's really interesting. This is a big buff to the hero because now it's hard to tell where he's casting Torrent. Because if let's say you're just like, and all of a sudden the Torrent blows up way behind you where they didn't expect it, it basically means that it's harder to predict where the Torrent will be. Or if you're running away, you can cast Torrent and it might be on your body, it might be to the right, it might be somewhere random. So that's a good buff to Kunkka that allows you not to out-mind game him. The Torrent cooldown reduced from 12 to 10 seconds, alright? X marks the spot mana cost is increased pretty massively too, which is good because before it would cost you mana to pull them back as well as to initially cast it, so it was a kind of a nerf in mana cost. Like Kunkka got hit a little bit hard for mana in the last patch. My head hurts a little bit because I'm excited. Moment of Courage counterattack chance up to 25%, so pretty big buff to the skill. You can get 1 level of it, and I think it's fine. You should not max this skill, especially not now. It used to scale percentage difference, now you don't need to. Moment of Courage lifesteal. Wow, okay, don't even max this skill out. Honestly, there's like very little purpose, in my opinion, to put more skill points in this ability now. It's almost better to get stats. because the percentage lifesteal is so minor. Like, just get one skill point. You can definitely... I think there's a real chance you could honestly jungle Legion Commander at a fairly fast rate now. Because you pretty much have really good lifesteal now. The hit chance is much higher. You could definitely... I'm almost for sure that you can jungle Legion Commander now without it being completely garbage. I mean, it's still kind of bad because your ganking is weak, but at least you jungle a lot more self-sufficiently and you don't have to get more skill points in Moment of Courage. That's the important part. 1 point in Moment of Courage, max out your nuke with your press the attack, and then you move around the map, maybe ganking if you can. Moment of Courage cooldown from... Oh, okay, this is where it gets screwed. Never mind. Okay, maybe you can't get away with 1 point. It used to recharge every 0.9 seconds. Now it's a huge cooldown, 2.7. So this is where leveling up is important. It basically means, I would argue that it makes him worse on duels in the early game. His dueling, or at least, like, you can't rely on your damage to kill people, because the lifesteal is good. Oh, basically they buff the lifesteal, they buff the amount that it goes, but they reduce the overall amount that it can proc, which means in the early game your damage from it is very weak. It's less than it is. It's like maximum, you can have like 3 less crits or hits per time period than you used to be able to before. I mean, it's a higher chance. So it's basically better against if you're like in a 1v1, I think it's a little better than it used to be. Maybe. Probably still worse, but a little bit better than it used to be. But in big groups of people, it's definitely worse, unless you get more skill points. So it is worth getting more skill points in it, but I don't like the scaling this way. I think it like confuses me. Maybe that's why I don't like it, but whatever. Added Agam Scepter to him. Duel lasts until either Legion Commander or her target dies. Holy shit. Ends if duelists are ever more than 2,000 range apart. So that means you will potentially see heroes like... To counter this Aghanims, you'd have to get like a Chen or something like that to send your ally back. It's the only way. That's insane. Duel lasts until either Legion Commander or target dies. So it's actually pretty good to level up the skill now because it actually means a fucking duel. You're like, you actually have to hit me until either of us dies. That's really cool. This would be another good hero, I think, to channel an Ags to as an alchemist, I believe, because it like really increases the hero in a certain way. If you did like a core Legion Commander and your alchemist, it's not worth it for alchemist to give her the Ags, but it's definitely an item you could buy. I think this is a really good change, though. A really cool change. It's kind of an item that doesn't help Legion that much in damage. It's like moderate damage increase, good HP increase. But more important, if you find a solo hero that you can beat in a 1v1, they're probably dead. Depending on where the towers are or where they are. If it's a support, they're dead. Right? Like, you're never going to be able to live. This could make Legion really obnoxious to play against, though. But it might also increase at least against a Legion who gets this, Boots of Travel are really good. Because then you can TP to the creep wave and go help out your team. It could basically start a team fight no matter where you are. So, really cool change here. And also the important part, it's basically a permanent stun on a hero that's potentially squirrely. Like if it's against an Ember Spirit or a Morphling, you're like, let's fight until somebody dies, basically. And that's really cool. It's a counter against heroes that are even more squirrely or hard, or that do get away. Leshrac, movement speed buffed by 5, really fast now. I think the fastest Dota here is like 330 or 325, so he's very close. Lightning Storm cast point is increased. Lightning Storm slow duration is buffed, so it is better at level 4. Which I think people, if they get Lightning Storm, they almost always get at least up to 4 points. They don't just leave it at 1 in most cases, but I guess if you're going like the Stun Edict build, you would leave it at 1. But I think this is a nice little change. Lightning Storm is even better now. A 1 second slow is actually pretty significant. So you might be able to, it might be at the point now where you can land Lightning Storm into a Split Earth. It's very, very close. I think you probably can land Lightning Storm. We tried it in Korea when we were there to see if we could land Lightning Storm with it, and it was still tough, but I think you might be able to do Lightning Storm into stun now, which is a pretty big buff. Lich Ice Armor cast range increased, and Chain Frost projectile speed is increased, so it'll bounce a little bit faster now, which I think is a nice buff. Feast is now considered as normal bonus damage, can crit and cleave off. Okay, that's a pretty big buff. We don't see crit that often on Lifestealer, but it's a nice interaction. Remember, Feast is the percentage of damage of your opponent's current HP that it does in bonus damage, so being able to crit on that's pretty big. We'll maybe see late game it's not. I don't think it's worth like being like, oh, I'll buy a crit just because I have Feast, but the cleave and crit component is a nice buff. It's not a huge buff. It's only a buff when you crit or cleave, but it's a nice buff. Open Wounds lifesteal increased to 50% at all levels. Holy crap. That's really big. And the reason this is most significant is because Open Wounds is a lifesteal that's based on damage, not based on attack. If you Open Wound somebody and you cast Laguna Blade, you will now lifesteal 50% of the damage that you deal. So this could be seen. I don't think we'll see this as a support lifestealer in any way, but it's a really cool way to help out your team. Just naturally. Added Aghanim Scepter. Grants a new skill, Simulate. Simulate allows lifestealer to target an allied hero and swallow them, allowing them to hide inside a lifestealer. Any healing lifestealer receives is shared with the assimilated hero. Cool. The assimilated hero can release itself at any time by clicking on the buff icon to erupt outward and deal 300 damage to enemies in a 700 area effect. If lifestealer dies or assimilates another hero, the currently assimilated hero will automatically exit. Issuing any order with your hero a few seconds after being assimilated will take you out. So if people don't know how to get out, they will eventually get out. But if you cast, like, if you're like, oh, I'm trying to cast a spell and I didn't realize I was assimilated, you will stay in for a few seconds, which I think is a good change. This is really cool. Basically what you can do is, if somebody's about to die, you hop them inside your body, and you're lifestealer, so you're pretty survivable. I think this is not going to make lifestealer viable by any means. They, like, barely buffed him here, and he still has a lot of issues with, like, blink daggers and crap like that, but it makes him interesting, basically. You can maybe... Now, you're not going to see offline lifesteal. That won't change, I don't think. But it's a cool change. Somebody's about to die. You cast your ultimate on them. You bring them inside your hero, and you continue fighting. And then as you're lifestealing, you're getting a lot of lifesteal, and you'll be healing up your ally, and then they can pop out with full HP. It's kind of like the Phoenix Egg, but different. I would say it's better than Phoenix Ultimate. I would say it's better than the Phoenix Ultimate. But the problem is that lifestealing never fucking wants to buy an Aghanim Scepter. So this is maybe an interaction we'll only see with somebody like Alchemist. I honestly doubt we'll ever see this built in a pro scene. This, honestly, for what this gives is cool, but lifestealing never wants to buy Ags, ever. He is a hero that is limited because he's... As a carry, he's limited. He's melee, he's fast, but he doesn't have a ranged disable. He doesn't have a ranged disable that does damage unless he buys an urn or something. So people can just pop Ghost Scepter and then blink away from him. Lifesteal has a lot of trouble killing here, so he always needs to remain ahead of your opponents with items, with like Abyssal Blade and crap like that. So like you can't afford to buy an Aghanim Scepter on Lifestealer. This is a really cool ability. It's never gonna fucking get used, I think, is what's gonna happen. Unless somehow there's not going to be support Lifestealer. If you could see support Lifestealer, this would be really cool, but it's not going to happen. So that's okay. Aghanim Scepter upgraded Laguna Blade no longer increases cast range. I think this is a nice nerf. This is a buff that happened to Lena's Ags a long time ago. It went from like 700 range to like 950. It was like ridiculous cast range. You don't need it anymore. It was the better upgrade to Laguna Blade with the Aghanim Scepter was the pure damage by far. And I think that was the one that maybe needed to happen a long time ago. The cast range was pretty useless, honestly. It was maybe only useful if you were thinking about playing to support from really far away and you wanted to just blow some guy up. So, a very, very slight nerf to Lena, but something that I have no problems with at all, and I doubt any player has any problems with this, because Lena is maybe not even OP right now. True form is no longer removed on death. Other toggle forms change as well. Split shot, Mana Shield, and Troll Warlord's Berserker's range. So, what this means... Oh. Haha. Wait. Oh, okay, this is what... Somebody tweeted me about this point, and I was like, I thought you got confused with this. This basically means that if you ultimate... Alright. If you're in your bear form, and you die, and you respawn at the fountain, you're in range form. The important indication is about Aegis, though. Because if you die with your true form, and then you respawn, you're in range form, and then people just blow you up in the 3 seconds it takes to transform. So this is a buffed Lone Druid in terms of Aegis carrying. His Battlecry armor is increased, and his Battlecry damage is increased. So this is pretty scary in the late game. 18 armor. It doesn't last very long. It's like 5 seconds or something tiny, but kind of cool. And Aghanim Scepter allows Spirit Breaker to attack at any range from Lone Druid, and prevents the Spirit Bearer from dying if Lone Druid dies. This means you don't necessarily have to get Radiance, but you will need an Aghanim Scepter. This is another Aghanim Scepter that I don't think we'll ever see built on Lone Druid. Alright, maybe in a late game scenario, maybe after like your 3rd or 4th item, you could build this, and then move your bear across the map and try to get kills. That's actually potentially abusable. I think this is okay. It might get built late, but early game, it's not going to get built. It's like too much. You're spending 4,000 gold on a shitty damage item. It's like basically a tank item. Ags is mostly a tank item with some damage. And Lone Druid does not need tank. He needs damage. His hero is naturally tanky from synergy and his ultimate. He does not need Aghanim Scepter. Unless you want to play ranged form, that's maybe something you could say, oh, I want to play ranged Lone Druid, in which case Ags is okay. Because in that build, you kind of need damage and stats. If you want to play all ranged Lone Druid, yeah, you can do that. But you shouldn't anyways. It's not as good as the main form. So we're only going to see Ags as a 3rd or 4th item or longer. Anywhere between 3rd and 6th or 3rd and 12th item on Lone Druid. It's actually, that's a really good point. Your bear gets 6 slotted. Why not buy an Ags on your Lone Druid? That's a really good point. So I guess it's okay. Anywhere between the 3rd and the 12th item, or the 4th and the 12th item, you will see Lone Druid build Ags, because then your bear can move around the map ganking, and he's very easy to escape. If he stops taking player-based damage for 3 seconds, he's safe. He's out. He TP's out. So recalls out to the Lone Druid. So you could just farm with your hero while you move the bear around the map looking for kills. This is a cool idea. It has potential. It's not OP necessarily, because if you buy it, it won't just instantly make you amazing. You have to have a good early game. You have to have a gold advantage, and you have to gamble that by buying 4,000 gold for an item that lets you move the bear around anywhere. And it also prevents the spirit bear from dying if your hero dies. So if you get targeted and you get blown up, your bear is still alive. That means that if you have this, your bear will give more gold more often, because it's likely to die after you. But it means that your opponents can't just blow you up, and that's the end of the fight, which is kind of cool. So a nice change. I think this is a good items upgrade for Lone Druid. I think it's cool. Luna, base armor increased by 1. Her armor is a little bit low. Her eclipse per unit cap increased from 4 to 5, and the Aghanim Scepter has been improved. Somebody tweeted me about this, but I didn't read everything they said. I remember I just made a Luna video about Ags earlier this week. I assume that video went up. I never checked, but hopefully you guys saw that. Allows Eclipse to be cast on an area within 2,500 range. Grants unobstructed vision of that area, which means that it is blocked by trees. It doesn't mean it shoots above trees. Can also target any allied unit to center Eclipse on their location, even when moving. Can double click or target Luna. I assume this means that it doesn't have a cast animation, or if it does have a cast animation, does this mean that you can like cast it on yourself while moving? If so, that's a slight buff to it. It still is going to be the same. 2,500 range is huge, by the way. So this is basically like, you could almost see a support Luna now if you got an Ags. Before Ags, it's kind of bad. But before Ags, it's kind of bad, basically. But it's kind of good. Grants obstructed vision of that area. Yeah. Basically, you can cast Eclipse on one of your carries that are maybe more tanky. You could get like a Bristleback or something like that and cast Ags on him. It's potentially really good. Again, the Ags is countered by creeps being in the area, but it's actually quite a lot of damage. I think we'll see Ags honestly be built on Lunas now. I think it's a real possibility, honestly. Because like I said before, it's comparable to a BKB. It does very similar things in terms of HP. It doesn't give you magic immunity, but it does give you a lot more HP. It gives you like 200 more HP. Not a lot, but it gives you more HP. It costs about the same. It's only 200 gold more. And it makes your Ags a lot better. The cooldown is still really long though, so it's kind of crappy. We'll still see BKBs be purchased on Lunas, but if you do like Scotty Menta Ags builds, I don't think it's that ridiculous, because your HP is so high anyways that you can kind of get away with it. And if you can cast it on an ally, then you can initiate with somebody else. You don't have to buy Blink Dagger yourself. You can get an ally with a Blink. Like, imagine like a Quap blinking into a team fight and just Scream of Painting, Sonic Waving, and Creep Wave and the heroes, and then having an Eclipse come off her. That's really cool. It's potentially, there's a lot of cool combos you can do with this. Or like Storm is another good example. Storm balls in, he initiates, and then all of a sudden it's just like Lucent Beams hitting people. Doom, doom, doom. It's pretty cool. I think it might be, it's a strat that could be done. You don't have to get BKB on Luna. You could get Ags, and I think that's really cool. I'm glad I was ahead of this curve. Slightly. Very slightly. Medusa, Split Shot, and Mana Shield are no longer removed on death. That just means that when you die and respawn, you have to return them back on. That was mostly a problem with Mana Shield, because if you'd respawn after Aegis, a lot of times people would stun you as you respawned, and then you weren't able to turn Mana Shield on, and you'd lose like half your HP, which is essentially like 4 times your HP with Mana Shield on. Something like that. Meepo, Geostrike damage from basically slight buff to Geostrike. Divided We Stand no longer causes Meepo to respond 20% faster. Wow, they just completely removed it? I thought this was going to be buffs to Meepo and I was afraid, but apparently it's basically just, that's a huge nerf to Meepo right there. I'm surprised because we didn't see Meepo played at all. I wonder why they did this. There must be something else like that in some way buffs Meepo that makes him... I was like, oh, maybe it's the Alchemist thing. I think of the Alchemist thing so much. I'm not sure why they did this. I honestly don't know. But it's a big nerf to Meepo. Oh. You know why it probably is? It's probably because of the buyback change. Because, remember, when you buy back now, you can gain gold. And it's just, you just get 40% instead of 100%. That meant that if Meepo buys back, it's probably still worth it for him to buy back. Because Meepo farms so fast that he farms faster than most heroes do in the game. And you can do so much that it would probably be too good if you also respawn faster, because then you could respawn faster and still get decent farm, but most importantly levels. So I think they did this because Meepo would be too strong otherwise with the still gaining gold from buyback on creeps. So that's probably why they nerfed him here. That's my guess. Mirana's Starstorm's second hit range has increased, and the second hit now strikes the unit closest to Mirana. That's good. Before it was a random hero in this AoE, and since the AoE is much bigger, that means that if it hit a random hero in this big AoE, it would have a decent chance of not hitting the right target. So it'd actually be in a way a nerf in some cases. But now it's like a much better chance of being able to land this. A lot of times the second Starstorm was hard to hit. So buffed to Mirana's all around, support Mirana's, core Mirana's, especially support Mirana's, because now they can cast Starstorm a little more safely. They don't have to run all the way into melee with their lower farm. Morphling Adaptive Strike now is a projectile. I don't know how fast this is, but I think it's pretty fast. But it's not instant cast. Before it was instant cast. It would hit somebody and it would hit them. You can't stop it. But now you can blink dodge it and stuff like that. Added Aghanim Scepter upgrade. Grants new ability hybrid. Allows Morphling to target an ally, turning himself into a hybrid illusion, removing the Morphling himself. The hybrid illusion can cast non-ultimate abilities and has your original attributes. Ooh! Last 20 seconds. When the duration ends or the hybrid dies. This is a great item so far, I think, for a Adaptive Strike Morphling to build, because that hero doesn't really have items he wants to build. This will kind of turn him into a carry while still having new abilities. When the duration ends or the hybrid dies, your hero emerges, cannot end prematurely. When the duration ends or the hybrid dies, your hero emerges. Okay. Cooldown is 140. Mana cost is 200, 600 cast range. And this is a new ability, by the way. This doesn't replace your Replicate. I assume you can also have... Oh, it's not available when you have a Replicate living. I was wondering about that because it'd be kind of abusive, but... big cooldown. Mana cost is moderate, but it's not a big deal, and the cast range is pretty short, 600 relative. You can't, like, it's not Replicate. So what you do is you cast this on, you have your original attributes. So that means, for example, if you're playing Strength Morphling, you want to cast this on somebody that is tanky, probably. You want to cast it on somebody that's tanky or can utilize their HP to do a lot, I would say. Non-ultimate abilities. I don't think you'd want to do something like Bristleback, for example, but you want to do somebody that has a lot of damage and their basic abilities. Like a carry is okay if you have... If your agility, it's okay to cast on somebody that scales okay, but you're not going to build this on a carry, right? Because you're not going to buy Aghanim Scepter on this hero. There's no reason to buy Ags on this hero if you're playing Agility Morphling. If you're playing Strength Morphling, it's worth getting this. You could hypothetically heavily morph into Agility as a Strength Morphling with your strength, with your items, and then transform into somebody else. Basically, I think the value in this is cast your Adaptive Strike on an enemy, waveform in, use your hybrid thing on one of your other supports that has stuns, like a Lion, for example, would be really good. Take control of, like, become Lion separately as an illusion, and then you have another Earth Spike and you have another Hex. I think that's where the value in the hero is. Or like Crystal Maiden, you don't get your ultimate, her ultimate obviously, but somebody with a lot of spells, even like Chaos Knight would be pretty good because you could stun, you could Reality Rift. It gives you more abilities to use within 20 seconds. And remember, that's all you can cast for 20 seconds. You can't end it prematurely. I think this is really cool. I think this is an item that's worth exploring potentially as a Strength Morphling. As a carry Morphling, you're not going to see it. I think this is a good addition. By the way, if you guys are wondering why Ags is being added to like every hero, there was a period of time where Morphling said he wanted them in all heroes. And I think the reason was because of the Alchemist idea. I don't know if that was his idea the whole time, but I think it's a really cool idea. And now it's at a point where Alchemist was so shitty that it was okay to add it. Maybe they're just waiting for Alchemist to be shitty before they're like, all right, we're ready to put this in. You know, but I think Alchemist is the perfect hero for that to be added because he farms so fast that it kind of like it combos with Grievel's Greed, right? I wonder if that decreases your net worth. If you buy an Aghanim... Alright, that's actually really important. If Alchemist... when you give somebody else your Aghanim Scepter, does it decrease your net worth? If so, it's kind of like abusing the comeback mechanics. Because it's decreasing your team's net worth by 4,000, which means if you're losing on paper, you're giving you have less net worth than your opponents, despite actually having the items. Like it gives your ally the stats while increasing their ultimate, it said. So it seems kind of abusive in that way. But if comeback mechanics are less severe, then it might not matter. Alright. Naga Siren cooldown. Ensnare is reduced. Ensnare is now dispellable. Can still be cast on spell immune units. That means you can remove it with Diffusal Blade. It no longer is removed if the target becomes ethereal. So Diffusal Blade is the new counter to Ensnare. If you're magic immune, you can't stop this, but this is pretty good for some heroes. They could grab Diffusal Blade to prevent it from countering them. Aghanim Scepter upgrade for Song. Song of the Siren now regenerates you and nearby allies by 6% of maximum HP per second for up to 7 seconds. This is okay. I don't think we'll ever see this get built. I think this is, like, remember what I just said about Ice Frog was probably, at some point it was like, I want Ags to be on everybody. I've heard that from somebody else. I don't know if that's actually true or not. But this is a good example of an Ags where you're like, nobody's ever going to fucking buy this. That's not true. You can play support Naga Siren. You can play support Naga Siren and buy this, and I think it'd be okay. But no carry Naga Siren's ever going to buy this, basically. Ever. No one's ever going to buy this. But it's there. So now it's there if you need it, and it kind of sucks. Except for support Nagas. That's you know what? These two Ags are very similar. It's like, it's not going to be good on the carry of version of that hero, but you can also play that hero as a support. And that's one of the fucking awesome things about Dota, is that there are heroes that you can play as a support and as a carry. And the Ag's going to be terrible for the carry, which is fine, because that's how they're abused right now. But if somebody does want to play the support version, hey, here's another item that you can build that'll give you something that you might want to do. So, fight's going bad. Song of the Siren, everybody buys themselves a couple seconds. They all get regen by like 30% of their maximum HP. Bam, fight starts again, you have an advantage. You can even refresh that. That's kind of cool. Refresh Ags on Naga Siren. Be like, oh, we'll stop the fight, let's regen a bit. And then again, oh, let's stop the fight, let's regen a bit. That's cool. Nature's Prophet, Sprout cast range increased pretty massively based on scaling, so probably more worth it to level this up. Sprout duration increased at a flat rate, 6 seconds, level 4. That Nature's Call Treant base damage is increased massively. Keep in mind, Nature's Prophet had a horrible win rate the last patch, so he deserves all these buffs. Aghanim Scepter upgraded Wrath of Nature now spawns a Nature's Call Treant wherever it kills a unit. Ooh, that is fucking cool. And if you kill a hero with it, it spawns a stronger Treant. We still won't see Aghanim Scepter on Nature's Prophet, I think, because it's, well, if you're pushing or ratting, it's worth it. That's the cool part. But if you're playing carry, you won't buy it. You definitely won't buy it as carry. But that's cool. Spawns a Treant wherever it kills a unit. So if you're just trying to push the whole map, then it's good. The downside to cast spamming Wrath of Nature is that it pushes all the lanes, so it makes it harder for your team to fight, or to farm. So there's a period of time where Nature's Prophet all built Midas and eggs, and it like really hurts your team. It gives you a shitload of gold, but your team gets terrible gold. It's very greedy. Most players didn't notice. I'm glad that phase went away. But I think it's worth buying now if you're just if you're doing an all-in push strat, grabbing eggs is definitely good. And the damage increase from it was actually pretty significant, so I think it's good for a push strat. We'll probably see Prophet again. I don't know if we'll see him in the pro scene, but definitely pubs. Night Stalker, avoid attack speed slow, increased, now matches movement speed slow, so that's pretty good for anti-carry. I'm a little surprised he got buffed here, because Night Stalker is actually picked in the pro scene. He didn't get picked that much in Star Ladder. He did at first, but towards the last couple of games he wasn't picked very much. So I'm sure Ninjas in Pajamas is really happy. They pick this hero as a support almost all the time. Next Assassin, using Spike Carapace no longer removes Vendetta. That's cool. I like that. Yeah, that's really cool. Because when you're running away, if you're in Sentry Vision, you're like, oh, I'm fucked. I have to use Spike Carapace. But then you remove your Invis, and then they'll catch you anyways. You know, it's kind of counterintuitive. So that's cool. Added Aghanim Scepter adds a new ability, Burrow, with a 1-second cast time. Well, Burrow, Next Assassin is invisible and unable to move or attack, but has 40% damage resistance, and regenerates 1.5% of his health and mana per second. His abilities also have improved properties while burrowed. Mana Burn and Impale have 50% increased cast range. Impale cooldown is reduced from 13 to 9, and Spiked Carapace instantly stuns any enemy units within 300 area of effect without requiring them to hurt him first. Casting Vendetta causes Burrow to end. I assume you can remove Burrow without casting Vendetta though, right? This is really interesting. I don't know if this is worth getting, but it's a cool option. Invisible and unable to move or attack, and you get 40% damage resistance. That's all damage, and you're regenerating 1.5% of your health. If you have 1,000 HP, that's 15 HP per second. So keep that in mind. It's not that much. It's like having a Tango and a half. It's like using a Tango. A slight regen. I guess it costs no mana, otherwise they would have mentioned that. So it basically gives you free ways to regen. You're off the map. You're invisible. Those are all important things. And you can gank more. So buying it allows you to be on the map more, which is cool. But I feel like it's a little bit of a waste of money because you could be spending that on like 3 Dagon upgrades or something, or getting more damage to make your ganks better. What's the range increase? 50% increased cast range. So your Impale is a really long range. That's pretty big because you can stun more heroes. Your Mana Burn has a decreased cooldown, and the range is much higher. And your Spiked Carapace instantly stuns any enemy units. Oh, that's right. Impale is reduced by 13 to 9. Mana Burn is not. So your Impale is deadly. You're kind of turning yourself into a siege tower. And Spiked Carapace instantly stuns enemy units within 300 range of effect. That's pretty big. It's a 2.4 second stun. That's cool. We're going to see Nyx traps. I think this is okay to get, honestly. I think this is okay to get. Because it gives you the ability to stun your opponents with Spiked Carapace. That's cool. You're basically getting a 2.4 second 300 AoE stun after a 1 second cast time. You can basically blink, Impale. That's kind of bad because you want the cooldown to be reduced. Ideally, this is what's going to happen. You blink, you burrow, you Impale. And then after the Impale runs out, blink, burrow, Impale, Mana Burn, Spiked Carapace after the Impale is done, 2.4 more seconds of stun, and then you can use Vendetta to break the burrow, hit a guy, then you should be able to Impale again, because it should be almost off cooldown at that point, because it was a 9-second cooldown if you burrow first. So it's not instantly castable. It's a 1 second cast time. That's pretty long. It's like 1/1000. Done. Like, they can definitely react to it, but it gives you potential to be really strong. And while you're doing this, you have 40% damage resistance. So you're kind of like a better initiating hero now, I think. It's pretty cool. I like this change. I think this is viable. You could potentially buy this after Blink if you don't want to get Dagon. Or you could get Dagon 1 and then get an Eggs. I think is possible. I think this is pretty cool. I like this a lot. I think this is viable. Omni-Eye Purification cast point is increased. Swipe up to that. Oracle Purifying Flames and mana cost is reduced. So the hero is seen as underpowered and is being buffed. Purifying Flames is the nuke that heals. Purifying Flames cooldown reduced. This is the nuke that heals. That's ridiculous. That's such a low cooldown. It can now target non-hero units. That's good. Before it was really hard to farm with this hero, so this will be a nice buff to it. You can heal your creeps potentially with this, but I don't think that's abusive. It's just to let you be able to farm. The hero was terrible at farming before, because your only ability that would hit creeps was your second skill, which made you right-click harder, and your first skill, but that was based on an AoE, which was kind of unreliable. So if you do want to kill one high HP hero or unit, you can. That's good. False Promise no longer makes the target invisible. Okay. Continuously removes debuffs and buffs instead of only when it first cast. And the duration is reduced. And the cooldown is massively increased. Alright. This is what this ability should have been when it was first made. I love playing Oracle. I actually really like playing Oracle. But it was such a weird ultimate. It was like the hero was like really all in on its ultimate being overpowered. The making your target invisible thing, it was a good thing, but it was kind of weird. It was overall very good though. Like his ultimate was very good, but it was too low cooldown. I felt 80, 60, 40 feels balanced to me. The invisibility thing is like, I think this is kind of a nerf in some ways. This is a nerf against using Oracle with snowball carries, I would say. That part kind of sucks, but I think it's overall a good buff, because now what it's basically doing is you can say Oracle, you pair Oracle with your carry that doesn't want to buy BKB. And that's what this allows you to do. It continuously removes debuffs and disables instead of only when first cast, which means that you throw it on your Ursa jumps into the team fight, and you cast False Promise on him. And they can see him, and they can do damage to him. But they can't stun him, they can't hex him, they can't do any of that stuff. They can't slow him. Continuously removes debuffs and disables. Continuously. For 6, 7, and 8 seconds. I think this is a really good change to the hero. It counters disables. And this gives... Oracle is now a hero that allows you to be good against disables. And there's very little in the game that does that. It's basically like Abaddon kind of does that, or Bind a BKB does that. So Oracle is like a free BKB now for your carries. Jump in, do whatever you want. You can still die from taking damage, but Oracle's also going to be healing you with Purifying Flames, and it's a lower cooldown, and it's lower mana cost. So I like this change. It's cool. And the invising was fucking obnoxious anyways, because if you're ever chasing somebody and you pop a dust, if you're chasing an invisible hero and you pop dust on him, false promise just removes the dust. So that was annoying. The invisibility thing was just a little too, it didn't quite fit with the hero, and now things make more sense, I feel. Continuously removes debuffs and disables. I really like this change. I think it's in some ways a nerf to the hero, but the cool part is that it gives the hero a purpose, and that's what the hero is slightly missing. And I feel like the hero really has a purpose now. I really like this. It's really cool. So it's a good counter against Lion as well. It's kind of like an ultimate. It's like casting Dark Pact on Slark for 6 seconds. That's really cool. I mean, it's going to be obnoxious to play against, I guess, but you can still kill them with burst damage, you know? And the duration is a little bit lower, so just do damage with them. Just do damage to them and they die, and it doesn't matter, right? So, and this also means that oracles are only gonna be good if people know how to play the hero, which is good for me. All right, Owl Devourer added Aghanim Scepter, Sanity's Eclipse. Upgrade now affects everyone in the area effect with Astral Imprisonment after it deals its damage. What does that mean? Now affects everyone in the area of effect with Astral Imprisonment. Oh, okay. I see. Does that mean that everybody gets Astral Imprisoned when you use the Aghanim Scepter Sanity's Eclipse? Is that what that means? If so, it's a huge buff into OD after it deals this damage. It's kind of cool. Very interesting. You're basically saying, like, all of our opponents are banished for 4 seconds, which is really cool. Potentially very strong and game breaking. You could banish all the supports in the backline, kill the cores in 4 seconds. Or you get Refresher on them. Ag's Refresher OD is actually viable now. You cast Ags on them, they get banished. Does damage, they get banished. Your int goes up by, like a huge amount per hero you cast it on. 10 int per hero. Bam, your int goes up by 30. You refresh, you cast it again. Does more damage because you have more int now, and banishes again. Steals more damage. You can steal up to 20 damage, basically, with the Refresher Ags. This makes Refresher Ags really good, I think. And you could potentially go straight into that build. You don't necessarily have to build Hex, Orchid, all that stuff. You could actually, I think, go Treads, Force, Ags, Refresher. You've got the mana for it. It would banish people. It might make your teammates a little mad, but if you do it correctly, you could get... If you cast it on a 5-man group of people, we're going to see the clips, of course, but if you cast it on a 5-man group of people, you increase your int by 50, which means your ultimate does like an extra, 9 times that? It's basically like an extra 500 damage. This is really good change. And it makes OD a different hero than he was being played before. Before he was being played as a right-click carry. Now you can kind of play him as a disabling kind of hero. It's interesting. And the other cool part is that Ags also increases his orb damage because it increases his mana pool by a decent amount. And I guess Refresher doesn't very much. It's a plus damage item, so Refresher's kind of bad, but... And maybe it's not worth getting Refresher, but I think getting Ags is potentially really cool here. But I think getting the Refresher is the cool part, because I don't know if when you cast your ultimate and it banishes them, it says before. Wait. Yeah, because it affects them with Astral after it deals his damage. So you don't get the buff of those people, those 3 or 4 people being banished before it does your damage. So I think if you get Refresher, you do get that extra Astral. You get that triple Astral or whatever to make your second ult do more. And also no longer triggers the mana drain and does not increase the damage multiplier by 1, which were kind of really shitty versions of the Ags anyways. But basically, yeah, guaranteeing that mana drain is much harder now. And that's how they tried to make it viable. They said, okay, maybe it doesn't need to just do more damage. Maybe we need to use it as a way to drain mana. But it wasn't worth it to get Ags on OD as a pick against like Medusa, for example, when you could just pick Line and get a level 4 mana drain. It's way less going all in on a skill build, you know? So I think that's a good change. A cool change to OD that makes him potentially viable. AoE monster, basically. And Ags is much more viable. Phoenix Fire Spirits now does an obstructed reveal of the area it hits for 1 second. Okay, that's cool. So you get slight vision where the Fire Spirits hit. Buff to Phoenix. I know C9 loves the hero, but I don't think he's necessarily super OP. I think this is a fine change. It's barely a buff. Puck Waning Rift damage increased to do more at level 1. Slight buff to Puck. Pudge Rot moves slow, scales better based on the level. I think that's fine. Pugna Decrep enemy slow is worse at level 1, but scales better. Interesting. The enemy magic damage amplification is worse, and the duration is 3. Okay, this is why. I was like, why are they nerfing it? They nerfed it in both of these, with the exception of level 4, obviously. But the duration is up to 3.5, which is the huge duration. It's a very, very big duration with 1 skill point, but the scaling is worse. but it's still really good scaling at level 4, and the damage amplification was buffed. So basically the skill is better at level 1, though it has a slightly higher cooldown. But that's worth it, right? As a support, and the slow is much worse, but the duration is so much higher that I think it's going to balance out. So you're getting like more than 50% more. You're getting like 60% or something. You're getting way more slow duration, even if the slow is slower. So I think this is a nice buff to Pugna. Makes him better at level 6, for example, and much better in lane as well. Although it does do less damage amp, so it's a good. I think it's mainly a buff to support Pugna. It'll make him better against physical carries in the early game when you only have 1 level decrep because it lasts for so long. It's like a Ghost Scepter. Okay. Life drain, damage, and restore per second is buffed pretty massively. I think this is good. I think it was a little bit too weak at level 1. Life drain cast range is scaling now. Worse at level 1, better at level 4. And the Aghanim Scepter upgraded life drain no longer increases cast range. Huh. I don't know how much it increased cast range before, because I can't talk about how much this affects things. I'm not sure. Ricky's Smokescreen no longer slows attack speed, but it does reduce the turn rate by 30%. Okay. That's pretty good because when you blink strike somebody, you're behind them. So with Napalm and Ricky, you could potentially have a really obnoxious lineup. I'm sure we'll see videos of that. Rubik No Field now also affects creeps. That's good for pushing. Caustic Finale duration from 8 to 6, so it's reduced. And now always triggers via unit death or when its duration expires. That's cool. Ooh. If triggered by timer, expiration deals 30%. Okay, that's balanced. I was like, it would be way too good if you could just attack a creep like 4 times. It'd be like every time you attack a creep, you're doing 70 damage. That's crazy. So this is cool. I think this can make Sand King a much better mid laner or 1v1 laner against melee heroes. He was already pretty good, but he's better in some ways now. It also no longer resets the duration on a unit that already has the debuff, because basically if you wanted to explode, you'd have to stop attacking, and that's kind of silly. It also applies the 20% movement speed slow when the damage triggers via unit death or when timer expires. It's good that they changed Caustic Finale, because it's a skill that almost nobody skills right now, because as a support, it's not needed. You don't need it. If you're farming, it's needed, but nobody plays Sand King as a farmer, so this gives Sand King the opportunity to play as a farmer and have some advantage there. So I like this buff to Sand King. It's not a buff to the ways that he's currently played. It's a buff to ways that he can be played, but it isn't currently played. Which, again, increases hero diversity. That's one of the best ways that Dota 2 is succeeding right now. There's tons of heroes that can be useful. Shadow Demon, I've been waiting for your buffs. You're there. Mana cost from 50 to 40, and the Purge Aghanim Scepter upgrade now applies break. Oh, hell yes. I will take that. That is pretty fucking good. I already thought Aghanim Scepter was really good. What are the chances, by the way, that the hero that I really like has an ability called Demonic Purge? Like, I have to make an item set for Shadow Demon now, right, guys? Like, Aghanim Scepter upgrade now applies Break, which is the disabling of passive upgrades. We're going to go back for a second and find Break. Oops, that's what we want. Hex no longer applies. What's the break mechanic again? These are the passives that are now added to the list of passives disabled with break. So these are the things that Shadow Demon Ultimate with Aghanims now destroys. Okay? Disables while it's on. And the Shadow Demon Ultimate is pretty big, right? Let's find Shadow Demon. Go to his ulti. And it lasts for 5 seconds. Okay? So for 5 seconds you will have break on somebody. So Dragon Blood, Mortal Strike, Degen Aura, Grievel's Greed, Drunken Brawler is a big one. That's a really big one. Aftershock doesn't matter. Counter Helix is big for Axe. Stops Great Cleave on Sven. That's really good. Craggy Exterior, Slardar's Bash, Shapeshifts, Critical Strike's okay. Basically every crit stops return, stops the reactive armor for Timbersaw. That's pretty big. Curse of Avernus, Natural Order, Empowering Haste, Spell Shield. Holy shit. Really? So you can break Spell Shield temporarily by using the Shadow Demon ulti. That's really... Wait, is that Anti-Mage Spell Shield? I'm thinking Mana Shield. Spell Shield is Anti-Mage's passive. That's still really good. That's like 40-some% magic resistance. Really big. Thirst is Bloodseeker's third ability. That's really good. Marksmanship. That's Drow Ultimate, Precision Aura. Both of these get removed. Like, look how good SD Ultimate is now. This feels really good. This is the time of Shadow Demon, man. Presence of the Dark Lord is Shadow Demons minus armor. Blade Dance is Juggernaut's crit. Coup de Grace is the ultimate of Phantom Assassin. That's her ultimate, guys, and it gets stopped temporarily. Vengeance Aura, Backstab, Headshot, Take Aim. This means Sniper's going to attack very short. Side Blades, Geminate Attack. Lunar Blessing is Luna's thing. Moonglaive, Luna's thing. Desolate is Spectre's second ability. Janata is the crit from Bounty Hunter. Geostrike, Essence Shift is Slark's. Fervor is... What is Fervor? I can't remember Fervor. I don't remember what skill Fervor is. Arcane Aura is OD's ability. Static Field is Zeus's. Heartstopper is Sadist. Overload is Storm. That's pretty big nerf to Storm, actually. Good way to counter him, even though you can jump around. Fiery Soul is Lena. Untouchable, Nullfield, Gravekeeper's Cloak, Spirit Breaker's Entangle, and Demolish. There's a lot of really good uses for the Shadow Demon Ultimate now. Okay, so that's really cool. And the other cool part is that Shadow Poison mana cost is decreased, so farming with this here is even better. I've been playing a lot more Soul Ring Shadow Demon lately, and I think it's almost time for SD to be OP. I'm serious. Because the Aghanim Scepter upgrade was already good with 3 charges, in my opinion. It's very good against melee carries. It's kind of bad against range carries is the problem. Shadow Demon is not very good against range carries, but against melee hard carries, he's really good, I think. Situationally, very strong. And if you get Ags now, which you can definitely farm with a Soul Ring and Shadow Poison, especially because Shadow Poison costs less mana now. Used to cost 150, now it only casts, 40 times 3. So you can jungle a little bit faster and have more mana. But with the Aghanim Scepter now applying Break, you can disable a lot of stuff. And this applies stuff that Break used to apply to. So we're talking Backtrack, we're talking Evasion, stuff like that. It works against Phantom Assassin. The list I read was just new abilities that it now stops. It used to disable, Evasion, all that stuff. And the other is Evasion, Backtrack. Did it do Backtrack? I don't know if it does Backtrack. It might not do Backtrack. I might be wrong on that. But all that stuff I read was there's a lot of good things that situationally Shadow Demon can be picked and built to counter, which is great. More ways for heroes to be situationally useful and situationally be picked, which is what you want to do in a competitive game with this many choices. Shadow Shaman has base strength increased from 19 to 21. His strength gain is increased as well. So he has an extra 38 HP at level 1. And he gains an extra 0.2 strength per level, which is 20% of 19. So that's like 1.9 times 2. It's like an extra 4 HP per level. He gets an extra 4 HP per level, and he has an extra 38 HP at the start of the game. So slightly more HP for the hero, decent buff. Silencer base movement speed decrease. Last word initial cast allowance window from 5 to 4 seconds. Okay, so that means that your opponents, there's a higher chance that you'll trigger the never mind. A higher chance that you'll trigger the disarm, which almost never happened before. And now applies a 14, 16, 18, 20% movement speed slow when it triggers. This is a nice buff, I think. The disarm thing was, it almost never happened. Recording a patch video, then streaming afterwards, but maybe tomorrow or tonight. Okay. Last word initial cast. Basically, last word almost never disarmed previously because people would pop BKB. They would almost always cast a spell, almost always before the duration was up, right? That part was kind of useless. It almost never got touched. Last word now applies. Can't talk now. Literally stopping to talk to you. You are on recording. Don't say anything weird. Okay. Last word no longer disarms, and it applies to slow. People break the slow. They will break. Okay, if they don't cast a spell, it'll slow them. It's still almost never going to happen, but it gives you a disable. I think that's okay. Slardar, Slithian Crush damage has been buffed to all levels. I think Slardar is... This is not going to change him into being overpowered, but I think he's close to being A very, very strong hero. Sniper, prepare to get wrecked. Agility gain is reduced by 0.4. Every level he gets 0.4 less agility. His shrapnel recharge time is massively increased, which is 15 seconds. That's really big. It was already a long time to refresh your charges, so now it hurts even more. His shrapnel delay increased is from 0.8 to 1.4, which is the amount of time after you cast the shrapnel for it to hit the ground, which means that you have more time to blink. You have 1.4 seconds to blink or evade the damage. And now gives vision when the shrapnel lands rather than instantly. That's a good buff. So now when he casts shrapnel, he has 1.4 seconds before he can click the opponent instead of instantly. So that's a good nerf. Headshot can now miss, and assassinate damage is reduced. Is this going to be enough? I think this will make a huge impact on it. Sniper will still be useful as a late game carry, but it's harder to chase people because shrapnel doesn't instantly give vision. It's 1.4 second delayed, which means you might miscast it, which means they might be outside of the shrapnel range by the time that you have vision of them. And assassinate does less, so basically your potential to chase somebody down, especially at level 6, it's pretty significantly lowered by 35 damage. That's pretty big. It's actually a 10% decrease in damage. 10% is pretty fair, I think. And the shrapnel recharge time is really high. And his damage over time is slowly gained. In 10 levels, he will have 4 less agility, which is only 4 damage. It's not that much. This is very minor, slightly less damage, much less shrapnels. Shrapnel will take longer to hit, which means you have a good chance of being able to blink dodge it, by far. And it doesn't give vision instantly. It lands in 1.4 seconds. That's a huge decrease to shrapnel vision, which was one of the problems with you running away from Sniper. He would drop shrapnels all the time because they were always up because the cooldown was too low. And now it takes more time for the shrapnels to hit, which means you have a better chance of blinking. You have a better chance of not being in the AoE when he lands it because it takes longer. It's basically harder for Sniper to put it in the correct place now. And then if you're running far away, if he puts it in the wrong place, he won't even realize until 1.4 seconds after he casts it, which is a huge amount of time. So, I think this is a really good nerf to a Sniper. It's not super heavy-handed. It breaks his annoying parts. You can still pick him as a hero that counters so-and-so heroes. And Headshot can now miss. Before, when Headshot procced, did I call it Headshot? When Headshot procced before 40%, it would automatically go through evasion. So Headshot can now be countered by butterflies and Heaven's Halberds without Sniper having to buy an MKB. Or he now has to buy an MKB to counter those things. Before, Headshot would give you a 40% no matter what hit you on evasion. So basically would say, oh, you have 35% evasion? Well, multiply that by 40%, and that's how much less viable. Or it's basically like you have 35% evasion, you multiply that by 0.6, and, oops. I want to open the calculator. So if it does 0.35, and then we multiply it by 0.6, that's how much evasion a butterfly really gave you versus Sniper. It was 21%. Not 35. It gave you 21%. Sniper would hit through... Did I do that wrong? Because 40% of the time he would hit through the evasion. So I did that wrong, I think. These numbers might come out the same, but times 0.4. This is the amount of time he would hit through that, so it's 0.14. So if we do 0.35 minus 0.14. Yeah, the numbers come out the same. I did it right. Oops, I did that wrong. Oops. 0.35 minus 0.14 equals... Yeah, I did the math right the first time. I made the mental jumps correctly, but then I wasn't sure if I did. So basically a butterfly gave you 21% evasion rather than giving you 35 against Sniper if you had a butterfly. So now if you're ahead of a Sniper and you buy an illusion or evasion item, or if you're a PA, you're now better against him. So PA is going to be a lot stronger versus Sniper. We'll probably see PA picked more as a Sniper counter. So Sniper is definitely worse now than he used to be. PA was already pretty good against Sniper, but now she's even better. Much better. Because before it was like, 60% of 50? So it's basically like you had 30% evasion against Sniper instead of 60 or 50. So it's a lot worse for Sniper now if somebody has evasion. So you can definitely get an item advantage over this hero now, more so than you could before, because most of his damage is from hitting. So Spectre, reality no longer kills the target illusion, now swaps positions. Interesting. I assume it still makes a sound. I think this is just for the purpose that if you reality to the wrong place in a team fight, it doesn't leave you there stuck, you know? The other cool part about this is that if you reality... Yeah, basically if you go to illusion but you want to change targets halfway through for whatever reason, it doesn't just blow up all the... You can't just kill all your illusions by accidentally clicking too much. Very, very slight buff to the hero, pretty inconsequential, more like a this is how it probably should have been thing. But the reason that they didn't integrate this right away probably was because it could have been potentially too big. So even if they had this plan the whole time, they're like, let's do the first step of this buff before we do the full step, because we don't want to make it too good. Empower and Haste cooldown from 16 to 12. This is a pretty big buff to Spearbreaker, in my opinion, because when you use Empower and Haste, after it cools, as it's cooling down, while it's cooling down, your aura is actually slower. So you can use this more often, and it doesn't slow you as long afterwards. So it gives you something active to use. Spearbreaker was picked quite a bit at Starlighter, but he kind of phased out as the tournament went on. His teams got better at TP defending. So I think it's okay this hero got a buff. It doesn't bother me that much. It's a very, very slight increase, or it's a very slight increase to the viability of the hero. Storm Seer base movement speed is reduced by 5 more, and his Ball Lightning Flying Vision from 1,000 to 400. I think this is a nice nerf to the hero. The hero was a little strong. The main reason that this was a little bit too strong is because it was too easy to ball somewhere and find exactly where your opponents are. Now you have to kind of know where they are before you ball. So you can't just like look for kills kind of as easily. You can't find heroes hiding in the trees as easily. That one's really important. And the base movement speed reduction means you're even more reliant on mana, which is not that bad. It also slightly decreases farming speed by 5 movement speed, which is very small, but you know, very slight. This is a very slight nerf to the hero. This is a nerf to bad storms right here. So it's not really that bad of a nerf for Storm Spirit. It's basically a nerf to bad storms and the chances of happening to find somebody that you shouldn't find. Because this is Flying Vision, so it should be a little bit decreased, I think. So I think these are fine nerfs to Storm that don't really remove his ability to be amazing. Sven Warcry bonus armor is buffed up to 20. Oh my god. That is like getting close to Zeus, or when Axe uses Berserker's Call. What the hell happened to techies? Okay. Landmine activation delay is reduced. So you can... Okay, when you drop the mine to when it blows up, it's reduced. That means you can use them in combat better. 0.5 seconds is very fast. So that's like, drop the mine, boom. 1,000. Yeah, it's like, drop the mine, boom. Just blows up. Stasis Trap activation delay is reduced. This one was needed, I think. And the detonation delay. So that means from casting the Stasis Trap to it blowing up, it's 3 seconds instead of 4 seconds. It used to be 2 for it to activate, and then 2 for it to blow up afterwards. And this also means that walking past the Stasis Trap has a higher chance for you to land, for you to get hit. If the Stasis Trap is just on the ground, you walk past it, 1.5 seconds instead of 2. So a higher, basically makes Stasis Traps moderately better, I think. The Suicide Squad attack cooldown is reduced heavily at the 4th level and decently at the 1st level. And the Minefield Sign cooldown is extremely increased, which basically does nothing to the hero. It also requires techies to walk precisely to target spot. It has an area of effect targeting cursor, and also has a limited lifetime. So basically, it's less in the game. It's interesting they're fucking balancing the Minefield Sign, because it doesn't actually do anything but mind games. So the cooldown is tripled, 6-minute cooldown. It only lasts for 3 minutes, and you have to walk right on the spot, and as an area of effect targeting cursor. I don't know why it has an area of effect targeting cursor, but it does apparently. Techie's Aghanim Scepter upgrade. Maybe they changed the visual model or something. I'm not sure. Techie's Aghanim Scepter upgrade now causes the Minefield Sign to make all landmines, stasis traps, and remote mines. Okay, this is why they changed it. To make all landmines, stasis traps, and remote mines within 125 area of effect immune to True Sight. Can only have 1 sign at the time. They legitimately added it in as a skill. And you get Aghanim Scepter on techies, so it's not weird to have this. It makes the minefield, it gives them all True Sight protection. Can only have 1 sign. So this is actually... The mind games are real now, okay? The mind games are real. You can... Basically, it guarantees that your opponents do not know if there are mines there. For sure. You can walk over it, they'll blow up. But if they're remotes, you don't know. Because the techies chooses to blow this up. So you can do mind games. You can put them on the high ground and say, go ahead. Go high ground. And see if they chance it. And then you can blow mines up on them. Or you can place it in a spot where you're expecting them to go high ground. And then prevent them from doing so. And with the cooldown so delayed, up to 6 minutes, this gives you a real option to do mind games. This is really cool. I really like this buff. I don't think it's worth getting Refresher for it. Which is fucking crazy that you're going to get Refresher for a fucking Minefield Sign. But it's cool. It's really cool. I like this change. It makes techies more viable against Gem, which means it's more viable in the pro scene. And it's not such a spammable cooldown. That's something you always have to deal with. And remember, it's also a visible reminder. It's not like it's invisible. You'll see like, okay, there's a real fucking chance that that guy put his minefield sign on his mine, so we can't kill them. There's a real possibility. But it might not be there. And you can play around it. You can blink to the high ground where the mines aren't, for example. So, Templar Assassin meld cooldown is decreased by 1. Terrorblade Reflection cast range is slightly increased. His illusion outgoing damage is buffed heavily at level 4. 70% to 100. That's a huge increase. That's like Chaos Knight illusions. That's a really big buff. Tidehunter Kraken Shell damage block is increased up to 48 at level 4. Timbersaw reactive armor now triggers when attacks land rather than when attacks begin. And the reactive armor... Oh, you know what? That's a really big nerf, actually, to the hero. At least on ranged heroes. Because if you think about it, it's not a big nerf, but... Let's imagine the arrow. I'm shooting an arrow, Timbersaw. I shoot the arrow. Okay. I maybe been confused slightly. Shoot the arrow. Before, the arrow was immediately... Or the armor was upped by 1. As soon as your attack started. So every single attack that you throw at Timbersaw as a ranged hero, his armor would increase before your attack landed. I think it works now that if you shoot your arrow, as soon as your arrow hits, the armor goes up by 1, and then he takes damage. I think that's what that means. So it's still, every attack on Timbersaw is still reduced by 1 armor as you attack him. But now, as your projectiles are flying through the air, his armor isn't increased. So a range creep doesn't like instantly buff up his armor like a melee creep does. It's very, very small. It's basically like the amount of time that it takes. If you're only hitting with ranged heroes, then the armor increases as the attack lands. It's like, there's some like metagame, there's some meta stuff you could think about that, but I think it's very small. This is very small, it's just consistency. Laser Hero Blind Duration increased, scaling, so up to 4.5 at level 4. VR mana cost is decreased at level 4, actually decreased at all levels. Aghanim Scepter Laser no longer has additional cast range, and it now refracts to visible enemy heroes with a 550 bounce rate. That's actually really good buff. Really good buff to the hero. Basically an AoE laser that blinds for 4.5 seconds, so... Could be very good against illusion heroes like PL, for example. Because you can basically not only lizard them all, you can laser them all, but you can also blind them for 4.5 seconds. That's pretty cool. And nobody's going to build Ags anyways. They might now. I think it's possibly worth it now because you have an AoE laser, which is pure damage, by the way. So that does like 500 magic damage. It's a really big nuke. Might see Aghanims picked up on Tinker now. Maybe. Tiny Toss Grab Radius increased. And now grabs the closest unit rather than a random unit. That's a balance to Tiny that is going to destroy randomness and make the hero a little bit more viable. We'll see more Blink Tiny. We saw some this last tournament, and it was pretty good. Treant Protector, Eyes in the Forest, area of effect reduced slightly. I think that's fine. The hero is pretty balanced right now, I think. Control Warlord, Berserker's Rage no longer provides plus 15 damage. Okay. That's his melee version. Ranged Whirling Axes no longer provide 800 vision. Melee Whirling Axes no longer provide 500 vision. Battle Trance duration reduced by 2 seconds. That's pretty big. And Berserker's Rage is no longer removed on death. Pretty significant troll nerfs here. The Berserker's Rage one is huge. 15 damage is a lot of damage. So his overall DPS is going to be severely reduced. He doesn't have vision advantage. He doesn't have any way to give himself vision with his spells anymore like he did before. So it's going to be a lot easier to juke the hero. And his ultimate duration is much lower, and that's for the whole team. So I think these are appropriate nerfs. These nerfs actually feel, to me, more heavy-handed than the sniper ones. I personally feel that way. But they don't break the hero completely. You can still play the hero if you want to abuse him for what he does. The hero will still farm. No, he won't farm as fast because he does get a damage nerf here. I feel like Troll's nerfs are... What they're basically doing is they're removing the abusive parts of the heroes. Sniper was like almost impossible to get away from because of the amount of shrapnels he had, and he didn't get punished for using all of them that much because they respawn fast. Sniper's Chase is much worse from far, far ranges where it was disgusting. And Troll is also having some find the hero issues while also reducing his DPS. So both heroes, their ability to chase was nerfed, which I think was good because their ability to chase was a little too strong. So definitely try your best to juke Trolls now in trees. Tusk Ice Shard's mana cost reduced from 120 to 90. The cooldown is also reduced pretty much at all levels, especially level 3 and level 4, but not that much. But the mana cost went down, that's good, because he definitely had some mana problems. Ice Shard's vision reveal from 0.5 seconds to 2 seconds. Okay. Snowball speed is now a constant 675 and no longer auto-loads units in 100 range. Can now add allies to Snowball when it's moving. Interesting. Aghanim Scepter to him adds a new ability called Walrus Kick. Kicks the target back 900 units. Kick slows by 40% for 4 seconds. 12-second cooldown. Doesn't say it does damage, but it can move opponents, target, allies or opponents. So he's kind of like Earth Spirit a little bit here. Can now add allies to snowball while it's moving. So the speed is always going to be the same. I think 675 is kind of fast, but it's not like going to be really fast ever. And you can only add while you're moving. Oh, you can add allies. So you can still use it as like, save my allies for like 3 seconds while we're sitting in the snowball. But the movement speed doesn't change. Oh, and also you're not slowed by slows. So that's another thing. So it's kind of a buff. And you can add allies while it's moving, so you don't have to be standing right next to them. You don't have to get a blink dagger now. But if you put them in while you're moving, the duration is much slower. And the Aghanim Scepter allows you to push your allies around, which is kind of useful with blink. I wonder if this slows your allies as well. 900 units is a lot. So it's pretty big. You could definitely initiate with this, like blink kick, for example. It's probably not easy, but you can probably do it. You know you can probably do, though, that's probably really cool. You blink, you punch your ally up in the air, or your opponent up in the air so that he's not moving, and then you kick him the correct direction, and while you're kicking him, while he's flying away, you cast your snowball. And then, so you're basically like you're like a bat rider, basically. Blink, punch him so he stops moving, you kick him to your allies, and you snowball to safety. Basically, you kick him back to your team, and then you snowball after him so that you're invulnerable to get back to your team. That's probably what you can do. I think this is viable, especially as a support. As a support, this should be the item you buy after Blink Dagger. After Blink, you didn't really have an item to buy, but I think this is the core item to buy now. Cool difference. Cool change. You know, I should be like writing down heroes that I need to make videos of because they're really cool. I'll have to do that later. I'll look through the list. Undying Slurp is considered 1 damage instance on the enemy, so it doesn't like destroy refraction or tree armor anymore. Remove Tombstone Zombie targeting from Soul Rip. Tombstone Zombies now require 1 attack to kill rather than having 30 health. Zombies require 2 hits from creeps. So Soul Rip is nerfed, right? Oh, I think this just means you can't cast Soul Rip on your zombies accidentally anymore, like you could before. I don't think I ever did that, but it's definitely possible when you have that many zombies on top of somebody. You could have misclicked. So it's harder to cast. You can't cast Soul Rip on your zombies anymore, which is fine. And rather than having 30 health, which is arbitrary, the zombies just have 1 hit to kill. So that's a buff towards players that play against Razor, I guess, or Enfeeble. It's pretty irrelevant. This is I guess the important part is that you can jungle better with Tombstone now, I bet. Because the zombies don't get one-shot by neutrals anymore. So that's cool. You can possibly jungle with Undying. You might be able to stack as well. If you can stack and clear camps with Undying, this is potentially a really good buff to the hero, because you could jungle with him. Tombstone's a pretty long cooldown, but it's kind of cool. Reworked Enrage. Probably one ability that didn't need to get reworked. It was kind of boring. Enrage, Ursa goes into Frenzy, causing him to take 80% less damage from any source, and for his attacks deal 2.5, 3 times the Fury Swipe's damage. Removes any existing debuffs upon cast. Really cool change. Fury Swipe's multiplier changes. The duration is 4 seconds, so it's much shorter. And the cooldown is lower. So the problem with Ursa is that you need a mobility item, you need a BKB, and you want to increase your damage, and you basically want to increase your damage, and you want disables. He has weak disable. He still needs a blink dagger, but now if somebody casts a venomous gale or something, you remove it. Or if somebody you can't remove a hex or a stun, right? Because you're going to be stunned, so you can't use it. But you can use it defensively in addition to aggressively. If you use it defensively, you can't use it afterwards. Well, I guess you can, because you can probably like use it and then walk a little faster and hit somebody. We might be able to get away playing Ursa with no blink, just going movement speed, but it's still a little greedy. I think you're going to have to still go blink. It'll be really cool. I like this change. Again, you can't use Fury or Enrage. You can't use Enrage. Actually, you can. I was going to say you can't use it to jungle as much. The cooldown's really high. It used to be like 20 seconds or something, 30 seconds. But it does Fury Swipes multiplayer. So we might see the skill build on Ursa shift towards more Fury Swipes. Wait. Fury Swipes is his 3rd skill. 2nd skill is Enrage or something. Overpower. So basically you do more damage from your third skill. So you can use this to finish off Roshan easily. So you can probably Rosh earlier with Ursa, I would say. You can probably Rosh a little earlier with Ursa. Because during that 4-second period you can cast Overpower and you can slap for like triple the damage or 2 times the damage. I guess it's not that bad at level 1. I'd like this change. It's nice. It helps him be less countered by a single Shadow Poison Dagger or something like that. That's good. Venomous Scale take damage from 0, 3, 60, 90 to a slight buff. So it finally does damage. It also breaks Blink Daggers now. I don't think this is a significant enough buff for Venomancer to be good, but it does allow him to break Blinks, which is actually pretty good if you think about it. Blinks are really popular right now. If you give a 1-point skill that guarantees that you break Blinks, it's good. But I think Venomancer is still a shit hero right now. He's okay as a core, but he's a really bad support. I firmly believe that. He's a good anti-blink hero, I guess, but that's about it. Viper Strike cooldown is reduced very slightly. Very small buff to the hero. He was played a little bit at Star Ladder. Visage Gravekeeper's Cloak recharge time from 6 to 4, so much faster. Familiars no longer have 300, 450, and 600 health. They now require 4 hero attacks to be killed. Creeps/illusions do 1 out of 4 damage, towers do half. So creeps and illusions do very little damage to the familiars. Towers have to hit them quite a bit. I think this is a nice buff to the hero because there are a couple of spells that just made Visage familiars terrible. And the spells are basically anything that does pure damage. So OD, wreck the familiars. Enchantress, wreck the familiars. Anybody, like Bristleback, wreck the familiars. Because he would just, if you shoot out a lot of physical AoE damage, it would just kill the heroes. Cleave as well would wreck the familiars. Pure damage, cleave, physical damage, and an AoE. The familiars couldn't do anything. So this will make the familiars much stronger. 4 hero attacks to be killed. A lot harder to be killed. I think this is a necessary buff to Visage. This is one of the things that also made Pugna worthless, was that like if you had a Pugna and you drop another ward, then people would just send their Forge Spirits after it and they'd kill it on like 3 hits. Or they'd send their neutral creeps after it or something. It makes it harder to deal with. It makes it, and it puts it in a balanced way. Like you can still counter it with attack speed and stuff. But killing those familiars is much harder now. I think you can do a lot more aggressive things with them, and they're not as hard countered by a couple of heroes that just happen to be in the game. Nobody ever is like, I want to pick this hero because I want to counter the Visage familiars. It just happens, and you're like, wow, my familiars are actually worthless because my opponents just like cast Purify once and they die, and then they get 200 gold. It's like, why did I pick this hero, you know? And this is going to be a big buff as well. I think it's going to be worth maxing it out a little bit earlier. Definitely going maybe 144, because this research time means that the hero's going to be more tanky. I think we're almost there. JK, we're halfway. Visage, her Warlock, Fatal Bond's cast range increased from 900 to 1000. The cast time is much reduced, and the Chaotic Offering Golem's health regeneration is buffed at all levels. A lot at level 3. Weaver, the Swarm duration rescaled to 16 at all levels. The Swarm damage is 20 at all levels. The Swarm attack rate from every 1.35 seconds. Okay, so as you level up the Swarm now, it attacks faster. It was already a pretty good ability at level 1. I think it was okay to leave at 1 skill point, and now it's... The damage goes up, the duration is better, but the damage is not as good late game, but it attacks faster. Which means... The cool thing about this is before, it would lower the armor. It does lower the armor, right? But I assume it was based on every attack, right? So, before, you would say like, okay, it lasts for more time, and therefore lowers more armor, but it doesn't lower the armor very rapidly early. So if you want to lower their armor faster, you put more skill points into the skill. So if you want it just for vision, 1 skill point is good, and still a value point, but if you want to lower their armor really fast, you have to get more points. It's kind of like the Dazzle ulti, basically. You level it up, it lowers the armor faster, and it basically lowers their armor faster during the duration when you're probably going to do the most damage, which is the first 5 seconds. So if you get 4 skill points in this, you can reduce their armor by 5 in 5 seconds, whereas before it would be like 4 seconds, 3 seconds, or something like that at every skill point. But over the course of 20 seconds, this can reduce your opponent's armor by 20. That is really big. So Geminate is better now. I like this change. A very, very slight buff to the ability, I think, at level 1. And then by level 4, I think it's a much better ability, I would argue. I guess it does less damage per tick, but it does it more often. Geminate attack now launches the second projectile 0.25 seconds after the initial one fires instead of after impacting the target. That's a really big buff to the hero, especially when chasing, because it's kind of like how Geminate used to work in Dota 1. In Geminate Dota, it worked like that. It would like shoot out right away. It would basically be like when Geminate is up, you'd attack twice instantly. You'd be like attack, instead of like attack it hit and then the second one fires. This is a buff against evasive heroes too. maybe not Puck, for example, but against heroes that have evasion, if you miss them, it doesn't shoot the Geminate. And it also means that the Geminate cooldown it's the ability is on cooldown faster, which is really important. It's on cooldown faster, which means that it will be up faster. In the very short term, this is a huge buff for Geminate. And by short term, I mean like if you have like a 3-second battle or something, it's a big buff. If it's like an 8-second battle, it's very irrelevant because you're only talking about like a second. The time that it takes for your first Geminate to hit your target is the time that's lost. So in a very short term battle, it's a really big buff. So I think this will help Weaver harass a lot more. Added Aghanim Scepter to wear. Reduces the cooldown of time lapse to 20 seconds and allows time lapse to target allied heroes. So here's another version of an Ags that people probably won't be buying on Core Weaver, but it's something you can buy. Allows time lapse to target allied heroes. It's so good. 1,000 cast range. What a cool... God, that's so good. That's actually so good. I dare say that Weavers will sometimes buy this because it's like... God, that's so good. If any of your allies take a lot of damage, like are being bursted down, you time lapse them. I think this is almost too good, honestly. The downside is that you're playing a carry hero that is in no way a good support hero, in my opinion. In no way is Weaver going to be a good support hero. Maybe you max out the Swarm or something ridiculous like that, but I feel like there's no way that Weaver will be a good support hero. Therefore, if you do buy this item, and it does allow you to save your allies, you're playing like a support. It's kind of like giving every single fucking carry an Aghanim Scepter that allows them to play a partial support role if they want to in the late game. And that's cool. If they do want to play that. And in some cases, these Ags upgrades are actually really good. The Alchemist one is really cool. This Weaver one is really cool. It's really abusive, potentially. If they go on your other carry and he didn't pop BKB in time, bam, you time-lapse him. He's unstunned, pops his BKB, the fight begins. And your 4,000 gold item is like an Aegis. So I think there's a lot of uses for this. I really like the Ags increases. And the same thing goes. If you have an Alchemist on your team and you don't actually want to buy an Ags on your Weaver, by buying an Ags on Weaver, you're guaranteeing yourself time-lapse if you're playing the core Alchemist, which is pretty good. So I really like this Ags. This one's really cool. It doesn't necessarily make the hero OP as a carry, but still buffs him in cool ways. Wind Ranger Shackle Shot, cast point. So you cast Shackle faster. Enabled Winter Wyvern in Captain's mode. I'm pretty cool. Reworked Winter's Cursed? Is that his ultimate? Those cursed to attack their ally now take 70% less damage from all sources. Okay. Interesting. Area of Effect increased. Duration has increased at all levels, and the cooldown has increased at all levels. Okay. So the reason this ability was a little abusive... There's a couple more changes as well. The reason this ability was abusive was because you would cast it on somebody, and it would basically be like an AoE Berserker's Call. Not only just because they'd be attacking their ally, but because everybody else was disabled. So it was a bit too good for the fact that everybody was just can't do shit for 3 seconds. Like they're like, I can't do shit for 3 seconds. AoEs are hitting everybody. This sucks. So the downside is that it doesn't combo nearly so well with Splinter Blast, but Winter's Curse was rarely cast anyways, so it's maybe a little bit balanced here. I wonder if this is an over nerf in some ways, but the duration is so low that it's not that big of a deal. It's just you have to coordinate with your allies, because if you're like, oh, if you cast Winter's Curse and then your ally casts Ravage or something, you're like, well, they're stunned, but like they were already stunned and now they took 70% less damage. That's a huge number. I feel like this 70 is way too high, honestly. I think the hero's playable, but I don't think he's OP. I know a lot of people complain about his ultimate, but 70% is so big. It's so big. I feel like that's going to have to get reduced. I think that's too good. Too much of a nerf, that is. Because it's basically like if you get them to attack their weak Crystal Maiden, their carries take 70% less damage from your team basically. While they're attacking their ally. It's like, well, we basically have to set up stuns, but we don't want to do our damage abilities to them just yet. It's kind of weird. It's like you're doing damage, but you're saving your real damage for like when the Winter's Curse is over. And I think that's kind of counterintuitive. I understand that's an instant cast point ability, and the AoE is really big, but maybe because the AoE is a lot bigger, this will be worth it. But I mean, that is a fair buff right here. The duration is up, and the AoE is up, so the ability is better for killing one person. But I don't know. I'll have to see it played. I'll play him some more. Arctic Burn is now dispellable. That's his first skill. You can break it with the Fusel Blade. The damage per second from 6% of health to 8%, so a pretty big buff. Lasts for 6, so that's 40% damage instead of like, what, 30%? Pretty big difference. Pure to magic. Okay, so it was reduced in damage. Does magic damage now, and it no longer pierces spell immunity. It was a little too good, I felt, in the laning stage, because it's like, oh, every 60 seconds I reduce your HP by 30%. That's really good. Or it was 36, and this is now 8 times 6. $48. Just making sure. That's a lot. If you get a Veil, you actually reduce somebody's HP by half. That's pretty cool. And that's another cool thing about it, is that you're giving the ability. Veil is better on this hero now by far, I think. Because now you can reduce, Veil increases Arctic Burn and increases your second skill, Splinter Blast. So I think I like this change. Let me do some more math quick. What was it before? 6 times 6. That was 36 pure. But now it does 48. If we do 48 times 0.75, it actually still does the same damage as it did before. So the damage is unchanged, but it now does magic damage. So it's worse against Anti-Mage and Hood, but this also means that you can buff the damage. Whereas before, when it does pure, you can't do anything to enhance the damage, and your opponents can't do anything to reduce the damage. So by being magic now, and by them changing the scaling set, it's actually a buff to the hero. That's a big buff to the hero, in my opinion. In some ways, it's a nerf because it's worse against anti-mage and stuff, and hoods, but I think that's fair. An ability being counterable by your opponent's item decisions is completely balanced, and the damage is the same, and now you can buff it too. So if you want to buff it, you can now do, honestly, 48% of your target's health. If you cast fucking Veil, and you attack somebody with Winter's Curse, and then you attack 2 other people with Winter's Curse, you just reduce their current HP by 50%. It's like, so much. Well, like, actually, I think if you know what, it's not 50%. Let's do, let's take a moment and do some math here. Alright, so we got a spreadsheet, right? Can I make this bigger? Is there like a... I don't know, I'm using Open Office because I'm poor and shit. Here it is. I'm not poor, but... Alright, so if somebody has 100%, equals this, times 0.08. Oops, I want to reduce it. So, this number needs to be here. So this is the amount you're reducing it by. Equals this minus. So first point you lose 8%, and we need to do this 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is this right? Wait, nope, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're actually assuming that there is no reduction in damage. You're doing a maximum of 39.36%. It's not 48, because I was doing the math slightly wrong. Because it's current HP, it's not max HP. If it was max HP, it'd be overpowered, because you'd be reducing 50% after the hood. It's actually 39.36%. So if we compare that to the pure damage, the pure damage is the same. It's of current, so it's not 8. You don't lose 8% every single. It's 8% of your current. So as you do damage, it does less and less and less. As you can see, the difference between these is less and less. We could do the math on that as well, but it's not important. So if you put a hood on, if you veil them, you're reducing their HP by 39.36% with no other damages done, which is pretty significant. So I think getting a hood is definitely something that'd be viable on this hero. Fucking love 1, 2. I love math so much. Fuck. So much fun. Cold Embrace now behaves as normal regeneration instead of 0.1 interview heals. So it'll be normal HP regeneration. Is there a way to stop HP regeneration or something? Why did they do this? I wonder why. I'm not sure. I think they're just... I don't know. Wraith King added Aghanim Scepter to him. Allies who are near Wraith King within 1200 AoE when slain becomes wraiths for 5 seconds, delaying their deaths. They can continue attacking, casting, etc. When the duration ends, the hero dies, and credit for the kill goes to whoever landed. What a fucking cool Aghanim Scepter. God! Support Wraith King. Completely viable. Completely viable now. It's completely viable. It's not very good right now, but it's okay. But this is really cool. Because it gives your carries 5 extra seconds. They can still be stunned and stuff like that. It's any ally. That seems so good. They can continue attacking, casting, etc. Like, even think of a Crystal Maiden. Oh, you died? Cast your ultimate. Make them waste another stun on you or something when they would love to go to the next hero. Or make them Wait till you get another frostbite. Like you get another frostbite in the fight. This is so fucking good. This is such a good Aghanim Scepter. I mean, Wraith King obviously has to be alive, and you have to not be dead during that duration, I assume. If you're dead, it probably doesn't work. Like, if I mean you're between reincarnations, it probably doesn't work. But if you're playing support, this is really, really cool. Especially because as a support Wraith King, they almost always just focus you last because you don't do much damage anyways. So if you actually do stay alive in a team fight, you can severely impact things. If somebody has 5 seconds, that could be somebody that gets bursted down that didn't get their ultimate off. Bam, now they get their ultimate off. It's really cool. I really like this a lot. Wraith King support. Obviously, Wraith King supports sometimes do have money problems. But if they're having anything remotely resembling a good game, this is a really cool change. Zeus's Thunder God's Wrath area vision reduced massively. I think this is a necessary buff. The vision was too good, and it sometimes hit invisible units depending on the order of player slots. Yeah. The reason this would happen is because Thunder God's Wrath also gives vision, and apparently it doesn't hit everybody at the exact same time. It would probably check to say like, okay, let's hit the Plink player with the bolt, and then we'll hit the next player with the bolt, and then the next player, and the next player. And if those two heroes are standing next to each other, then the first person to hit will take damage, but also give vision and an AoE, and then it would hit the next person and be like, oh, if they're invisible, it only gives vision. But if they're visible, it does damage, right? But I have vision because I nuked the pink guy first, so now he'll take damage too. And that was not fair, basically. So if they're invisible, it's just going to get vision and won't do damage. So a slight nerf to Zeus, very small. Very, very small. This one is decent nerf. It basically doesn't give you a vision advantage right at the start of the team fight to figure out where everybody is. And that's a lot of the reason that Zeus was picked, I think. Alright, now we're into... What the fuck? There's so many items! Holy shit! Enchanted Mango? Oh, I cannot wait to read all this. Items. 150 gold provides 1 HP regen. Consume the mango to instantly restore 150 mana. Can be fed to an ally. This changes so much. So it gives you 1 HP base regen, but if you consume it, you get 150 mana. This would be a good item for a carry, I think. Because I was trying to, as a support, it's actually really good on supports too. Really, really good on supports. You're still going to need like a Tango and a Mango. Tango and Mango? God, I can't believe they did that, Tango and Mango. You're still going to need a Tango, I think, to be able to get some burst regen. But I think you can get away with like 2 Tangos now and a Mango. Because you're getting 1 HP per second. You're usually not taking that much damage, but having some extra regen is useful. Like over the course of 1 minute, this gives you 60 HP. So every 1 minute that you have a Mango, it gives you half of a Tango. And if you need mana, you can get it. And it's instantly restore 150 mana, so this is a really big buff to heroes like Crystal Maiden, I would say. Pretty low cooldown, needs some burst mana. There's probably some other examples of heroes that would really love Mangoes, but again, it's consumable. Once you eat it for the mana, it's gone. You lose the HP regen. So I would definitely say that this is a great support item. It's potentially useful on heroes like Storm, maybe, but nah. You don't want to use it for the consumable. You're spending 150 gold for 150 mana. This is you use it in really crazy situations. It's pretty expensive. It's better to sell, I would say, but sometimes there will be fights where it's time to eat a mango. And you eat a mango and you get mana, and then you can use that mana to maybe get a kill. So I think putting this on heroes, like support heroes that have like low cooldown, high mana cost stuns, it's really good. So I think supports should buy mangoes. This might hurt your item build a little bit. Usually you can spend 300 on support things, and you have 300 left, which is 1 Tango, 1 Mango, and 1 Ironwood Branch or something like that. But then I don't know if you have enough for Clarity. It's pretty close. I think you can get 1 Iron, 1 Clarity, 1 Tango, 1 Mango. I think that's what all supports will buy in the early game now. Because the Mango gives you, like, and then you can pull one of those Tangos away, maybe, would be okay. Multiple Mangoes do not stack into one slot. Yeah, that's what I figured, because it'd be too good with the HP regen. You could essentially have infinite HP regen by buying Mangoes. Because you could have, like, 1,000, you could have, like, 100 Mangoes, which is, like, what, 1,500 gold, and that would give you 15 HP regen. That would be way too good. Lotus Orb, new item form with Perseverance, Plate Mail, and a Recipe. This is a beautiful icon. Perseverance, Plate Mail, Recipe. Plus 5 HP regen, damage armor. Can be disassembled. Oh, it's an active. I was like, why the fuck would you ever build this if this all... That's all it does. Active Echo Shell. Targets an allied unit, dispelling negative buffs. Normal dispel, not stuns. So this is like Diffusal, basically. Not stuns. and applying an Echo Shell buff for 6 seconds. While the Echo Shell buff is active, it recasts all targeted spells back at its caster. For 6 seconds. 17 cooldown, 100 mana cost, 900 cast range. This does not block the spell, it mirrors it back. Same targeting resistance. Okay, it doesn't, but that's good that it doesn't block the spell. So basically what this means, I hope this is very visible. Man, there's going to be so many cool changes here. If this is like the first 2 items, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff here. So it's like a Perseverance. It gives you a little bit of damage and a little bit of armor. The recipe is pretty expensive, so not using this actively is pretty bad. Are there any other items that give regen and armor? Not very many. I feel like this is a really good support item, though. Maybe not really good, but it's pretty good. But only on, I would say, support heroes that naturally have high HP. Or build other HP items with them. If you go like Aghanim Scepter with this, it's really good. Because armor is what you want to combo with HP, but most supports don't have HP. The damage is negligible, the mana regen is really good, the HP regen is pretty good. So you might be able to just skip Tranquils, maybe go Brown Boots into something tanky, plus the Lotus Orb. And this allows you to basically save your carries. Well, yeah, you can Dispel. You can Dispel Hexes, by the way. So the main thing this is going to be useful for is removing Hex. You can remove Hex, and then for 6 seconds your carries are going to reflect all spells. So if they get hit with Hex or Earth Spike, it's only targeted spells. So it might not work for things like Earth Spike, but Magic Missile, this is a nerf to Vengeful Spirit, for example. Magic Missile will be reflected on Venge. Hexes will be reflected. Dagons will be reflected. And all targeted spells. That's really strong. But it has some play around it things. Can it be dispelled itself? It cannot, I don't think. So, interesting. God, new items. Glimmer Cape. New item formed from Cloak and Shadow Amulet. Cloak, Shadow Amulet. So that's like a 1200 gold item, 1900 gold item. 30 attack speed, 20% magic resistance. Can be disassembled. Active Glimmer. Targets an allied unit and makes it turn invisible after a 0.4 second fade time. It's pretty fast. While invisible, it gains 66% magic resistance. Lasts 5 seconds. The invisible unit is allowed to move during the 5 seconds, but attacking or casting a spell will cause the 0.4 second fade time to trigger again. 16 cooldown, 900 cast range. Can be cast while channeling. The bonus magic resistance on Glimmer Cape is only active while invisible. Okay. I assume you can't cast this on yourself. Target an allied unit and make it turn invisible after 4.4 seconds. This item is really cheap. I don't think we'll see it on cores. Probably more likely supports. It's pretty expensive though. But the cool part is it's like a cheap Shadow Blade basically. And that's the cool. It's basically a Shadow Blade for supports. If you ever want to use Shadow Blade on your supports in a team fight to allow you to cast your channeling ultimate, this is the item you buy. If you're playing Witch Doctor, you can buy a Glimmer Cape. If you're playing Crystal Maiden, you can buy a Glimmer Cape. Especially Crystal Maiden is a good example. Because while it's on you, you can still get stunned, but you're invisible, so they can't target you. And if they do cast a stun or other AoE magic spells, you have a ton of magic resistance, 66%. So you can basically make yourself invulnerable to magic damage. Not invulnerable, but take a lot less magic damage. 66% is huge. That's more than an anti-mage. And you get 20% here. So, huge magic resistance. It lasts 5 seconds, which is about all you usually need to cast a channeled ultimate. You can get on an Enigma as well, for example. If they don't have any AoE stuns, you should get a Glimmer Cape, I think. Blink, Glimmer Cape, Black Hole. Or Blink, Glimmer Cape, Midnight Pulse, Black Hole. The attack speed's kind of bad, the magic resistance is kind of bad, but it's very cheap, and it gives you a way to cast your ultimate without needing either a Shadow Blade or a BKB. And you're also allowed to move during the 5 seconds. Attacking or casting a spell. What about using an item? It doesn't say an item. Does that mean you can Glimmer Cape, Blink, Midnight Pulse, Black Hole? If so, I think that's overpowered. I feel like if you use a Blink, like from a Blink Dagger, it should make you visible. I assume it means that, but it doesn't say that. Attacking or casting a spell will cause it to fade and trigger again. Which means that you can even if it... that's still... I think this item's a little too good on heroes like Enigma. I don't know though. Because you can cast it on yourself, even you can blink, but it's only 0.4 seconds. That's not very long. They'll see that you're there, which is the important part, but you can basically blink after using it, black hole for like 4 full seconds. They won't know you're there, and then go invisible. So they have like approximately 0.4 seconds to stun you or do an AoE stun to stop you. This is really good for heroes like Enigma. The downside is that it's an item slot and it's a really inexpensive item, so it's kind of it's like very, very item slot heavy for what it provides, but what it does give you is really good. And we could see this maybe rushed on Witch Doctors in the early game, depending on the hero lineup. But definitely a very good late game Witch Doctor item. I would say I would almost get this almost every Witch Doctor item late game. I dare say. The base magic resistance is just good to have on almost all supports. It doesn't give armor, so physical heroes are still going to kill you, but I think this is a really, really good item. It could be very useful on even like super supporty heroes like not Shadow Demon. I was thinking Dazzle or Oracle, for example. Every time you cast a spell, 0.4 seconds. That's not that much time. That's like enough time to like. A lot of heroes won't be able to cast their animations fast enough to stun you, and even if they do throw their projectile stuns, sometimes they'll go invisible afterwards. So I think what was the cooldown on it? 16-second cooldown. So you can't use it that often. If this was like constantly up, it would be overpowered. You could basically essentially always be invisible. So we're gonna see dust be a lot more needed. I almost, with all the new invisibility things being added, I almost want to see a buff to vision, like buff to dust and sentries and stuff, because this is really good, I think. Or maybe reduce the cost of sentry wards or something. We'll see if that happens later, but this looks really abusable in an interesting way. All these items so far really cool. Alright, Guardian Greaves, Arcane Boots, Mechanism, and a Recipe. This is a cool change for support heroes. Yeah, especially, I was going to say like any hero that builds a mech, but you have to have Arcane Boots, so most cores won't buy this. But if supports want to buy Arcane Boots and Mechanism, this is going to be easier to do so. This is really expensive. This is a 5,300 gold item. 55 movement speed, mana, +5 all stats. So it's basically all the base components, but let's see what the passive does. Passive provides 2 armor and 4 health regeneration aura, which is a mech basically, except for the armor. When a target's health is lower than 20%, it instead provides 15 armor and 15 health regen. Holy crap, 15 armor. Okay, alright. It's not that bad. Well, when a target's health, does that mean when your health is that low, or does that mean when any of your allies' health is that low? When they hear your attacking's health, it's not clear. It says a target. Does that mean maybe it's the target of your active? Let's read the active. Mend restores 250 health and 160 mana to nearby allies. It gives mana to your allies. That's pretty good. It removes negative debuffs from the caster upon cast. Alright, first negative of this. When you give Arcane Boots to your allies, it also puts your mech on cooldown. That's pretty bad, because it's a 45-second cooldown. Removes negative debuffs. It also doesn't say whether or not this stacks with mech. I assume it does. Like, you can't get both Guardian Greaves and a mech. That would be stupid. It'd be like having 2 mechs. So I think you can't use this with a mech. It removes negative debuffs from the caster upon cast. Maybe I should have streamed this, because I'm going to be here for like a long time. Restores 250 health and 160 mana nearby allies. Removes negative debuffs from the caster upon cast. Slows, things like that. I wonder if that works on like Ice Blast and stuff. If it does, that'd be really good. The spell only affects your hero. Yeah, this isn't cast on somebody actively. It's okay. The difference is, I assume it's your team because it's like a supporty item. When your target's health is lower than 20%, it instead provides 15 armor and 15 health regen. I feel like this is overpowered if it's one of your allies. If one of your allies is lower than 20% armor, or 20% HP, it would give your whole team 15 fucking armor. That would be so overpowered. I feel that would be so good. I mean, obviously your opponents should play around it, but 15 armor and 15 health regen. The health regen is pretty small, but the armor is ridiculous. You could also stack this very well with this item by playing with a Huskar. If you should Huskar buy this item? The item is kind of wasted on Huskar because it has an Arcane Boots, but it's kind of an abusive Huskar item. I guess it's not that good on Huskar, because all you're really doing is spending 5,000 gold to be like, I want this free 15 armor aura, which isn't needed. But if you're playing to support with a Huskar, I dare say this is really worth getting. I don't know what the target's health works. I assume it's allies, not opponents, because that wouldn't make that much sense. I think it's if your allies' HP is lower than 20%, it gives you 15 armor and 15 health regen. Or if your health is lower than 20%, it gives you 15 armor and 15 health regen. I don't know how the target works. Oh! I'm stupid. I think this is how it works. It provides an aura to everybody. The way auras works is it gives your hero something. It gives your hero 2 armor and 4 health regeneration. If the person receiving this aura is lower than 20%, the aura then gives them 15 armor and 15 fucking health regen. Okay, that sounds way less overpowered. Because if it gave 15 armor to everybody just because one guy's HP is low, that sounds abusive. But if you have one guy that has low health, it gives them this boost to survivability and regen. Now, keep in mind that this is good but not amazing. Because if somebody's HP is lower than 20%, if they get 15 armor, yeah, that last 20% HP is going to go a long way because they have 15 armor, but it doesn't mean like they're going to be invulnerable, you know? You can still die to magic damage and you get HP regen. So it basically means if somebody's health is really low, this gives them a much better chance of surviving. So it's really important that your supports, if you have this item, stay alive in a team fight. Finishing your allies off is going to be very difficult. This is kind of a nerf to burst heavy physical lineups, you could argue as well. But this is a cool item. It also allows, most importantly, allows supports to scale better late game without the mech being wasted. It's gonna encourage people to buy arcane boots a lot more. We'll wait to see what the nerf to tranquil boots is because I assume tranquil will get nerfed because it's too good right now. And by buying this item, you kind of are forcing yourself to buy arcane boots, which you don't want to do in a lot of cases. But the mech and the arcane boots as an item purchase is very common, honestly. I don't know if I would ever first item rush Guardian Greaves because the recipe is so expensive. Rather than buying this recipe, I could get a 4 staff instead. One cool thing about Men though is it doesn't cost mana to cast. So casting mech no longer costs mana. That's a really good buff because that's normally 225 buff. So you could see Guardian Greaves picked up on some more mana intensive mech heroes that usually do want to buy it. So I think the Guardian Greaves is a nice buff. It's a really good item. It's not overpowered. I think it has a good balance. It's new buff. It's new boots option. I like it a lot. 5 armor for boots. I think we'll see more mech purchases. We'll see more arcane boot purchases because of this. Maybe on Dazzle I'll always buy arcane boots now because this is just too good to buy in the late game if you have the item. But again, most of the time you don't have that much gold. So if you're at all item slot starved, I think this is the item to go for. Cool item. Moon Shard. New item formed from 2 hyperstones and a recipe. 120 attack speed. Okay. Passive Shade Sight. Moonshard grants 250 bonus night vision when in inventory only. That's passive. Works against Night Stalker's Darkness. So if Night Stalker's Darkness reduces your vision to like what 600 or whatever it does, you get a 250 bonus on that. So that's pretty cool. And the use can be consumed to gain a permanent 60 attack speed buff. Does not stack. Requires a double click to consume. What the fuck is this? Weird. Okay. So if the item is in your inventory, you get 120 attack speed, and your passive is you attack really fast. This is a 7 slot item basically, or on heroes that really want attack speed. But it's not worth buying just for the attack speed because the bonus is really weak basically. Your bonus is basically this. Like the way the Dota items work is you spend 3,000 let's say items that ignore recipes basically. You're spending like 3,000 gold to make an item, and then you get like 1,000 gold of value from it being completed. Because as items combine, they get this extra effect that is usually has value. So the bonus value from this item is very low. It's good, but it's not amazing. 250 night vision is good, but it's not amazing. I was going to say maybe you'll see this on Batrider. You probably won't because it's too expensive for just the 250 vision. But it is a way to give yourself vision. Maybe you'll see it built on Batrider sometimes, but as a whole, you don't need attack speed on Batrider, so it's probably not going to be built. But basically, if you're 6 slotted and you have a ton of money, you can buy this and you can give yourself 60 attack speed. So this is a good buff to some heroes that maybe their item builds are very damage heavy and not very much attack speed. Phantom Assassin is a good example. She usually buys a lot of damage items and doesn't necessarily have attack speed. So you can instead spend 4,300 gold to consume the Moon Shard and give yourself 60 attack speed, which is still, it's basically a free Hyperstone. So it's kind of a cool buff to heroes that are getting 6 slotted. There's a lot of stuff going on with channeling your money into items, and I want to know how this interacts with your net worth. If it still keeps the net worth, this is fine. If it ignores the net worth, this is abusable. Because net worth interacts in how much gold you give. So, interesting. The Dota is changing, guys. Silver Edge, new item formed from Shadowblade and a Sange and a Recipe. This is good that something uses a Sange, because a lot of the cases, Sange and Yasha, when you split it, you're like, I usually want Manta, but the Sange doesn't ever build in anything. So this is kind of cool. You can get a Manta, you can get a Shadowblade, and then make a Manta. You can get a Sange and Yasha and a Shadowblade, and you can build it into 2 items that are really good. You can build a Manta. I don't know if Silver Edge is good, but I'm assuming it's good because it's a Shadowblade and something else. It's basically going to be an expensive item. Normally when you build Sange and Yasha and Shadowblade, you have these like items that are really good right away, but they don't scale late because they're like 4,000, 3,000 gold items. You want to fill your inventory with like 5,000, 6,000 gold items to make you good. So Silver Edge helps Shadowblade, and Sange and Yasha scale better late. So I think we'll see more people building Sange and Yasha early game. All right, here we go. Shadowblade, Sange, recipe is 350, so it's a 5,200 gold item, plus 32 damage, plus 30 attack speed, plus 16 strength, and lesser maim. Invis attack now deals 225 damage up from 150, I think, and it also applies break to disable passive abilities, and reduces the target's damage output, all damage types, by 40% for 5 seconds. That means it removes evasion, it removes some passives, things like that, and reduces the target's damage output by 40%. That means if you break on a magic hero, like a Lina, who casts Laguna Blade, it does 40% less for 5 seconds. 24-second cooldown. Attacking to end invisibility, cannot miss. Okay, so it's very good against evasive heroes. And debuff does not pierce smell immunity. So it does not work on BKB carries, which is important, I think. Or BKB heroes, because this item is looking really good to me. It's basically a really good item to break, like if you're playing like a roaming ganking carry, I think this is giving a nice item that translates well into late game, because usually those heroes are best for solo killing, and as you get into team fights, they're not that good. And this will give you a good team fight ability. Disables your passive, and reduces their output by 40% for the initial of the fight, which is pretty big. So that's a cool difference. I assume this can be removed with like diffusal blades and shit. The game's getting pretty complicated in terms of how team fights go, because there's so many active items that you can use. Like, what was that other item? Glimmer Cape you can cast. You can cast Lotus Orb on people. You can cast Medallion on people. Like, shit's getting kind of complicated. We'll see if it gets a little too crazy, but it's definitely going to increase the outplayability of a lot of interactions. Mechanics are getting really important, which is kind of cool. Solar Crest, item formed from Medallion of Courage and Talisman of Evasion. This looks a lot like a Star Me to me, but I'm just going to let that go. Medallion of Courage, Talisman of Evasion, 10 armor, 75 mana regen, 30 evasion. So you can get this on supports. Activate loses the Solar Crest armor and evasion. When targeting an ally, you grab them armor and evasion. Holy shit, that's good. When targeting an enemy, you removes 10 armor and applies a 30% miss for 7 seconds. Cooldown 7 seconds. Really cool. I'm going to see this built on a lot of support heroes now. It's maybe not a lot, but situationally. On people that build Medallion, they can build it. I think that's cool. 30 evasion is pretty good for your allies. In most cases, you're using Medallion offensively, but we'll probably see more Medallion purchases for defensive applications. 30% miss for your cores is pretty good. I think this is good. It won't be built all the time. Medallion's primary use is still taking Roshan, but it can be used more. Can be disassembled. This debuff is dispellable. Are there any agility carries that build Medallion? Not that many, but they could build it now. You could get Medallion on agility carries, eventually disassemble Medallion into a butterfly or a halberd, maybe more strength carries or strength heroes. Maybe we'll see Lycans go Medallion into Solar Crest into halberd. It's kind of out of the way, but I think we'll see this built a bit more, but I'm not so sure that's amazing. I think it's situationally very good, but it's not godly, I guess. Octarine. Oh, one really cool thing about this though is that the interaction with Monkey King Bar and evasion is still there. Let's say my carry has a butterfly and my opponent is missing them. How should I think I might be thinking of this wrong. Because you can choose either evasion or mischance, right? So if your opponent has an MKB, there's no point giving your ally evasion. And there's no point giving them miss because they're going to hit no matter what, right? So I guess if they have an MKB, it counters the item. The Solar Crest is countered. So you might have to buy an MKB because of Solar Crest sometimes. What's the cooldown? 7 seconds. It's the same as the duration. So it's basically like Medallion with evasion. If your opponent has a butterfly, you can give your ally evasion or give them mischance. I guess you can't cast based on smart things. All right, what I just thought about was wrong, I think. Octarine Core, new item form from Mystic Staff and Soul Boost. This is like the old Aghanim Scepter. Aghanim Scepter used to be this build-up. Yeah, it used to be really expensive. 25 intelligence, 450 HP, 450 mana, a little bit of regen, passive cooldown reduction. Oh, we're League of Legends now, guys. Here we are. We did it. We LOL. Reducing all cooldowns by 25%. Fuck, man. I kind of don't want this to happen. I don't... Oh, fuck. Fuck, man. I kind of don't want this to happen because it changes the game so much. There's so many cooldowns that are going to be reduced now. So many cooldowns that are going to be reduced. In weird ways, too. There's so many things that change from this. There's going to be some Reddit super thread like, okay, guys, what does Octarine Core, what is abusive? Like, what's our up cooldown? What's our cooldown up down that becomes really good? All things, and passive spell lifesteal, restores health for percent of any. We're fucking LOL now, guys. 25% lifesteal on heroes, 5% creeps. So we will see carry int casters now, from now on. Definitely we'll see them from now on. Lina is a good example. You do 1,000 pure damage to a hero. This is going to be a great item on Quap as well. If you Quap ulti through like 5 heroes, you basically get a full heal. It's like a satanic, right? So you're doing like 500 damage for every hero. That's like 175 HP or something. We'll say 200. You're getting like 1,000 lifesteal from an ult. It doesn't increase your damage much, but it does reduce the cooldowns. In some ways, this is going to be better than Refresher for some heroes. Let's just look at some interactions that, like, it's probably going to be mostly int heroes because you're not going to want to buy that item on a strength hero because it's I mean, maybe there's a case like Axe's call, for example, would be reduced by 25 seconds. Like Axe, for example, his call is 10 seconds. You're going to reduce it to a 7.5 second cooldown on a 3.2 second duration. That might be better than a Refresher in some ways, because remember, Refresher's a really long cooldown. It's used every like 3 minutes. So Axe, maybe something like that. Phoenix reduces his Supernova. That's fine. Maybe some low duration stuns would be kind of good on Burrow Strike, or high duration, low cooldown could reduce to like 7.5 seconds. What about like a Crystal Maiden if she buys that item? Frostbite will go from 6 seconds to, what's 25% reduction of that? 6 times 0.75. You'd have a 4.5 second cooldown Frostbite at 3 duration. If CM buys that fucking item, that is so fucking good. Alright, the reason that this is happening, I think the reason that this item now exists in the game, no. With this being introduced, it's potentially abusive, but you know what counters this item entirely? It's the Lotus Orb. You need Lotus Orb. Somebody is going to have to buy a fucking Lotus Orb as soon as like some obnoxious hero buys an Octarine Core. Because this gets your cooldown so low, like 4.5 seconds. Like there's literally 1.5 seconds that you can attack somebody before you get stunned again. If you don't have a BKB. And once your BKB runs out, you're getting Chain Frostbite. Like obviously a Crystal Maiden is very unlikely to farm an Octarine Core because it's a 5,900 gold item. All for a lower cooldown on your Frostbite. But I mean, her other ability is pretty spammable too. What's it? It's 15 seconds. It's actually pretty high. That's like an 11-second Nova or something. But it's going to change the game in a lot of really interesting ways. I actually want to explore this a little bit more. Let's think of some other abilities that are really abusive. Night Stalker's Crippling Fear. No, he won't buy it because it's all about... It basically gives you stats and int, which most heroes aren't going to be able to use. It's kind of a waste of... Like, these parts of the items are pretty fucking bad, I think. I feel like these are really shit. Really bad abilities. It'll be a great OD item. OD used to always buy Mystic Staffs in the late game, so it's a buff to him because as your mana cost increases, you do more and more damage. So it's a good item for OD. The cooldown on this is 12, so if we do 12 or 15% of that, 12 times 0.75, we've got a 9 cooldown ability with 4 second duration. So you can gain int faster. It's okay. It's not that good. And it's only reducing that. It's not really worth it to buy that item just to reduce your acid by 3 seconds. And using it to reduce your ultimate cooldowns is good, but not needed, I guess. It's an okay item on him, but I don't think it's like amazing. Death Prophet, you can reduce your swarm by 1 second. That's kind of cool. Pugna might be worth it. Leshrac, maybe your Lightning Bolt will be faster and it gives you more mana pool, but I don't think I would buy that over like a Bloodstone. It's probably not worth it. A lot of these heroes, I just don't see it as a worthwhile item. It's like, the cool part is that it does reduce your cooldowns. It's another way to reduce your cooldowns. But it doesn't seem abusive yet. I think that item is going to be weak right now, and then it'll get buffed is what's going to happen. Maybe on a hero like Techies, it's a really good item, because you're spending so much time casting things that it gives you an overall 25% increase in the amount of mines that you can place. And it gives you mana and HP and regen. I think this is a really good Techies item. Oh, I forgot about the lifesteal. I forgot about that part. So I think it's a good Quap item, because she has a lot of spammable nukes. Good Quap item, buff to Quap. Buff to Lina, she does a lot of burst damage. I think it's a good Zeus item. Really good Zeus item. Really, really good Zeus item. We might see it built instead of Bloodstone on Zeus. It does similar things. Bloodstone is in a lot of ways better because it gives you way more mana regen, but 100% mana regen is not bad, and plus 400 mana is so much. Plus 400 mana, plus 25 intelligence, and plus 100% mana regeneration is huge. We will almost for sure see this item built on Zeus, because you're also getting lifesteal from your nuke, 25% from heroes. Like, I hope this doesn't work on static field. It'd be too good on if that works on static field, it'd be OP, because you do a ton of damage with static field. It should only work on your spells. So if you do like 350 damage or 375 with lightning bolt, whatever it is, 350 damage with lightning bolt, you're getting 25% of that as lifesteal. So I think this is a core Zeus item. Honestly, we'll see it on Zeus. Lifestealing about 87.5. That's pretty big. So we'll see it on Zeus for sure. Any other heroes? Basically, core int cast carries. It'd be kind of cool to see it on like a Luna, but with Eggs, but it's not gonna happen. I don't think we'll see it on any of these heroes. It's pretty good on Venomancer. It's a cool idea on Venomancer. You basically get, if you ulti, you basically get lifesteal. That'd be really cool actually. Get Ags and Octarine Core on Venomancer. That's a cool idea. Because your Poison Nova does a lot of damage. 108 per second for 16 seconds. That means while it's doing damage to everybody, remember it does less for creeps than heroes. 5% for creeps, 25 for heroes. So for creeps, you're getting like 6 HP every time it damages 1 creep. So, but if you get like 5 creeps, you're gonna get like, 100 HP from it or something like that before they die. I wonder if it lifesteals. No, it shouldn't lifesteal if they're at 1 creep, 1 HP. But basically, Venomancer's kind of buffed with this, right? Like his ultimate cooldown is going to go from 60 to 45. So you can ulti every 45 seconds if you have an Ags. You should probably go Ags into Octarine Core, but the int is pretty fucking wasted. That part sucks. All this stuff is kind of a waste in a lot of cases here, but you can ulti a lot. You'd lifesteal from it massively. I think this item is really interesting. Most heroes, it's bad. It's definitely bad on most heroes. But for some of them, there's some abuse. I guess it's a very situational item. It's not as OP as originally thought, but Bane Lich should be pretty good with it, Chain Frost. Basically, a lot of heroes where you can get Ags to reduce your cooldown, and then combo that with Octarine. I think that'd be really cool. I think it's a really good Techies item, because you can probably lifesteal from mines as well. Skywrath Mage. Pretty good on Skywrath Mage. Gives you HP, gives you a ton of int, gives you mana pool, gives you regen. I think an Octarine Core with Ags is really good. The problem with Skywrath Mage is you run out of mana. This gives you a ton of mana, gives you a ton of int, gives you a ton of mana regen. You get to lifesteal from your skills. I think this will help heroes like Skywrath Mage, Lina to scale better as cores, and it reduces your cooldowns from 25%. That means you can cast an Arcane Bolt every 1.5 seconds at level 4, which is really good. 1.5 seconds on that. It does kind of waste Aghanims. I guess there's no reason to get Aghanims on the hero if you get Octarine Core, kind of, but makes the hero better. Any other heroes? Lina, I said, would be pretty good. Reduce her cooldown. I think Quap is probably one of the best, but again, it's only cooldown. It's probably better to get Ags first and then grab Octarine Core for the lifesteal. Basically, if you need a way to heal your int carry, you can get Octarine Core while also increasing your cooldowns or decreasing your cooldowns. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Necrophos. Definitely worth it on Necrophos. This is a core Necrophos item, I think. Easily core on Necrophos. Because reduces your cooldown by 25. Let's think about the implications of that. Maybe not core, but very likely purchased in the first 3 items. So Death Pulse does 275 damage. Not only does it heal you for 130, but now when it hits a creep, you get 5% of that. Hope we're not talking too much about this. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Times 0.05. So every time you hit a creep with Death Pulse, you will gain 13.75 HP because of the Octarine Core. Every time you hit a hero, you're getting 25%. I think it's based on the damage dealt, by the way. So that's a really important part. Any damage dealt. Lifesteal is not based on the number that you do. So if somebody has a hood, it does less. But obviously, it doesn't do heroes and not illusions, I assume. It doesn't work on illusions. You shouldn't be able to lifesteal from illusions, so keep that in mind. But if you're doing 275, that's going to get reduced by magic resistance. Let's say assume somebody doesn't have a hood or something. Does 206, and then multiply that by 0.25. So every time you hit a hero, you're getting 51 HP. So rather than getting... If you have an Octarine Core and you hit a hero, you're actually healing yourself for 181, which is a lot. If there's multiple heroes, 2 or 3 heroes, you're getting more heals. I think this is potentially, late game, definitely core item on Necrolite or Necrophos. So, potentially core here, potentially core on Quap, potentially core on Lena. And also, don't forget your Death Pulse is a lower cooldown. What's the Death Pulse cooldown? Like 6 seconds or something? 5 seconds? It'll put it down to like 4 point something. A little bit less than 4, like 3.8 or something. Really good on this hero. Pugna... I could see Pugna being good on him. It's not that good, but it's okay. Enigma. Not really worth it. Cooldown is decent, but not needed. And lifesteal from spells. You could lifesteal from Midnight Pulse, I guess. That's kind of cool. It's very situationally useful. It's a really cool item, and I don't think it's good on a lot of heroes. And the reason it's not good on a lot of heroes is all of this. That's what I keep talking about. Like, this is a lot of shit that you don't want on anybody. Like, yeah, it's HP and it's intelligence. It's basically a big int item with mana and a little bit of regen. And it gives you cooldown. Everybody wants passive cooldown reduction, but they want to spend 5,900 gold to do it. And in most cases, it's not enough to really make things significant. I could see it as a situational support pick on teamfight heroes like CM. CM could buy it because it makes her Frostbite abusive and her ultimate has lower cooldown as well. And then she lifesteals from all that stuff. That's pretty cool. It'll be interesting. I think it'll make supports a lot better in some cases. Like, even Rubik would love to have 25% lower cooldowns. He could steal spells with it, all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of heroes that can get a lot of value out of it, I think. It's pretty cool. Alright, I think we talked about that item enough. I would say we're not really LOL now. That was just a joke. Because the item has such a shit build-up, this is a really expensive item, one of the most expensive in the whole game. Because the build-up is so shit, it's not like you build this on every hero, and you definitely won't. It will situationally be the right item. And it's not going to change the game that much as I initially felt. Because the build-up is so bad that it's just not worth buying on most heroes. Obviously, everybody wants to reduce their cooldowns, but it's only situationally useful. I like this item a lot. I think this is a nice addition. Thumbs up on Octarine Core. Oh, cool. Observer and Sentry Ward's now stacked into one inventory slot. I love this. The reason this is so cool is because a lot of supports have item issues. Very, very often you have item issues. You're going to always want to keep it on Sentry Wards in most cases because Sentry Wards are the ones that usually want to land instantly. But the reason these are so cool... God, I can't wait to read everything. This patch is so cool. This is really good, especially because of all these other items that for supports that are really cool. Like, there's a lot of item slot enhancement items going on. First of all, you got, like, Enchanted Mango, for example. It's like an item that you would love to keep in your inventory as long as possible. So if you're able to reduce the amount of items or increase the amount of item slots you have, here's a good example. Guardian Greaves. You put your mech into your Arcane Boots, and then you have another item slot. So now if you buy mech, you're not limited on item slots, right? But everybody wants to buy Solar Crest, for example. I would love to have a Solar Crest. Well, if I get a Medallion of Courage, I don't have an item slot that was filled up by 1,200 item. If I have an Urn of Shadows, I don't have an item slot that was entirely picked up by like a 900 gold item. In the mid to late game, you run out of item slots really fast on supports because you need Teleport Scroll, Observer Wards, Sentry Wards, or Dust, one of those two. And that's like 4 items, right? So if you happen to be placing Observer Wards, you've already got 4 fucking items. Boots is 5, and then if you have an Urn, you're 6. Like, you're out of item slots, right? So if you have Medallion of Courage, you can actually build it into something that scales better. You can pull your gold into something that doesn't just run you out of item slots. If you have a Magic Wand, you're out of item slots, you know? So putting an Observer and Sentry Wards into one spot is fucking genius. It puts less pressure on the supports when they happen to be dropping obs. And now that you can hold obs and sentries at all times if you want to, without like killing your item slots and forcing other people to do it. As a support play, this is so nice. So nice. You can carry your Ironwood branches longer, for example. It allows you to like scale a little bit better. At all stages in the game, this is relevant, honestly. You don't have to sell your Ironwood branches. You can keep them longer. Upgraded Boots of Travel can now be upgraded by purchasing the recipe again. It allows you to target and teleport to allied heroes. Holy fuck, that's good. It costs 2,000 gold, and it's another way for people in the late game to spend your money. This is a buff to Boots of Travel in 2 ways. Not only does it give you a late game option, but if you buy Boots of Travel early, it gets you half of the way there. Because in late game situations, a lot of heroes are going to want to buy Boots of Travel. So I think we're going to see more cores saving to get Boots of Travel rather than spending their money on treads. On any hero that is vaguely undecided about what boots they want to buy, or any illusion hero, I think it's very often that they will just say, fuck boots, I'm going to keep brown boots until I get upgraded Boots of Travel. Because you save a lot of money to get there. It's like, what, 750 gold or something? I guess it's not that expensive. It's not that bad to sell your treads and just start over and buy Boots of Travel. You're only losing, what, 7? No, because you're rebuying a boots as well. You're basically, you're taking a 1,500 gold item, you're completely wasting 750 of it, so you get 765 back, and then you buy new Boots of Speed. So you're wasting about 1,300 gold. If you go from treads or phase to a Boots of Travel, you're wasting 1,300 gold. It's pretty expensive. So you get almost no value out of it. So if you're worried about that in the late game, it's better to go poverty and go into Boots of Travel. So teleport to allied heroes, that's really good. Because it doesn't matter if they're taking damage. That's really, really good. There are some heroes that allow you to abuse that already with like creeps and stuff, and this is still really expensive. It's a 4,500 gold item. It's not cheap, but the amount of gank protection that it also gives you is really good. This is a cool upgrade. It's really expensive, but it's, especially in the late game, it's really good. Especially on super hard farmed carries. There's a lot of things that the super farmed carries can now buy that allows them to get a little stronger. Like that Hyperstone item. The Moon Shard, they can activate that to get a 60 attack speed. Now they can buy a second upgraded Boots of Travel. So their carry can basically farm wherever they want. The rest of the team can 4-man, and they can always be there for the fight, and that's cool. Item changes. Skull Basher, strength increased from 6 to 8. Damage reduced from 40 to 25. And now the Bash now deals 60 bonus damage. I assume it's physical. And the Bash cooldown increased from 2 to 2.3. So it does less damage at all levels, but if it bashes, it does way more damage. So on average, it does less. Let's do 25% of 60. Because it bashes every 25%, right? Item, where's our basher? Over here somewhere. 25% on melee. So it has a 25% chance to do damage, which is 15 damage. So basically, the bonus damage that you got from the bash is included here. So it does the same amount of damage, except for strength heroes, 2 damage more. So buff to strength heroes, but the cooldown is increased. You can't bash people as often. So why did they do this? I don't know. It includes more RNG in the game and makes the item more accurate. Because if you bash somebody, it does accurate damage, right? It should do more damage. It just bashes them, though. It does the same damage, and it's a buff to strength heroes. But it's a nerf to the amount of time it hits. So, I don't know. They did the same with Abyssal Blade. When you do actually bash, it does bonus damage. So, I guess if you get it has luck factor, essentially. It has more luck factor. It's more reliant on your bashes hitting. You don't just buy the item for the stun. You also buy it for potentially, it's kind of like a mini crit, basically, right? It's a mini crit. It allows you within 3 hits, even if you don't bash. Well, if you do bash within your 3 hits, let's say you only get 3 hits. If you bash, it's like a mini crit. That's the best way to explain it. It's a mini crit. If you only hit 3 times, you have the chance to do more damage than you did in the previous patch. So, energy booster reduced by 100, so that's a buff to Arcane Boots. Arcane Boots replenish radius is much bigger, and it no longer costs 35 mana to activate. Really big buff to Arcane Boots here. They will give you much more mana than before, which means it will probably see more Arcane Boots and less Soul Ring Tranquils. Maybe we'll see that like melon thing or whatever the fuck that was. The mango. Maybe we'll see people just hold a mango for a long time because now you don't need to get Soul Ring. Soul Ring doesn't give you much more mana. Might still be worth getting Soul Ring on heroes like Shadow Demon because you do like the jungling, and I really like Tranquil Boots on Shadow Demon, and I don't like building mech on him, so I'll probably still build Soul Ring Tranquil on Shadow Demon, but on any other hero that you're a little unsure about, I think getting Arcane Boots is going to be better now. Because it costs less. Bloodstone is now cheaper, by the way. Oh, never mind. They compensated. Arcane Boots are cheaper. The AoE is really big, and it gives you an extra 35 mana every time you use it. So the item is buffed. Nobody ever built it, really, so it's worth it. Pretty good now. More the armlet attack speed is increased by 10. Undying strength no longer grants plus 10 attack speed, and the strength aim period is reduced. So this is a buff. It turns on faster. It does more attack speed if the item isn't on, and that's it. So very, very slight buff to the item, but a farming buff to the item if you don't have a lot of lifesteal. So you could argue that this item is better now for heroes that don't use it to jungle, pretty much. So slight buff to the item. Quelling Blade, oh, interesting. Change from full bonus damage to base damage. Okay, cool. This is another nerf to jungling that was basically as a result of all of those like super high damage to one target heroes being too good. That's why I like Juggernaut and Troll were picked so much, because they jungled so fucking fast with Quelling Blade that there was no point to pick other carries that had weak farming from jungle. If you're weak at farming jungle as a carry, then you had a disadvantage versus those other heroes, and those other heroes already did tons of single target damage, so with their fast farming and the high single target damage, it's like you couldn't compete with them. So the way this changes it is that if you buy items that aren't agility items, if you buy like Monkey King Bar, for example, it's not enhanced by Quelling Blade anymore. So this means Quelling Blade's still going to be really good in the early game because most of your damage is from your base stats, but it's going to decrease your jungling speed in the late game. So Quelling Blade won't increase your Battle Fury damage. It's actually a big nerf to Anti-Mage in some ways, because it only increases your base damage. Quelling Blade plus Battle Fury does not work really well. Wait. I'll look at it in a second. Quelling no longer deals bonus damage to Roshan, that's fair. Chop active ability now kills wards rather than dealing 100 damage. That's good. It basically encourages your supports to buy Quelling Blade, even if they're a ranged hero. Because you could use it to kill wards, but it took 2, and you'd still be standing there for fucking forever, and that was annoying. The active ability range increased from 350 to 450 when targeting wards. So you definitely could see supports buy this more often. I know Bambo would buy Quelling a lot on his supports, because he always wanted to position in places where his opponents didn't expect. So you'd hide in trees, and then you could jump out at the right time. So Quelling Blade will be purchased more on wards, at least in the pro scene. And again, in the late game, Quelling Blade does less. Sorry, I keep bumping the table. Quelling Blade does less. Alright, Battlefield now requires and provides the bonuses. Oh, cool. So you have to buy Quelling Blade when you make a Battle Fury now. Because of that, it gives 60% for melee heroes. It does more for melee heroes than it did before. And keep in mind that this 60% bonus does not affect the base damage of Quelling Blade of Battle Fury. Because Battle Fury gives you 55 damage. It looks like it's been reduced in damage to single targets, but the cleave radius is increased. And it also makes you farm neutrals faster because, well, it's worse than it was before, but by getting a Battle Fury, it makes your Quelling Blade do more to a single target hero, which I assume then cleaves. So it does more. The Quelling is stronger with the Battle Fury than it was on without the Battle Fury. Here, 40%. And for ranged heroes, it's actually not bad at 25%, but obviously you shouldn't be buying a Battle Fury with a ranged hero anyways. And now there's absolutely no reason to do it because it doesn't even increase your Roshan speed or anything. So still shouldn't buy Battle Fury on ranged hero, but obviously it has to interact with ranged heroes if it has a Quelling Blade effect of it. And Battle Fury is also a little bit more expensive now. So this is good for Anti-Mage in some ways because Anti-Mage eventually sells the Quelling Blade because you run out of item slots. But now it builds into the Battle Fury, and you bought one anyways. A lot of heroes that buy Battle Fury bought Quelling Blade no matter what anyways. So it kind of like, it's not that bad that it increases in cost because it still does make you go farm a little faster. Despite the 10 damage decrease here, it has a higher cleave radius, it increases your farming speed, and then your item slot. Like, it's another item slot buff to Quelling, so that's pretty cool. Alright, Black King Bar can now be sold. Repurchasing does not reset restriction. Okay, that's cool. I was going to say, but they just countered that. So now if your Black King Bar is down to 5 seconds and you don't want it anymore, you can at least sell it for like 2,000 gold, which at some times is going to be worth it. If you're like 6 slotted and you already used your BKB in a fight and you're about to take another fight and you need buyback, you could sell your BKB. In most cases, keeping your BKB is worth it, but 5 seconds when it gets down there, sometimes it's just better to buy a new item. And this at least allows you to sell it. If you buy it back later, it still stays at 5 seconds. So rather than just putting it in your base, you can sell it, which I think is good. Blade Mail damage return cooldown reduced by 2, very small. Blades of attack slightly buffed, 30 less gold. Means you can buy it in laning stage more often, probably get away with buying it. Phase boots duration from 4 to 3.6 seconds, so slight nerf to phase. Boots of travel teleport cooldown goes down, and this also applies to the upgraded ones, I assume. Buckler armor bonus radius increase, very small. Flutter duration from 8 to 6, and bonus movement speed from 20 to 25. This is the better way the item should be. You don't want the duration to be high, because when you use it, it removes your evasion. So by reducing the cooldown, you can use it in team fights and stuff more greedily. 25% is a huge movement speed duration, so this is a pretty big buff to Butterfly. Clarity total duration is increased by 5, the mana restored goes up by 20 then, and the ally cast range from 100 to 250. That's fine. They probably had to do this. They probably had to buff Clarity because everybody was like, why the fuck would I buy Clarity when I can get a Mango? Keep in mind though that it gives 170 mana, the Mango gives you 150, but the Mango is instant, and Clarity costs a third as much as the Mango. So generally you should be using Clarities. You'll still see supports get at least 1 Clarity, I feel, because if you're missing a lot of mana, Clarity is far better, and you don't want to use your mana, Mango anyways, you want to hold it for as long as possible. And so yeah, Clarity is better for mana total, but Mango is pretty good in other ways. Cloak magic resistance buff by 5. Again, it seems like item slots are basically being buffed. This is one way to buff item slots without being like, everybody has 7 item slots now, you know? Vanguard damage block chance is increased to 75%. Crimson Guard, 75%. The active is increased by 5. The AoE is increased. Very few people build Crimson Guard right now, so it's too bad of an item. Desolator damage decreased, and the recipe cost also decreased. So the item is now 600 gold cheaper. It is now a 3,500 gold item. The reason they buffed this, and this is a buff in my opinion, I would rather it do 10 less damage and it be a lot less expensive. The reason this is buffed, and it's not going to be built into anything else, it's not like Desolator 2 or something. The reason this is buffed is because of how good Lifesteal with Scotty is. There's like, if you get Desolator, it's like the one orb that you can buy in the secret shop that fucks over the Scotty Lifesteal combo. So by making this a much cheaper item, you can buy it on other heroes, and it has more value. Because the earlier you get it, the stronger it feels in some ways. And you shouldn't invest so... The reason you buy it is for the minus armor. You don't buy this item for the 60 damage, you know? You buy it for the minus 7 armor that it provides. So by making it cheaper, it allows you to throw it into your item slots faster and maybe get value out of it that you wouldn't have with Lifesteal. So I think this is a nice item. Maybe an item you should buy in Lifestealer perhaps, since the Lifesteal that you get from your open wounds is now 50% at all levels. You can probably get away with just buying Desolator on that hero. Because it is so cheap. Go like Desolator into Abyssal Blade or something. Might be good. Diffusal Blade now works on range illusions for half the value. So I buffed a Diffusal Blade. This could definitely be built on any Manta hero now. It's... what's the burn again? It's like 25 or something like that, but I just want to double check. So 25 mana at all levels. At the level 2, I don't think there's a way to look at that, but when you level it up, it doesn't get better for the mana burn. All that changes is your agility. This is the big change. The agility increase and the int change and your charges. That's what increases when you level it up. So that means on range heroes it does 12.5 more damage. So building on a range hero is better. We'll possibly see it more with Manta heroes. I don't think it's really that great because I think the feedback only does... Okay, it does 100% here for... On Anti-Mage, the feedback is like 60% or something, but on this it's 25. So it's an okay increase in damage, but it's not enough, or else I don't think we'll see Diffusal Blade pick more here. Divine Rapier damage increased from 300 to 330. Dust of Appearance has been buffed. Movement speed slows increase because there are more invis things, so I think this is very necessary. Dust is still used here, but not that much. Oh, and this is the other buff to detection that I was talking about at the start. The Observer Sentry Ward. This is a buff to Sentry Wards, by all means, because it makes them less item slot expensive. So it means more supports are going to be willing to carry Observer and Sentry Wards. Maybe both supports could have one Observer and one Sentry Ward kind of a thing, so you can use them if needed. That's something we could definitely see. And then, where were we? Oops, went too far. Dust and Drum of Endurance attack speed bonus increased by 10. This is really big. Before this patch hit, I was like, I want to build Drum on supports more because I felt like it was really useful. Because very few cores buy Drum right now, and it increases your attack speed so much, especially against like a Phoenix. This is a nerf to Phoenix, I think, as well. The attack and movement speed buff that it gives you is actually really good. And as a support, A lot of times you're missing int, but now I don't know if it's worth building because there were so many other good items that were introduced that were good for support heroes. Like Solar Crest is a really good support item. Guardian Greaves is a really good support item. Glimmer Cape is fantastic. Lotus Orb, I don't think we'll see any supports build because it doesn't give you, like I said, any HP. It just gives you armor and regen, which is too expensive for supports to buy. But sometimes you'll buy it. But like building up towards Lotus Orb, Force Staff, Yules, Glimmer Cape is fantastic on supports. Like there's a lot of heroes that there's a lot of things that supports now want to buy. So spending your money on a drum is maybe not something that a support will get instead. There's a lot of I mean, it'll be as the game increases, some of these items just might suck, honestly. Looking at them right now, Glimmer Cape looks abusive, but it might not be that good. So as the game develops and we understand more and more, we'll build Lotus Orb in some game and I'll never fucking use it and I'll be annoyed because it's kind of like Blade Mail, right? Like for your opponents have to cast it on the guy that you use it on, have to cast spells on somebody. But if you use it on a core that dives without BKB, it's kind of cool. It's like, well, either the PA kills you or you're gonna hex yourself, you know. And in cases like that, it's worth it to hex yourself while hexing them. So the Lotus Orb and stuff, we'll see how it works out. I think that this one will be pretty good. Glimmer Cape, I think, will be really good on channeled heroes, but nobody else. Maybe some other supports. I think it'll be really good on CM, but kind of good on CM. The attack speed's completely wasted, but there's some heroes that it's good on. I think it's definitely good on Witch Doctor, I would say, because Witch Doctor's channel is so important. The CM one's pretty good too, though. You know, there's a lot of good support items now. The buff to, what were we talking about? Drum of Endurance may not be needed, so. Eagle Song reduced by 100, which I assume is going to mean Butterfly is also reduced by 100, as does E-Blade, which I think is fair. Yule's mana cost is increased to 175. I think this is really good, a really good way to nerf the item. There are some heroes that build it that do have some mana requirements, so this makes it worse in the early game. And that's good because Yule's is mostly good in the early game. It's it's an inexpensive item, so that's usually when you have mana problems. In the late game, you have 6 slotted, and at that point, Yule's kind of... Not only does the mana cost not matter because your mana is higher, but also it's kind of a shitty item in the late game because it's only 2,850, and again, in the late game, you want to have 6,000 gold items, so I think this is a good nerf to Yule's. Eye of Scotty, cold attack slow duration for range heroes from 3 to 2.5 seconds. Is that it? Wow. Oh, and it's 5 seconds for melee. I did not know that. I didn't know it was 5 seconds for melee. This is a very, very slight nerf to Scotty. I thought we might see a bigger nerf to Scotty, but at the same time, I thought a nerf to Scotty was a little unnecessary. The range hero slow, I think, is a good buff because range heroes already get a big advantage from it. It's the same slow, I believe, just slower duration. I can't wait to see. We'll see a Mask of Manus nerf, I'm sure, below. I assume we will. Although Mask of Manus is also nerfed by the jungling being hurt in a lot of ways with Quelling Blade, but we'll see. Flying Curve Vision is increased. The speed burst speed is even faster now. Okay. I thought Scotty nerfed would be higher than this, but there are so many new items that maybe we'll see things change a lot. I mean, you can remove... I guess it's not a single target ability. What does this do again? Oh, that weird MAME thing. I mean, there's a lot of good ways to spend your money in the late game as well, so maybe Scotty will be reduced. I don't know if that makes sense. I might just be talking... health regeneration increased slightly for Force Staff. Force Staff's still a really good item. It's only 2,000 gold, about, and it gives you HP. Cost reduced, all attribute bonus decrease. Interesting. I think this is an okay trade-off. A lot of supports do want to buy Ghost Scepters. You buy for the active, not for the stats, right? So getting it slightly early in exchange for 2 stat points, I think that's okay. You're losing 38 HP, you're losing 2 agility, you're losing 26 mana and 2 int. It's not... I think this is an okay trade-off. I think it looks advantageous from a cost standpoint, you know? Like, if I was 2 people, like, arguing, like, oh, I'll buy your Ghost Scepter for 1,500, and they're like, oh, well, I'm only going to give you this one that gives you 5 stats. I think it's a pretty good trade. Both parties get kind of screwed, but I think it's beneficial. So E-Blade's reduced now by 200 gold. So E-Blade's a little cheaper. Buff to E-Blade. Gloves of Speed increased. Gloves of Haste attack by 5 increase. So Gloves of Haste slightly better. This doesn't mean that everything it builds into becomes better, but just means the item by itself is better. And I think this is needed because there's no fucking reason ever to buy Gloves of Haste over another item. In most cases, it's better to get the stat item. But this is looking a little better. 20 attack speed is actually pretty significant. Headdress Rejuvenation. The Headdress of Rejuvenation is what it used to be called, but the radius is increased slightly. No big deal. Healing Salve duration decreased, so it heals you faster. I think this is fair. It heals more per time, but because that mango thing is in the game, they needed to buff the other healing rain things, I believe. And the can you share? I feel like you could give your mango to an ally, but I feel like the mango should not be shareable. If the mango is shareable, that's OP. I feel maybe it's not OP, but if you can like put your mango in somebody else's inventory and they get the 1 HP regen, I feel like you should just be able to spam it on an ally to give them the mana increase. I'm not sure though. I bet you can give it to your ally though. In which case, maybe we'll see carries by healing selves or mangoes instead of healing selves. It's kind of expensive though, so kind of. Anyways, the cast range is increased, and it heals faster. I think 10 seconds was a little too long. I think 8 seconds is good. Most of the time when I'm salved, I'm like, I'm ready to get back into the battle at 8 seconds. So I think that's fine. Reaver has increased by 200, but the recipe cost for Heart goes... That means Satanic is 200 cheaper, but Heart is the same. Health regeneration, and most importantly, you can get the Reaver earlier. Health regeneration increased massively, and the regeneration disabled time is 4 melee and 6 ranged. Is this if you're melee? Okay, if you're melee with a Heart, it's 4 seconds. If you're ranged with a Heart, it's 6 seconds. And now it's 5 and 7. So the disable time is increased, the amount of heals is increased, and the cost is the same. That means it's harder to use during the battle, but after the battle ends, it's easier to use. But it's such a small number, it's pretty irrelevant in most cases. Lincoln Sphere cooldown is decreased, so it's a buff to that Magic Wand's requirement. I've changed. So now it requires... Oh, a Circlet. Interesting. How much does a Circlet cost again? That is a really cool buff to Magic Wand, I think. And it gives you more stats now, right? Yeah. Because 3 branches is 3 stats. 2 branches in a circlet is 4 stats. So now 1 gives you 4 stats. It's actually... I dare say there's no fucking reason to buy a Bracer for HP over a... oh, yeah, I can't just click on these. That's how I usually find items. So Bracer gives you 6 strength, right? And all these. A Magic Wand is now going to give you 4 to everything, which in a lot of ways is a very good Bracer. And what's the circlet cost? That's going to impact what the overall cost is. God, I do not know where the shop items are. I like never buy a circlet. It's 165, so it's a 15. So it's one less branch, which is 50 less gold, but it costs 15 more to get the circlet. So the item is 35 gold cheaper, but it gives you 4 to all stats, which is pretty close to a Bracer, and it gives you 17 charges. I think Wand is in a really good place right now. As on a support, I think buying a Magic Wand is really, really good. 35 gold cheaper. It costs under 500 gold. It is way less than a Bracer. Bracer costs 525. Wand is going to cost like 465, which is like a Null Talisman. It's like the cost of a Null Talisman, but it gives you 19 more HP, not to mention the charges. A Magic Wand is a very, very value item, and on supports, I think almost all supports should maybe buy Magic Wand now. Because you buy the branches... As long as you don't sell the branches, I think it's pretty worth it. But a lot of times you kind of have to sell the branches. It kind of depends. If you don't sell your branches, I think it's worth buying a Magic Wand. If you have to sell your branches, then it's a little harder. But at least the Magic Wand is a bit better to keep in your inventory now because you'll have a circlet and branches. Again, item slots are easier to make space for, but the mango makes it harder. So the mango makes it harder to have item slots, but all other items have gotten easier. So I think this change is a good balance with the mango. Yeah, I like Wand. Oh, get wrecked, Mask of Madness. This is what I thought had to happen. The movement speed bonus reduced from 30 to 17. The movement speed was so ridiculous. It was a 30% movement speed. Was it actually 30? I thought it was 20. That was what was too good about the item. Not only did it give you huge attack speed of 100, there was very few items that compared to 100 attack speed. There is finally one now. It's that item that it gives you like 120 attack speed. But it gave you tons of attack speed, almost uncomparable by any other item. And it gave you 30% movement speed, which no other item was even close to. Sanjin Yasha was like 16, you know? So both of those together was way too much, and this is what needed to happen. This is why people like Envy would keep Mask of Madness in the late game. Like 30% movement speed was just way too much to give up. You're like, why would I drop this item that gives me 30 movement speed and 100 attack speed? So a huge nerf to the movement speed, and this is the thing that really helped you go from camp to camp really fast. So a very, very needed buff to Mask of Madness. Plus a nerf to jungling, so those two things together is going to mean that we will see much less Mask of Madness. I think people will still try it to get it to work, but I don't know if it'll work the same. Restore active and mechanism radius aura increased, so that's good. It's easier to mech people. Mjolnir static charge no longer jumps units that are invisible or in fog of war. I think that's fair, and the cast rage is increased, so very minor change to Mjolnir. Necronomicon. Archer health is buffed at level 1, so level 1 Necro is better. I think that's really important because level 1 Necro is so fucking bad. Level 3 Necro is pretty good, but level 1 Necro is terrible. So they're basically buffing the level 1 Necro to make it worth getting. They're making the item not suck until it's level 3, basically, which I think is needed. Because if you buy it early, it's like a 2,700 gold item. It's like, why would I buy Necro 1 when I have a Dagon? Like, you're not going to do that much damage. Like, the damage output was very low. So I really like this adjustment. I bought a Necro on a line the other day, and it just sucked. It didn't feel good at all. Because it took me forever to get Necro 3, and before I had it, I just had this, like, item that gave me HP and some mana, which is good, but, like, not that good. So, this is a huge buff to level 1 Necro. It is, like, level 1 Necro is essentially equivalent to level 2 Necro now. Pretty close. So, very marginally better at level 2, but basically level 1 Necro isn't terrible anymore, pretty much. Observer Ward now come in single increments, cost and restock time reduced by half, and stock doubled. Which makes sense because you're buying single wards, and they now provide a 50 XP bounty when destroyed. Taking a ward can no longer miss. Same for sentry wards. Okay, so that's good for supports. This is good for supports. This is good for supports. You don't have to buy 2 sets. I think this is an overall nice change. The XP bounty that's pretty significant. That's like a bounty rune. It's a quarter of a level. You know, the first bounty rune that's 50. It's 100 experience. So if you kill an observer ward in the early game, it's actually pretty big. Now, in the late game doesn't matter much, but early game it's pretty big. But basically you can buy them in single increments now, which is cool. So you might see offlaners buying their own observer ward now in pubs. That's pretty cool. As a support, I might just buy 1 now. We'll see. I'll probably still buy 2 because I'm not greedy, but a lot of supports can get away with just buying 1 ward if they want to, and the offlaner can suit for themselves. And the other cool thing about this is it means that in the pro scene, we might see more pro players buying less sentries or being less greedy with their sentries. Maybe not greedy, but like they might not chance it as much because if you don't know if the offlaner can basically run to the offlane and make them think they placed an observer ward and they can bait out sentry placements. Because there's a chance they'll have observer wards and there's also a chance they don't. So it might change the mind games a little bit, but I like this. And that you no longer miss them, I think this is really important as well. Because some supports, you just get unlucky and you do die because you couldn't kill a ward in time. That was on high ground. That was really annoying. Poison talk damage over time can now be lethal. That's pretty irrelevant, but it's fine. It does so little damage, it's like 4 damage, so the chance of it killing you is very low. Pipe of Insight Aura now also provides 10% magic resistance or to nearby allies. I think that's good, and the aura increase. I think this is nice. People complain about going high ground, all that stuff, and Pipe of Insight's a little easier. 10%'s not huge, but it's pretty big. It's like, what, 2/3 of a cloak? Makes Zeus a lot worse, so we'll definitely see pipes being purchased against Zeus's in more cases. It's not just a flat rate, it doesn't just protect 400 damage. The 10% magic resistance over time is really going to add up, and especially with the radius increasing. A big buff to pipe here. I think this is pretty big. Pretty big buff. Power Tread's buff slightly. Quarterstaff slightly buffed, this makes Orchid 50 gold cheaper. Refresher 50 gold cheaper. Oh, it's being reworked, so we'll see. Radiance recipe is increased, so nerf to Radiance, and the burden now causes affected enemies to have a 70% miss rate. Ooh. This is a buff to Radiance, in my opinion. Radiance is almost never built on any carry except for carries that have illusions in almost all cases. So 17% miss rate is not huge. A long time ago, Radiance, the person that held Radiance had 8% evasion. It was like the dumbest, most random thing ever. It was like this. It was like, oh, there's burning, so you're like closing your eyes or something, But now it makes all people miss. This is pretty cool. 17% is 1 out of 8, if I'm not mistaken. No, more than that. I want more, Seer. 1 out of 7. 1 out of 6. Alright, it's about 1 out of 6. 1 out of 6 times you're going to miss your attack because of Radiance. That's pretty significant. That's actually really significant. Honestly, that's really significant. 1 out of 6. Radiance is going to be built more on tanky carries because of this. That's where it's useful. You're causing all of your opponents to have a slightly lower right-click DPS because of the Radiance. It won't necessarily be like, oh, I need to buy an MKB, but it'll be like, wow, that Bristleback is actually really hard to kill now. We'll see people like Bristleback and Axe by Radiance now, I believe. Although, because Axe only spins when he's hit by an attack, the miss is actually going to hurt him. But there's going to be cases where a tanky hero that jumps in the middle of your opponents, even like maybe a PA, might want to buy Radiance. I think a Radiance on PA is actually pretty good now. Because if they don't have MKB, it's going to stack, essentially. I mean, it stacks if it's double evasion, but if they have 17% chance to miss, 1 out of 6 attacks are going to miss. That means out of their 5 attacks, only half of those are going to hit, so they're only going to hit 2.5 of their attacks out of 6, which is pretty nasty. That's a pretty nice... I think we will see Radiance on some heroes like that. Still countered by MKB, obviously, but even support heroes need to attack to do some damage, so that miss rate will pay off. It's a cool buff to Radiance, I think. And I think that's a buff. Definitely a buff. Really good on the Spirit Bear as well. Refresher Orb, reworked old, new refresher. 10 HP regen. 250% mana regen. And 20 damage. Perseverance, Perseverance, and a recipe. The cost is more. Recipe is the same, and the build-up is interesting. So, doesn't give int. Gives less damage, doesn't give attack speed. They basically buffed Refresher to have all these like extra things that were in the components but didn't do it, and then all of a sudden Refresher's built a lot, so they're like, alright, let's clean this fucking item up. Now it's double Perseverance. So you're building a Perseverance, you could build a Refresher, you could build a not a Bloodstone. You could build a Refresher, a Lincoln Sphere, or that other item. Is it the Lotus one? I think. Lotus Orb, yeah. So, Lotus. Rod of Atos, intelligence from 25 to 30, it's even better now. It's a pretty good item on some heroes. Really good on Oracle, I felt. Unholy Rage duration increase. So this is a double buff to Satanic. The gold cost was reduced by 200, so Satanic is cheaper. Sentry Ward can no longer miss. It's totally normal. It was just like with the Obs. Shiva's Guard, Freezing Aura. Enemy attack is buffed by 5, so very small. Stout Shield is cheaper, 200. That's pretty big because this impacts the early game a lot. 250 to 200. Damage block chance reduced, so it's lower chance to block. And, okay, buff to range. Oh, wait. Okay, so it blocks less, 16. So Stout Shield is worse now. So cores are a little less tanky, but they get 50 more gold, so they'll be able to afford something more. So carries should be able to get the Lotus thing now, if they want to. Or the, not the Lotus, the Mango. You can afford a Mango instead of a Salve now without having to alter your item build. Probably not worth it, because that gives you mana. The 1 HP regen over time is pretty bad, honestly. That's very, very low. So I don't think we'll see a lot of cores by Mangoes, but it's possible. Tango can now be used on to eat wards. Eating a ward heals for double the amount. 230 HP over 16 seconds. Very interesting. Has a 450 cast range when targeting wards. That's a really long range. Interesting. That works for sentries as well. We could see sentries in the late game, or tangos in the late game to kill sentries. If you're playing a Rikimaru, I would say definitely get a... you won't be able to see the wards, though, is the only problem. If you carry a sentry and a tango as a Rikimaru or a bounty hunter, it could be useful. Because you could put your sentry down, you could eat their sentry. You're spending 100 gold, and it's kind of expensive. You're spending like 130 gold for a super powered tango to Camler. It's probably not worth it. In the early game, this will be potentially impactful, but over the course of the whole game, I think this does very, very little. Because ward stays better. That's true. You're basically eating eyes instead of trees. They have like some fat in it, right? Or something. I assume there's some fat. What's the eye? I'm about to Google what's the calorie content of human eyes, but that's maybe not something I should Google. Town Portal Scroll cooldown is increased slightly. Teleport no longer removes ethereal state when it's cast. So if you use a... that's another reason probably why they decreased the gold of Ghost Scepter. I thought the balance was okay there, but this further explains why it was there. So you can Ethereal Blade TP much, much easier now. So supports should be, as a whole, more survivable. Because you can E-Blade, or you can Ethereal Blade TP very easily. You don't have to get Boots of Travel to do it. So that's a pretty big buff to supports, I think. If you know that that guy's going to kill you right after you use Ethereal Blade, that further makes heroes like Lifestealer shitty, honestly. Like, that's one of the unfortunate things. Lifestealer is still going to be shit. They barely buff that hero. I guess he gives 50% lifesteal, so that's pretty big, but I don't know. I don't think that's going to mean Lifestealer's played, and Lifestealer's a terrible carry right now. Casting Soul Release on an enemy already under the effects of Soul Release now refreshes the existing debuff rather than applying a separate instance. Did that work before? Oh. Apparently you could cast Earn multiple times on your opponent to like power charges through. I didn't know that worked. I never abused that. I don't know that many people that did, so would have been good though. If you had 2 souls, you could just pump them both out as fast as you could on one guy to do 300 pure damage. That would have been really good. But I didn't abuse that. Could have abused it, didn't do it. Veil of Discord recipe cost is decreased. The cooldown is reduced heavily, the duration is reduced, and the mana cost is reduced. This item is becoming almost a must-buy. 25 duration was too much. Reducing the cooldown is good. You can use it in more fights. 20 seconds. Like, that's, look at that uptime. Use it 16, it's down for 4. Like, you can use that every time you gank, basically. It's a pretty good item, depending on the hero. But there's so many other... I think one of the reasons they needed to buff this item is because there's so many other good support ways for supports to spend their money now, that Veil is becoming less and less an option. Like, there was a time in Dota where every support would just buy bracers. That was it. They're like, I'm just going to buy bracers because I'm going to try not to die. And now there's so many good options. You got Urn, Medallion, all these other things that they build into. It's really cool. Force Staff, obviously, is great still. Vladimir's off. All right, we're at the end, guys. We did it. I don't know how long this video is. Probably, like, ridiculous. Lifesteal decreased from 15 to 16. Excuse me, 16 to 15. Now grants 10% lifesteal to range heroes. Okay. And requires Headdress instead of Ring of Regeneration. This is... Oh. Headdress instead of Ring of Regeneration. Vladimir's Offering now provides +2 to all stats, and Vladimir's Offering now provides 3/8 regen. Okay, cool. So you can... If 2 people build mech, one can build a Vlads, and one can build a Crimson Guard. And the other guy can build mech. So no matter what... Wait. Oh, you could always do that before, couldn't you? Yeah, when they added Crimson Guard, you could do that. So now if 2 people build a mech, one's like, alright, I'm going to build mech. You build either Pipe, Vlads, or you build Crimson Guard with a either Vlads or Pipe. So, that's okay. That's alright. Alright, the coolest thing about this, by far, this was the nerf to Scotty. It wasn't a nerf to Scotty, and that was the cool part. They didn't nerf Scotty just now. They didn't have to. They made it slightly worse on range heroes, but they gave you a different option. If you want lifesteal, you don't get Scotty because it's the best. The reason you buy Scotty with lifesteal is because it's the best option that you can go, right? But now, if you get Vlads, you can still have lifesteal. On your range heroes especially, you can still have lifesteal. This means that you can get Desolator with lifesteal on ranged heroes, which is the part that you couldn't do before. You can buy that now, you know. You can't still get Scotty with Desolator, but the important part is that you can always get lifesteal on ranged heroes in combination with an orb. So that's mainly going to apply to ranged heroes, but I'm sure there's some other heroes that this maybe affects. Is there a ranged hero that has an orb that has trouble with this? They removed a lot of them. It was like Clinkz, for example, but his Burning Spear or his Fire Arrow isn't an orb anymore. Was that it? Are there any other heroes that have like are there any ranged heroes that have a passive orb? I feel like there's not very many. It used to be just maybe Clinkz. Viper is an example. You could get a Vlads on Viper now if you want to lifesteal from his hit. I wouldn't recommend it, but that's probably one of the other heroes that is an orb that doesn't get any items. Viper is one. Clinkz used to be one, but isn't anymore. You could get lifesteal on OD. That's pretty cool. A Vlads on OD is not terrible. It's actually okay. You could get Vlads on OD because you can get a Headdress. It's a little bit of stats, gives you some HP regen. I feel like Vlads on OD is legitimately a possible thing. I don't know if you lifesteal based on the orb damage or just your regular damage, but it's not bad. You could probably jungle with Vlads now on OD. Actually, that's very likely going to be a thing. Play OD in the safe lane. Get Vlads. Shift to the jungle. You'll jungle really fast because your aura will be maxed. So you'll be getting a lot of mana pool. It does give you a little bit of int. And it gives you 3 health regen. So you can definitely jungle with OD. With Vlads. Pretty fast. Because the orb does increase your damage. So we'll probably see jungling OD. Carry to jungling OD. And again, you can get eggs on him now. Eggs Refresher jungling OD, something like that with a Midas maybe, is definitely something that's possible to see. And that's it. That's the patch. That wasn't it. That was a lot of it, but that's the patch video. I was going to start streaming this morning at like 10 o'clock. I think I started about 10. This is like a 3 hour and 10 minute video. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm really excited for the new patch. The thing I am most unsure about is the gameplay update, this stuff. I think it's going to be very minor. It's not that bad. It's a slight creep decrease, less gold for AoE, a lot less experience, and doesn't matter if you steal kills. Well, I would like to see an equation saying exactly how this works as well, but the carries are basically getting less gold per kills. So we're going to see a lot more gold going to supports, and there's a lot more items, maybe not a lot more gold, but we're going to see more gold going to supports than there were previously, especially because of the net worth difference thing. Even if you're winning, you're still going to get a lot of gold for kills. And there's a lot of items, a lot of really good items that supports would love to buy if they have gold, and they're going to get more gold now. And this is increasing more gold in the game to compensate for this and for this. And if you get a Rax, you get more gold. This is supports getting 100 gold, 125 gold. This is really good for supports. Pushing is a little easier. I'm actually really excited for this patch. This all looks really reasonable. It addresses all the comeback mechanic complaints that a lot of people had, which I think are fair to apply to pubs in the pro scene. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm really excited. Jungling has been reduced, so it's basically a nerf to carries, a buff to supports. I think this is a largely buff to supports. I'm not even kidding. I'm really happy with a lot of the items. There's a ton of items that were introduced that are very good for support heroes, and also, like, most of these are for supports. This is like a support item. This is pretty much a support item, because anybody actively casting or attacking is worse. This is a support item. Moonshard is a carry item. Silver Edge is a carry item that I think has some support applications that supports could purchase. Solar Crest is definitely a support item, can be used as a core, and Octarine Core is a carry, mostly a carry item. So a lot of buffs to supports, buff to everybody, buff to supports, blah, 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 blah. This is just like normal stuff. Anything else? Buff to whatever. Buff to supports, the ward stuff, that was really good. Just general item things. I think there was a lot of really good buffs to supports this patch. I'm really happy because seeing supports integrate better into teamfights is going to be really cool. Like, if you think about where Dota was like 4 years ago, so, like I said, supports would buy bracers and they would do their best not to die because they didn't have 4 staffs, you know? Like, they couldn't afford to buy blink daggers. The amount of gold they got was disgusting. It was the ward bitch. As a support, you were a ward bitch. You would buy observer wards and bracers. I remember one game I watched Arzart play. He was used to be on Navi a long time ago. I remember I watched him play this one game where he got like 4 bracers, and then he bought a Heaven's Halberd, and everybody's like, "Holy shit! He bought this like item that actually does something and gives him HP." It was like utility. It was like, whoa. I think that was before Force, probably, because I feel like a player at that time probably would have bought Force, but maybe not. It was like, whoa, he got an item, but now look at what supports can do. Urn, Medallion, Veil of Discord, they can buy Vlads for their whole team, you know? There's so many cool things that they can buy. It's like really allowing every hero to be really relevant, and I think that's going to make a big difference. So I think as the game continues, I'm really hopeful for Dota right now. This is beautiful. I genuinely mean beautiful. There's so many cool ways to continue your item build, and everything's being diverse, and it has its uses, and it makes everything relevant, except for Rod of Atos. That item is still not going to be used, but I can't wait. I'm going to stream now. So if you guys happen to be at the end of the video, you know, by the time you're watching the video right now, I'm probably not going to be streaming anymore, fair warning, because it's going to take at least like an hour or two to process this video. And then by the time you watch a 3-hour video, I'm not going to be streaming anymore, because it'll be like 6 hours from where I'm currently recording at 1 p.m. So I'm probably not going to be streaming by the time you guys read this, but I'm going to stream a lot in the next couple weeks. I just got back from Starlighter last night, and time to get settled and make a fuckload of cool videos and analyze all this good stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. I will see you soon. Thank you for watching my video. Goodbye.